esport in the world and led to what we know as esports today. Started here, and this beach is a place that's so famous for Korean esports. Every year of Pro League for so long, we had players coming here, playing on this beach, thousands upon thousands of members in the crowd, and tonight it feels like the old days. It feels like the height of StarCraft as we leap into this new chapter.
It's crazy coming down here and seeing everybody back together again. It's completely packed, and I really look forward to seeing how each of these grudge matches turns out. We're going to start things off with Guillaume, also known as by his ID Gur, going up against the boy. When I first was introduced to StarCraft 1, we didn't have replays. That's how old the game was. You had to read battle reports, and these were the guys I was reading about.
Yeah. And
these are the forefathers of all of the meta that we have in StarCraft.
Back then, you didn't have Twitch TV. It wasn't a live stream you watch. You watch, if you lived in Korea, on TV, on your 4x3 television. And if you didn't live there, you heard the legends, you heard the stories, you read the reports, as you said. And we live in a new era now. It's 2017. Brood War doesn't have to be played in 4x3 anymore. And everyone can watch it widescreen, in high definition, on live streams, no matter where you are in the world. And that's why this is such a beautiful new chapter for this game that, like we said, was the birth of esports.
Just so you guys know, if you are in South Korea, by the end of tonight, you can go to a computer cafe and play StarCraft Remastered. And in about 2 weeks, it will be released to the general public.
That's
so
right.
Start watching now. It's never too late to pick up StarCraft 1. We've seen constantly new players come about and some of these older guys retiring. And I look forward to seeing future generations come and pick this game up as well.
Yeah, play it with your friends, even if you've never played before and neither have your friends. You don't need to be a master of the game. And yes, it's a challenging game. It's one of the most beautiful things about the game. You load it up, you try to play against the AI. It might not be a similar experience to some games you might play. These days, you might get crushed by the computer, but don't get discouraged. Watch the pro players, learn from them, talk to your friends. There's countless guides, decade-old guides on the internet to teach you how to play this game. And we're going to be teaching you a little bit about it tonight, too.
Yeah, we're going to make sure this is accessible as possible for you guys at home. This is the boy versus Guillaume. The boy, who now actually works at Blizzard, is one of the very original early Zerg players.
Yeah,
and you have to point out how much the meta has shifted and changed. We did not understand RTS the way we understand it now 19 years ago. These are the guys that were getting the closest to the truth, the ones that were teaching everybody else and setting those building blocks up so we could begin to understand how RTS games work.
Yeah, and his opponent, of course, is Gur, better known as Guillaume. This guy is a pop icon in Korea, one of the most famous Westerners in this country. And, of course, it all started with a StarCraft play. He learned Korean. He's lived here for so long now, and now he's an icon on television.
I think he's lived here for 18 years.
Yeah, he's been here basically as long as Brood Wars existed. He was the first OSL champion and the only Western player to ever win a Star League title in Brood War. He's the only one. And, you know, for the boy here, it's kind of a time for him to get revenge. They both start at the beginning of Brood War, but Guillaume, he took the limelight. He was the star, and he still is today.
And he's, right now, the boy's trying to come back. We have 2 games in a row with these two guys. We'll see if we can have an upset here and Guillaume possibly goes down. We're going to start this off on the map, Deep Purple. It's going to be a Protoss versus Zerg, although it should be noted that when Guillaume did win, he was playing random in the early days. He was just very good at macro, had a pretty good instinct when it came into being in any situation in the game, and managed to dominate. Eventually, as StarCraft's popularity grew, you had to pick a race. The game's too complicated to just be owning with everything.
You can't own all the matchups. You can't be a master of all of them. It's better to know all 3. Of course, you know, say you're a Zerg player, know the Zerg versus Protoss, the Zerg versus Terran, and then your own mirror matchup against Zerg, the Zerg versus Zerg, which kind of dominated the early stages of Korean StarCraft. Remember, this esport started here. The first tournament started here. The first televised esports matches in the world began with this game and began with these very players.
That's right. This is basically the big bang of esports. It started here, then StarCraft 2 came out. Esports started to pick up globally. League of Legends obviously helped with that as well after that came out. And it's been growing ever since, but now we're hitting the reset button here in Korea, because if you tried playing StarCraft 1 in the last couple of years, it's too hard to get on. So now we got Anti-Act, we got everything, and we're bringing it back. going into this match shortly, so stay tuned. Tell your friends to join us here at the StarCraft Remastered launch. Wolf, get in the DeLorean.
It's
We're
happening.
going back to 1998.
Right here, right now, in HD. Of course, down here, or up here, I should say, to the top left, it is, of course, Guillaume, better known as Gur, and his opponent to the bottom left, it is the boy.
That's right. So, I'm wondering, when we look at these two guys playing, are they going to stick with the old school styles that worked back in the day? A lot of times, you don't see StarCraft players manage to survive various eras of the meta. Sometimes somebody pops up and dominates and people map out their styles and push them out. But the early game meta in PvZ in the very beginnings of Brood War was a lot of the Protoss trying to pressure the Zerg with Zealots, force them off of drones, whereas the modern PvZ is more about fast expanding. So the fact that we see a pylon in the main tells me Guillaume is going to keep it old school.
Definitely so.
In the modern StarCraft Brood War meta, it's very difficult to make this work, but I have seen Guillaume manage to pull off this style even against some of the best players in the world.
Yeah, and back then, of course, players weren't as mechanically gifted as some of the players we'll see later tonight that actually...
By the way, you can zoom in!
Yeah, you can zoom in. This is pretty sick. But remember, some of the players were not as mechanically gifted as the players we have today. And so it was about strategy over mechanics. And it was tougher to micro against those early rushes back then. And because Gur was a random player, he had the strategy advantage. He had the knowledge of what his matchup was. His opponents did not. But he has, of course, moved to be a main Protoss player here as we see the Probe Scout come out.
Now, we're still waiting to see if the second gateway is going to come down. There is the possibility he actually just pressures with one gateway Zealot and tries to sneak out a Nexus along with this. It's one of the harder openers to do. Now, what Protoss is doing right now is denying the hatchery from planting right there. The drone, the way the game is set up, if there's a unit blocking there, then you can't automatically make a structure there. And that actually forced, by the way, the boy to make a hatchery in his main. That's a less desirable location to try and make your second hatch at. By the way, you can really see they spruced up the graphics quite a bit here. This
really
looks so
nice.
much cleaner than what I'm used to.
Yeah, and you get the zoom in, which was not possible before.
Right.
And it is going to be the two gateway pressure now coming out. Guillaume has also scouted in the main base and was double hatched before pull. Not at the natural, but in the main base. He wants to get the larva cranking, wants to get the drone count up. But the spawning pool is coming down a bit later. So this is kind of a reactionary play by Gur to add the second gateway, knowing the spawning pool was late. And he doesn't have that hatchery, of course, at the natural.
What Guillaume is going to try to do here is continue to pressure with Zealots, but he has to be careful because although Zealots are really strong, when the Zerglings get speed, you can start to be very abusive towards the Zealots. You can even not engage them and run by and kill all the workers. And as tough as the Zealots are, if the Zerg has enough finesse, he can definitely outmaneuver you. So I'm curious to see how this is going to pan out. This may be one of our shorter games, or it could end up with both players being pretty badly crippled and we crawl into a mid-game scenario.
Yeah, and it's going to, of course, be before we get to the 6th shot of the cube, by the way. Before we get to that speed you were talking about, he has to mine the gas for it. He hasn't really started to do so. He's starting to react to the Zealot pressure that's coming across the map. Now, this hatchery will be ignored. He wants to go for the throat here. He wants to get some real economic damage. Of course, Zerglings are on the way here.
Okay,
he's going to force a few of those before he attacks, so he wants to pull up the Zealots. The next few have already come out of those gateways, as you can see here.
Looks like he actually pulled some of them back there. There is the option for the Zealot to run behind minerals and try to get wedged in these little areas where the Lings can't surround them. And Guillaume was definitely a good player who was known for abusing that. But it looks like he wants to back up. Now, here's the situation for Protoss. He did slow down the Zerg's second base, and just like in StarCraft 2, because I know we have some younger people that might not have been familiar with the Brood War meta, just like in StarCraft 2, you cannot be on even bases as a Zerg player against a Protoss. You always want to be ahead. So he slows that hatchery down. That's not finished yet. But the style that Guillaume's playing forced him to end up with gas a little bit later on. So he might not be in the right spot tech-wise. As time passes, we'll see exactly how he tries to deal with that. But Zerg can, of course, go for lurkers, go for mutas, go for Hydralisk with speed. And with Protoss in the dark like this, it's a very tricky situation. You have to have really good instincts. or really force the player to show his hand.
Sure, and now he's got a lot of Zealots here, but he needs to make sure they don't get surrounded. It's a very massive Ling attack is coming across the map. Now, the Zealots need to be making sure they're in a choke point so Lings don't get the massive surround or run by. As you can see, the micro is going to be very important. Already a quick reaction here coming out from the boy. Will pull back. No Nexus planted just yet, as he is looking for the attack. Now, looks like he is going to go ahead and place this down, but he wants to get cannons here up first as the Forge is spinning, getting the +1. So kind of a weird game in terms of economy here with the hyper-aggressive play we saw from Guillaume.
Okay, so he needs to get the cannons up here. It's absolutely important. Now remember, Ling's speed is going to finish any second now. In fact, Guillaume may want to edge forward and try to get those Zealots to fully block the ramp. He said he's going to put them so that the Lings can't quite come in an angle and possibly hit the cannon. I think Guillaume can actually pull this off unless the Lings engage immediately.
Okay, this is going to be a really tight timing here for the boy to try to break through. I don't know if this is going to be enough. He does have the cannon warping in right now. The Lings do get a decent surround here on the top Zealot, but more reinforcements coming through. He can't break this, and this is somewhat of a wasteful engage by the boy. Now has to back away. Remember, +1's coming up, but the key factor here is the transition possibility for the Zerg is real. He has 2 bases. He has a larva advantage, and Guillaume still hasn't started that Nexus yet.
Okay, as this game goes on, we want to see how many more drones the boy is going to make versus how hard is he going to tech. We're seeing the other legends right now watching this game right now in anticipation of their own games that are coming up here. So what does Guillaume have going for him? He's got +1 on the way here, right? And that means that Zealots kill Lings with 2 hits instead of 3, which is huge. Now Guillaume but does not have Zealot legs finished. He doesn't have any High Templars out. There's no Stargate. He doesn't have a Robo. So his tech is very primitive. At the same time, though, because the boy was a little bit aggressive early on, he made a lot of Lings, and he wasn't really able to punish Guillaume. The boy's not in great shape, and I think this is a really smart play here by Guillaume to just go ahead and jut these units out and see if he can't do a kill move or at least apply some pressure here.
Yeah, he had the weaker drone count, so he's been droning up quite heavily. Only has a few Hydras here right now. This is basically going to hit right when +1 finishes, so his Lings are going to have some trouble. It's not ready yet, but the Hydras here need to make sure they stay alive. They're going to be the backbone of this army. He needs to get the Hydra count up here, trying to desperately get those out right now. +1 still not done, but it's got to be just barely on the cusp of finishing.
Keep in mind, the Sunken Colony is going to finish. Now, Guillaume can always turn around here. I don't believe Zerg has enough to necessarily trap that army, but that really applied some pressure back there and is allowing Guillaume's Nexus to go ahead and finish up. The boy did not opt for a counterattack back there, but it looks like with Hydra's speed finishing up, this may seesaw in the other direction. There's actually a very high chance that with Hydras with speed, he can run up there, gun down the cannon, and if Zealot legs aren't done, the Zealots really can't combat the Hydras. The Hydras can kite away from them for a long time.
Yeah, just very important that Guillaume gets his units back behind this wall. He has the photon cannon to back this up. Static defense, so powerful. +1's finally finished here. You have to imagine he is researching the Zealot leg upgrade back at home as well, because he has the Twilight Council up. He's actually rushing to the High Templar tech off of just 2 gateways. This is greedy, but he feels with the 2 Nexi and with the aggressive commitment here by the boy, if he holds on here, he'll have that tech advantage.
Okay, now the Hydras are probably going to come up here and try to cover away this gateway that is set up as part of the wall. I think the positioning here for Guillaume is pretty good, but you have to be very careful against Hydras. It's a really volatile situation. So we may see him try to poke up here. If Protoss can get to Psionic Storm with some Templars, then they feel okay, then they feel safe.
Yeah, that's kind of the seesaw for this matchup here. It's the Hydras versus the wall, trying to buy time for that Storm. And in this situation, he didn't get Zealot legs fast enough to do any counterattacking. He kind of just has to turtle up and take these Hydra hits for a little bit longer. That's why he's making a massive amount of photon cannons, knowing that if this wall goes down, Lings could stream through. The Hydra's gonna attack.
Okay, Zealot legs is done. The Zealots are just slightly faster than the Hydras. This is very hard for the Zerg player to try to micro this. Even with the Lings in front, +1 attack means these Zealots are going to shred through that. The boy has to retreat. While he is retreating, we should note that there is a 3rd base being acquired now down here in the bottom center. If I had to give somebody a lead here, I would give it to Guillaume. Guillaume seems to have momentum on his side. He's expanding at the same rate as the Zerg. The boy needs to come back, and I think the fact that he picked a very basic tech, which was just Lings and Hydras with speed, not backed by a really powerful economic engine, he's going to have a hard time segueing into lurkers, into anything else. I think there's a chance that Zerg may have to try turtling and trying to last for a really long game.
I mean,
here.
he's not going to be able to break the back of Gur here if he has Sidestorm. This is not an engagement though that Gur wants to take here. This is only half of his army. He needs to get it back towards his main base. Few reinforcements could get cut off here, but again, the backbone is the Psionic Storm. He has 3 Templar. He's got enough energy to fight, and what we're going to see from the boy right now is that turtling, but in an aggressive fashion. He knows that if the tech army units aren't there, he can poke a lot. He can get that 3rd base up. He's taking a 4th base now as well. Just wants to put the pressure on when the Protoss army is weak to turtle to buy additional time.
Okay, so the pylon and the gateway are going to go down. I'm waiting for that Psionic Storm to happen. I'm assuming the upgrade is probably almost finished. This is a little bit dicey here by the boy to try to come in like this, because one Psionic Storm clicked right on that Hydra that was just selected a second ago, and these are gone.
Yeah, they basically just erase, they disappear. And he does poke away at that. Remember, he's just buying time to get the 3rd and 4th base up because it looks like Guillaume just didn't have Storm ready. And with the Concave there, even getting a Storm off can be very expensive. You don't kill all the Hydras, use a Templar, not always the best trade. But he had so many of them that the boy just pushed in exactly as far as he could. He pushed the envelope, but he didn't push it too far. Now he's got a 3rd and a 4th. But the scary thing is, with Guillaume's 3rd base economy up, he's going to get the detection out soon. Lurkers aren't going to be an issue for him. Not even any on the map right now. We're seeing the first ones morph right now. He's going to have this large gateway army and the Psystorms, and that's when the 3rd and 4th base of the boy are vulnerable.
There is one thing Zerg can do, though. Zerg, if he gets over to this area in the center, top center, Zerg can do what's called a lurker contain. He can actually set that up.
First person view, by the way.
Here. So Zerg can set up a lurker contain out here, and that's going to be very difficult to bust out of. And that's one of the reasons why we see Guillaume's already moving out. Oh, and it looks like the boy's going to try to set that up now.
Look at this, holding onto the Storm, saving it here till the last moment. Okay, he's going to use it just to kill this lurker. He doesn't have detection, so Storms are going to have to be used to remove these.
So it's 1 Zealot hit plus a Psionic Storm hit to kill a lurker. So if you do it just right, you could chuck 1 Zealot out there, and they'll punch the lurker once while you shoot the Storm down. Usually the lurker's burrowing in this process, and you can get the kill. So the Robo Bays, we don't have observers out yet. In some cases, Dragoon range becomes incredibly important here. And you can see you can also use 2 Psionic Storms.
Yep, just getting
control there.
And this is actually just trading energy for units. Oh, smiley face coming out here.
The smiley face is real.
You know,
that's actually a pretty embarrassing moment, though, there for the boy to lose that lurker like that.
Actually
he got it out in time and then ran it back to the Psystorm.
It's funny because there are some famous moments with the boy where actually chat was used against him before that was banned in professional play by the Boxer, especially a few famous moments where Boxer called him out for his playstyle and called him weak straight up in chat that made the boy angry. In fact, he was one of the people to complain about using chat in game as one of the reasons why today it's professionally banned. Now, of course, these are show matches, so different rules here, but it's just always funny to see chat in a situation like this. Calling your opponent out.
He might be going for Reavers here, or possibly shuttle speed. We don't normally see a Reaver just for the way this game's been developing. This is not the most normal way to do this. And he's actually going to try to gun by here. This is a huge mistake here by the boy. This is super greedy. Even with that lurker, now to hemorrhage those lurkers instead of keeping them outside here, it means he's risking giving up the contain. And basically when Protoss has the Psystorm, the Observers, Dragoon range, and of course, ideally +3 attack, a Protoss army that's not controlled can barrel out on the map and run over all these expansions.
Yeah, and I think the idea there was maybe he gets lucky because he knows there's not very many observers. In fact, there weren't any with that army. Maybe he just skirts around the cannon, gets a good line shot off on the Zealots and the High Templar. A risky move, though, and you have to feel like perhaps he should have realized that with this many photon cannons, he wasn't going to skirt around. Now there's observers out. Risks like this don't pay off. It's very expensive, and Gur's very happy with his 3-base economy now, and finally the observer tech, and we'll likely see observer speed coming out from that robotics bay to deal with these lurkers. He's actually going to be aggressive.
Oh, man,
and the boy, no reaction.
Okay, great storms there. And I think this army might be thinned out. Now, keep in mind, it's tricky to move out with a maxed out army. Remember, guys, in Brood War, you can only have 12 units in a control group. So you have to have a huge number of hotkeys set up and bound. And if you ever overstep, it's hard to retreat, right? You have to then input everything retreating. And this is the comeback mechanic that was accidentally not implemented. We discovered there was a comeback mechanic inside the game because the more bases you get, the more of an army you get, then the more tasks you have to juggle, and it becomes more difficult.
It's almost like a rubber band mechanic, but look at this. Hydra's here not being protected. He's going to go for the engage. He has the concave here. There's no high tempo with this army, so a bit of a risky engage here, but here come the storms, and that's going to turn the tide.
Yeah, he wants to try to snipe the High Templars. It's tricky because the Dragoons and the Zealots are doing a lot of damage, but if you're controlling the Hydras well, you can really outmaneuver a lot of times what the Protoss is trying to do. Now, it seems like map control is going to go to Guillaume, but that only means that Zerg is going to turtle, and in this case, start abusing drops. And in this phase of the game, drops are very scary. When you get the drop upgrade, any Overlord can drop, so you can pick up your whole army and drop that in the main. And remember, if you have this many units on control groups, it's really hard to turn them all back around. The AI is not as clean and must be mastered, and especially in a game where you have 300 APM going on and you're pushing like Guillaume is, a counter drop can make everything fall apart.
Yeah, and the boy has vision. He has Overlords all around Guillaume's base, so he knows there's no static defenses there. He has the vision. This could be a turning point in this game. The drop is going to have to do massive damage because the boy does not quite have enough static defense here. Trying to get these Sunkens up, but the drop is going to go off in the main base right now. Back at home, there's so many observers here, no lurkers, but here comes the drop. Only one photon cannon. That's not going to be enough. This probe line is going to get decimated.
Okay, so the main is going to take a heavy hit, and by the way, the gateways are not far off from that location. Meanwhile, Guillaume is pushing down, and he will be able to split off the two main bases in the bottom left from the two very center bases at the bottom. And this is going to cut off circulation. Keep in mind, every hatchery has to be re-rallied in this moment, or the units are going to parade into their own death here. Guillaume knows this moment is critical. He is not backing up. He is going to possibly sack the main and continue to rally forces down here.
I think this is going to be the much better trade for Guillaume. Of course, this main base was nearly mined out as well. And sure, it's annoying to deal with these lurkers, but the gateways are not affected. The production continues here. It's going to be great to grab this Reaper. That's very expensive, builds very slow. The Reaver will go down, but he is going to attack now this bottom base. If he gets two bases for really just one mineral line, this is definitely advantage Gur.
Okay, so the way that Guillaume or Gur has played this so far, he's managed to push out, and even though he's giving up a lot in his main, he's going to go ahead and keep expanding over to the right. And this is how Guillaume managed to become the great player that he was and ultimately a champion, is he was always good at this mechanical aspect of the game. He just keeps trucking through, dragging out expos to locations the Zerg doesn't have access to. And in some ways, if you look at the minimap, and you didn't say who was what race, you would assume that the yellow player, just looking at the minimap at least, was a Zerg, and it was actually the orange player who was the Protoss, but not the case. Gur is a macro machine.
He committed so many resources, the boy did, to that Hydra push early on. Lost some of his lurkers, was never able to wrench enough control away from Gur to actually prevent him from getting the gateway explosion there on 3 base. Now he's up to the 4th and the 5th base. And when the attack came in, a lot of his units were used in the expensive attack, but it meant that his bases got cut into, as you said. There was the wedge. This could be huge.
He's got the Lurkers Road over here. This is another expansion. I don't believe that Guillaume's actually transferred probes, so the majority of his workers actually should be at that base.
Yeah, 11 kills.
Yeah, he needs to get more, he needs to get workers elsewhere, because even if he has bases, if he's not mining from it, that doesn't help. He's still got a decent amount of money in the bank. That's pretty standard for this phase of the game, especially at the momentum he's had for the majority of this game. He's pushing out pretty well. I don't think the boy can stabilize, but I'm also not clear on what exactly Guillaume has back at home in case the tides could shift here and we see the boy beginning to push forward in the center.
He's going to clean this up here finally in the center. He saves the 6 o'clock base, of course, which, by the way, in Remaster, we do have the first-person mini-map view there, so what you see in orange is exactly what the boy is looking at any given time.
That's right.
While we're observing. So you can see what he's focusing on in all the action here. But, in fact, he doesn't clean this base up. It's going to go down, and this might be the last group of units we really see from the boy, as there's just so much of an economic advantage for Guillaume here. He's got 2 extra bases. And what can really the boy hope to do here but focus on game 2? The observer coverage has been really good. Never really been stumped by the lurker play. There's never been spore callers to shut them down. Just didn't have the flexibility to do so when the pressure was on. And it looks like this might just be lights out in game number 1, as this eventually will be cleared up.
This is a pretty clean way to finish the game up. And notice that Guillaume's not overextending. He's basically shut the Zerg down, and now he's going to rely on shuttles with Reavers. This is not the most orthodox way, by the way, to play the game, but Guillaume was very famous for just using Reavers a lot. He was a very strong Reaver player. He may try to come in here and just start dropping the worker line, or he may try to push with this, but this is a really clean way to finish this out. By the way, guys, we will have a game number 2, so a rematch here between these two players, assuming that the boy does tap out.
Yeah. It's going to be the wave of units coming across, and that should just be it. DTs even here as Overlords are getting killed by Dragoons and rare scenarios. We see the zoom out here, the field of view now much larger in widescreen, and we're going to watch this first game come to a close in new and updated graphics. As he wants to fight to the last breath here, the DTs come in, and that might be when it's time to tap out.
The DTs is insult to injury. It's totally unnecessary to get him, but he is letting him have it. GG, game one goes to Guillaume. Let's see if the boy can come back in the rematch.
It feels reminiscent of old times for Guillaume to take it. Smart, strategical play, blocking the hatchery, having the Zealot pressure in to force the Lings. This forced in, of course, the boy to have a weaker drone economy. Use the Lings for the counterattack. Guillaume, he played it safe, didn't make the Nexus immediately. Focused on getting the wall up, getting that photon cannon up. He had the worker advantage, and then eventually when he had the Nexus up, he had the better economy. And the boy tried to take a third and fourth base using those Hydras. Didn't work out for him. The counterattack was real. The Psy Storms were good, denying those lurkers that were trying to siege up. Guillaume looks to be on point tonight.
Yeah, Guillaume is looking very solid. Since I moved to Korea about 9 years ago, I've actually had the opportunity to watch Guillaume play and play with Guillaume several times. And I have to say, even when he hasn't played in a little while, he always looks pretty solid. And it certainly makes sense why he was able to dominate in the very first StarCraft tournaments here in Korea. The boy, look, some of what happened back there was the Hydra tech, the over-aggression with the lurkers, and I think getting a little bit too greedy with the Hydras right in the mid-game. Guillaume was definitely the more patient player, and it seems like he was able to parry basically any attack that the boy threw at him, and in the end, Guillaume just had a bigger army.
Yeah, it feels like the turning point was when those Hydra armies got stormed. He put a lot of pressure on, it allowed him to take the third and the fourth, but he got greedy, being aggressive, and just could not keep up the pressure after those two Hydra clubs were stormed and killed. So we're going to be jumping into the second game here in just a moment, guys. This is already just a great start to a beautiful evening. It is packed out here in Busan.
I cannot believe how many people are down here. Look at this.
Again, the camera doesn't even show it.
Yeah, we can't even catch it all on the camera.
Try to find the last person in the back of the shot. You can't even see him.
The prophecy has come true, Wolf. StarCraft 1 is back. Better than ever. I love what they did to clean up the graphics, and the zoom feature is really nice. I was definitely somebody who was like super old school. I wasn't even sure about how I felt about the widescreen, and then when I got a chance to play it before it was released, I thought, okay, they did a good job. And I will not be able to play it because I've hurt my hand for 6 more weeks.
Rip tasteless.
Yeah, I'm Jamie Lannister right now of esports with my golden nerd hand. I can only cast, I can only watch, but I am excited when I do get a chance to play for real.
Yeah, and you
guys should check it out.
You talk about the graphics, it's widescreen now, so you can play it on any monitor. I know as Windows and other operating systems evolved, it was hard to always get your brute order to run correctly, but now you just press F5, it goes widescreen. And the cool thing is, if you're a purist, you want to play your 4x3, you press F5 again, you're back at 4x3. And it doesn't matter if your opponent's playing in HD graphics or not, you can play the exact same game, it feels the same. So sure, the graphics are different, they look a lot crisper, they look a lot better, they look very 2017, but you don't have to use them, and the game feels exactly as it did back when these guys were in finals.
Yep. The classic gameplay is still there. We are moments away from moving into game number 2, which will be the last game between these two players, because we move on to the next show match no matter what. Can the boy get his revenge, or will the original first best StarCraft Brood War player, Guillaume, come out triumphant once again? It's on. Here in the bottom right, in the purple, our Protoss player who won game number 1, it's Guillaume. Using a pretty old school method, the Zealot pressure. That's very hard to pull off in modern StarCraft. His opponent here in the upper left, the green Zerg player, here for revenge after their tournament match about, what was it, like 17 years ago?
Yeah.
Or 18 years ago. It's the boy, one of the first best Zerg players.
Yeah, 1999, he was second place in the first ever big StarCraft
Losing
league.
to Guillaume.
And in 2000, Guillaume took the title of the first OSL. Of course, beating who was famously years later the coach of KT Rolster, HOT Forever. And it's cool to see how these two legends going back to the first OSL changed and grew as human beings, right, in and outside of the game. Gur, of course, becoming a celebrity in Korea, going on to television, still, of course, talking about how basically over the last 15 plus years, the thing he remembers most, the thing he cherishes most is the game. And then HOT Forever going into coaching KT Rolster for StarCraft 2. And it's cool to have these legends back, and we're going to be talking about the eras here, right? Because this is the first era of many we're going to be talking about up until the modern era of Brood War at the end of the night.
Yeah, this is a bit of a history course here for StarCraft 1. Now, let's keep our eyes peeled here for if Guillaume once again goes for double gateway. This map is perhaps even more difficult to pull this tactic off, but at the same time, you know, this is how Guillaume managed to become the dominant player he was. He likes to get in your face early on. When it comes to Zealot pushing, there's a lot of mind games that go on that may not be clear to a casual observer. How far you want to move out? Do you split the Zealots up and go for workers, or do you wedge them in between certain mineral patches and nooks on the map and force the Lings to engage them there?
Or do you show a lot of Zealots early and then back off, force the Lings, because that's essentially just denying drone mining? There's a lot of different ways you can use Zealots, and it's one of the reasons why this game became such a sport here is, sure, the units have the same hit points no matter who builds them, right? They cost the same no matter who pays for them, but it's how you use them, which is what makes the game so beautiful, how you control them, and the mind games that come into play. Remember, this game largely unchanged by balance patches over nearly 2 decades of professional play, and yet still we see meta shifts even in the modern era. And it's a beautiful thing to see, and we can even see older tactics, like you said here, from Gur find success in 2017.
Okay, so Guillaume, you're using the ID Gur, but I'm just going to call him Guillaume here.
Sure.
Saying play-by-play with Gur. And
it's also his in-game name,
yeah.
right? So
Guillaume is going for something that is a more modern approach, but not standard in the current meta. He went gateway gas with some Zealot pressure. And this was the middle era PvZ style of play, is you get a handful of Zealots, basically the bare minimum, tech up and either go for a Reaver push, which can possibly end the game right away, or you go for a Stargate, sometimes with Corsairs, sometimes with Zealots with legs. There's a lot of different variants of it. Now, as we're watching this game, it's equally important to point out what the boy is doing, because this is also not normal.
Yeah, one base lair.
Yeah, one base with 2 hatch, but yeah, no additional expansion into layer, and that's in part because this map is a little bit wonky. The natural expansion is far out enough. He may have been intimidated by a 2-gate pressure. Now, Guillaume didn't do that, but I think it was not completely unwise for the boy to stay back and go for 2-hatch layer, which can beat a 1-basing Protoss here if the Protoss doesn't handle themselves perfectly.
Yeah, the hatchery is also put in such a safe location at the back of the base, it's not vulnerable, so it's like he gets the extra macro, the extra larva for free. It's not in a vulnerable location. Now, the drawback, of course, is that he's not going to have the extra mineral mining, so when he holds off the pressure, he still will have to invest the extra 300 minerals to take another hatchery, but it's a safe play here, and it's strong against the 1 base. We'll see what he has planned exactly.
Here's what you want to watch for, especially, is that when both players are doing this, which is not orthodox, it gets really, really hard for either player to expand. It's maybe a little bit easier for the Zerg, but it's not comfortable. And by the way, Guillaume is going for the more risky branch in this build. It's Corsair into, I believe it's going to be Reaver, which can be tricky to pull off. Oh my God, it's not blocked perfectly. Oh my God, he needs to get the Dragoon over there to block that off.
Okay, he does block this off just barely. This could have been devastating to the probe line. He's going to try to scratch this Dragoon off the map. Looks like the Dragoon micro will be good enough here for Gur to keep it alive. 2 health. 2 health left on the Dragoon. He gets it out. Good crisis management here. And already now, we're seeing the boy seize the Corsairs. Will have to respond at home and pull his Overlords back. One of the cruxes of this strategy is to kill the Overlords to take map control. And also, unfortunately for the boy, he's chosen Spire Tech here. Perhaps he was hoping to go for 2-hatch Mutas here as he takes a hit in 3rd base, but the Corsairs will shut this down.
If he can get one more Overlord in the next few seconds, then Zerg's going to be supply blocked, and this can actually snowball. Now, ideally, the Protoss is continuing to make Corsairs. We see it, in fact, Guillaume...
this is an island base.
Yeah, this is an island base here. So the reason why he's doing this build is because he can sneak up an island. But at the same time, even though Guillaume has the answer to Mutas, because he has Corsairs, if he doesn't know the Mutas are coming, he might neglect making enough Corsairs to actually combat this. And don't forget, Scourge can crash right into a Corsair, and that's it.
Yeah, that's more
Corsairs
likely.
Are out.
Yeah, it's more likely I think we will see the Scourge here as the response. As now the Overlords are cleared up, you have to imagine he is going to fly over that main base. The Scourge are out now. If he was planning on going Mutas, it's not on the table anymore. Now these Scourge are going to try to protect the Overlords. Could get a nice hit here. It's going to take
needs
two.
to run.
The Mutas actually coming out as well.
He's got to dodge well. Navigating so far so good. If he can do it just right, he might be able to arc the Corsair over here on the right and reset the pathfinding for the Scourge, but I don't know if he's doing it. He may be scrambling back at home to try to get some defenses because the Corsairs alone are not going to be enough. The Mutas now headed southbound. Let's see, back in Guillaume's main if he's ready.
Got a few Dragoons. Remember the first one earlier did survive, and sure, Dragoons are not always the answer for Mutalisk. Smile on the boy's face as he arrives here, but still, Dragoons will help stave this off as he gets a third Corsair out from that Stargate. The island expansion here has been scouted.
Okay, so he's going to have to do a little bit of back and forth here.
The probe getting picked off is huge here, too. He can't make the Nexus anymore.
Yeah, he probably can get a shuttle over here and set that Nexus in a little bit, but I think if he can combo the Corsairs with the cannons, he will drive this out. It looks like Guillaume does manage to have a foothold in that expansion. As you were saying, he cannot make the Nexus till he gets another probe over there.
There's a lot of things to note about how this game is going too. The third base expansion, we haven't really been talking about it. Guillaume's not aware of it. So while he may think he's going to get this sneaky, fast island base and maybe take an economic lead, it's not in fact the case as the boy has that third base. Now, air control is going to be of the utmost importance when you take an island.
Yeah, but the thing is, with the boy on two bases right here, oh, you know what? I think he has to do this because that cannot plant correctly. The pylon's actually in the way of the Nexus.
Oh, yeah, you're right.
But yeah, the problem here is that if the boy is just on two base and the Protoss is on two base, and I mean, basically Protoss is fine with that. They're not losing any sleep over that. So that minor error there by Guillaume is fixed. I think if the boy is in this position for a little while, he may try to once again blindside the Corsairs and stream in with a bunch of Zerglings. It's not clear that the Protoss has enough on the ground to combat the Lynx. The Corsairs are essentially useless when a ground army is engaging. You can get Disruption Web. I don't think we're going to see that this game. That's pretty rare. It's pretty hard to detect to that point and then utilize it properly.
Yeah.
But we'll see. I think the way that Guillaume's going to win this is he has to play a conservative game for the time being.
He has to turtle hard. And, you know, the thing is, this base is so much later now than the Zerg. And of course, the Zerg is supposed to be ahead in mining. Sure, they're even on bases 2-2 now, but he has the extra hatchery, he has the extra larva, and he should feel confident to take his natural now, take a more safe base towards his main. And, you know, he has air control. There's no pressure that Guillaume can put on the map right now. As you said, he has to sit back, he has to play conservatively. Even moving out with Corsairs right now, very far on the map, can be risky.
Okay, well, let's see though. It's only going to be risky if the Zerg doesn't have enough Scourge. I mean, you have to assume that the Zerg player is going to have the Scourge, right? But he looks like he's going to move out, by the way, using, I think, modern trapping here. Notice how the Corsairs are moving together. He has one probe in that control group, trapped back in his base. That's one of the many ways you can manipulate the AI here. But yeah, if the Zerg doesn't respond to the Corsairs can blindside him and take out all the Overlords, and then he's in trouble town, Wolfie.
Yeah,
it's not good.
Well, at least he's finally got the Reaper tech, right? That's going to help deal with some of the ground army. He's actually going to use it to escort it with these Corsairs to get a drop done. And he has to be careful with this. It's very expensive to lose this shuttle. And as ships pass in the night, looks like the Mutas might actually be able to backstab this island base.
I think that the boy is underestimating. Okay, never mind. He's getting some more Scourge. I was going to say, I think he's underestimating this. What Guillaume's doing right now is actually not what I expected. I expected him to turtle. This is a very, very tough thing to pull off. And no matter what era of StarCraft you're in, is Corsair Reaver, every unit matters. You lose the Reaver, you lose a shuttle, you lose any of the Corsairs. It's really, really bad.
Okay, here we go. It's double Reaver in this drop. The Scarab glitches here, so he's only going to get a weak first shot. The second one's going to try to take out the Spore here. And very, very quickly, the Mutalisks are responding here. The Corsair might needs to be good.
He's coming up. The Corsair split was good, but is it enough? The Mutas now continuing to come in here, and I think Guillaume has overplayed this a little bit too much. And in fact, I think the Mutas can take out these Reavers before the hatchery goes down.
He's out of Scarabs, it looks like, doesn't get the final shots off there. The split was much better for the Mutalisks there, for the boy as well. Of course, remember, Corsairs do AoE damage. He had the +1, but there was an arc there for the boy. He was prepared. He knew what he was up against. Had the Scourge count. He respected the Corsairs, as you mentioned. Now he's got that third base coming up, as we said. There's not a lot of extra pressure that Guillaume could put on the map now. Now he himself is kind of stuck and trapped on 2 bases, taking a third base against the more mobile Zerg army. Once the Corsairs are defeated, he'll never be able to regain air superiority. And like you said, it was a risky move. It's very difficult to pull off, and the reaction there was quick enough for the boy. And because of the buggy nature of the Scarab, the first Reaver shot didn't get much done. Maybe if it hits a few more drones, a little bit different of a trade, a little different story, but not in this case.
It seems like Zerg's actually committing with air here. We see he's gotten the armor upgrade, which it makes him a bit more effective against the Corsairs. When you see Corsair Reaver, this style of play, it's important to note how expensive the combination of Corsairs and Reavers are, that you don't start, especially if he's going double Robo and triple Stargate, so he's not backing up. There are versions of this build where you just stick with a small number of Corsairs and Reavers, and then on the side, tech through to a proper Protoss army. But this is a hyper committal, so in this case, I think we will possibly see Disruption Web in this game. What you can do is you have enough shuttles with Reavers in them, you drop them down, you can blanket Disruption Web everywhere, and the Corsairs and Reavers just end up killing everything. Yeah, the Disruption Web, to describe what that means for a newer viewer, is an area on the ground where basically you cannot attack as a ranged unit, so static defense as well, just not very effective. You put it down, and so that's how you actually gain you have the air advantage and the ground advantage, even with a small group of units that do a lot of AoE damage. They just can't be killed by the larger Zerg army because of that Disruption Web, and we'll see if that gets researched here or not. A very rare tactic in modern Brood War play, but not so much. It was much more common in the older days. And these are older players, so it would make sense why we see it here. It's interesting to see Corsair Reaver here, because this is actually one of the hardest unit comps in the game to pull off. It looks really simple till you actually try it at home, and you realize how delicate everything is. But Guillaume, being pretty bold here, is going to once again push out. He's looking for stray, anything in the air that he might be able to chip away at. The boy appears to be transitioning into proper ground play here with some Hydras in the mix. Right now, the Corsairs headed southbound back over here to the main base for Guillaume. And Guillaume is not stopping with his tech. He's going to continue to try to build up and really bust out here. And it can be frustrating for a Zerg to deal with this, because there's not a lot that you can do until the Protoss decides to move out. And it seems like that moment's now. Oh, catching these videos on move command. He gets a lot of extra damage here. Not the splits that he was looking for. This is a great engage for Guillaume, just catching these Mutilas completely off guard here on move command, wasting the DPS. And this is a huge opportunity now. The air control is taken away, and this means the shuttle could just freely move across the map. Okay, so he's going to try to go for the main, but the Hydras are out. If he loses the shuttle, then the push is basically done. Now, while this is happening, Guillaume's scrambling to get a third base up and running. The drops are coming right there in the main base, hoping to target down some of these workers. Corsairs doing a good job gunning down the Scourge. We see the Hydras now rotating around here. This is so crazy for me. After playing this for so long to see this zoomed out. But we can see the Hydras trying to come through to catch up with the rest of this army. The drones are being evacuated, but even when the Hydras get here, if Guillaume handles this properly, he can pull out and get away unscathed. Yeah, gets away, doesn't even lose a single shield on, or sorry, a single hit point on this shuttle, only shields. Now, the cool thing about this, sure, it didn't kill that many drones, but it killed a lot of overlords, and also on top of that, it forced the Hydra army back. This allows him to take a third base now. The Hydra pressure isn't there. This all goes back to the nice lucky catch there for Guillaume on the Mutilas. He was looking for that fight, and the boy wasn't ready. So he had to pull drones too, so he lost some economy there in the main base. It wasn't about killing the drones, it was about taking the third base, forcing that lost mining time. So finally, for the first time in a long time, he can leave his base freely and take that third nexus. You know, I have a little bit of sympathy here for the boy, because this is one of the less common unit comps that you ever really see in Brood War. Even when you see Corsair Reaver, a lot of the best players will try to transition out of it. But Guillaume actually doubled down, and I think that's why we saw not enough Mutas, not enough Scourge. And the boy is just now realizing that Guillaume has actually acquired this third base. And there is a chance still the boy can run him over. There's not that many Reavers, guys. Yeah. He's got to control this perfectly. If the Hydras just move up there and gun down the shuttle and then the Reavers, this base is going to fold. You can see he stacked his drones up too much there at the third base. You know, basically is natural. Doesn't have that much mining in the main. But here comes the attack. He needs a good arc here with his Hydras. The arc so far is good. The Reavers coming out of the shuttles now. Corsair's coming over. Does he have the disruption web? Doesn't look like it. I don't see it yet. I don't see any disruption web. It looks like the Reavers are going to go down. And even though Guillaume's had some brilliant play, he does not have enough on the ground here.
And even if he had Disruption Web, they would have had to be perfect. He's transitioning into this Dragoon army, but Hydras are going to be very happy to fight against this directly. He needs more AoE damage. He needs more Reavers. He's got double Robo here in the main base. But the big win for the boy is he is able to kill the Nexus flawlessly, freely here. He's bringing his economy back online in the main base, transferring those drones back over to where he was losing so much mining. And he stabilizes here. And it's all in an instant, right? The Hydra, the Arc came out. The Reapers were in the shuttles. He didn't expect this attack. Didn't really have any observers on the map. Didn't have vision. It just wasn't set up properly. And as you said, it didn't look like he had the Disruption Web ready. It wasn't finished researching if he was researching
I
at all.
don't even know. Did we see a fleet beacon here? I mean, normally when you see people going hard into Corsair and Reaver, it only makes sense, but I don't know if Guillaume had enough gas to support that just yet. But it seems like he's in a real dilemma now. Now, I think this is a smart move by Guillaume to try to move out and start shutting down Overlords in the hopes of a supply block here.
He does have the supply block currently, in fact.
Now, Dragoon Reaver is a unit composition you normally see in Protoss versus Protoss, but there is a way that you can transition from Corsair Reaver into Corsair Reaver Dragoon and try to make it work, and it's got a lot of push potential.
Oh, look at the sandwich! Nice sandwich attempt here. He's going to kill so many of these Corsairs. And nearly every single one of them goes down. Okay, this is not going to be a fight he wants to necessarily take, though. Needs to back away here. The Reavers do have the AoE damage, but there's just so many Hydras here. Scarab shots are decent, but not good enough, it doesn't look like. The boy just has
really
too much.
Pick up. He's managing to juggle the Reavers pretty effectively, but at the same time, the sheer number of Hydras is actually just too much. Yeah. And I believe we're almost a checkmate. There it is. GG.
So we end up with the 1-1 here, and so cool to watch the clash of old styles here. And as you said, very difficult to pull off what we saw attempted by Gur there. But the Nexus, he couldn't hold it. He didn't have the proper setup there with the Reavers. As you said, not enough gas for the fleet beacon. And when the attack came in for the last one, he had really good pickups on his Reavers. The micro was good, but the AoE didn't land there, didn't hit the big Scarab shots he was looking for. Perhaps not the best targeting, but the Zerg army was just so massive.
Really nicely done there by the boy. That was a very unusual opening for both sides. I think ultimately the crux of the loss there for Guillaume was possibly trying to stick with Corsair Reaver. I think he might have wanted to transition into gateway units a little bit more quickly, because that's a tough one to pull off, even on a map like that. Very hard. As the Zerg takes more and more of the map, there are so many opportunities to try to surround the shuttle or the Corsairs as they're returning home.
So risky too, because when you're up against mutas like that, you have to make sure your Corsairs are there perfectly. They have to get the good fights. Right. They didn't have those fights, of course, at the hidden base that we saw from the boy, was just basically shut down completely. The mutas came over, had a bad engage, lost all of his Corsairs. Then to keep up the Corsair Reaver, had to go triple Stargate, which he barely had enough money to afford. The gas area that he needed, he was only on 2 bases. Very difficult to kind of keep up with the Zerg in that situation.
And you could see that, you know, whenever you lose the Reaver when you're doing that build, you don't have any assets on the ground. Just to sum that up, we're going to go to a short break. We come back, our second show match here at the launch of StarCraft Remastered.
임진록 전쟁이 시작됐습니다. 먼저 SK텔레콤 이면 선수의 진영은 1시입니다. 다음은 이에 맞서 홍대호 선수는 가로 방향입니다. 11시. 네, 이면 선수 좁은 입구 쪽에 베럭스를 건설하고 있습니다. 정찰하면서 해처리를 자, 마리남과 함께 SB 5개 정도가 상대편 진영으로 가거든요.
네,
그걸 말리게 만들겠다는 거거든요. 자, 벙커 만들죠. 이거 시위예요.
이제는 예, 플레이를 해줘야 되는데.
이거는 벙커 거의 완성된다고 봐야
SB가
됩니다.
정말 많습니다. 자, 뒤로 마리 하나 잡지 못하는 옮겨서서 결국 해체를 포기하고 뒤쪽으로 들어 뺍니다. 이러면서 또 많이 투자를 하지 않고 이 정도만 딱 원래 목적, 소기의 목적만 달성을 딱 빼요.
쓰레기 처리를
네.
엄청 과감하네요. 지금.
자, 안만 돌리는 거 이제 확인했습니다. 이만 선수.
예.
막고 서 있는 것은 임미한 선수이고요.
네. 자, 수비 축이 무너지면 안 됩니다. 여기서 럭커를 또 추가됐죠, 홍준 선수. 자, 럭커 2개의 홍준선수 경기 모습 나오고 있죠.
예, 그러면서 저글링들 오고 있고요.
저울링까지 나온 상황에서.
예, 파이어맨이 나와 있는 걸 보고 저글링이 달려든 거죠, 지금.
네. 자, 벙커를 이겨줬고.
이제
럭커도 풀었어요.
이거는 거의 준비 마음 먹은
자,
거거든요.
앞뒤합니다. 홍준선 이게 한 방입니다. 홍준선 노릴 수 있는 이게 한 방이에요.
이거 안 통하면 경기 끝나죠.
네. 자, 어떻게 될지 이 한 방이 통하면 동해서 뚫어야 되거든요. 뚫어내야 되는데 택시 하나 남았고. 아래쪽에 전멸. 홍준 뺍니다.
저 벙커 컸어요.
홍준 완전 뺍니다. 이 방어형 해처리까지 밀리게 생겼어. 다시 한번 럭커 5개. 자, 들어오죠, 홍준 선수. 자, 한 방에 어느 정도 운전을 한 방에 힘을 집중했어요.
예, 홍진호 선수가 지금 열심히 버티고 있는 이유는
보러가기 전에 럭커 거의 다
네,
썼어요.
지지.
임진덕 두 번째 경기입니다. 레퀴엠. 자, 먼저 SK텔레콤의 이묘한 선수의 진영은 셋입니다. 그리고 12시는 현재 1대0으로 뒤지고 있는 KTF 홍준호입니다.
예, 지금도 베럭스를 먼저 가는 플레이를 임미한 선수가 보여주고 있는데
확장을 가져옵니다.
네.
패치를 펴요.
지금-
홍준호. 자, 1경기처럼 또 나갑니다. 마린 2기와 함께 SB 5개.
네, 이 드론에 적의 자원 채취를 방해하겠다는 거죠.
자, 이러면서 계속해서 초반에 상대편의 약한 타이밍, 자, 본진 쪽으로.
그렇죠. 예. 이게 사실은 홍진호 선수가 1경기에서도 이렇게 드론을 동원을 했었어야 되는 거였습니다.
네.
예.
자, 마린 하나도 아직 못 잡았어. 마린
네.
야,
세
머리
개째
세 개까지.
이거는요, 예, 적의 손해가 이만저만이 아닙니다.
네.
야, 지금은 이 드론들 동원하고 그러면은 사실은 SCB가 세다 그래도 컨트롤 싸움이 되는 거예요.
이거 둘은 다 죽었어요. 거의 반 이상 죽었어요. 심사숙고에 당했습니다만 하면 다
지지.
지금부터 매 경기는 마지막 경기가 될 수도 있습니다. 먼저 SK텔레콤의 이미한 선수의 진영 9시입니다. 그리고 홍준호 선수는 6시입니다. 6시. 자, 녹색의 저그. 이미한 선수 또다시 빠르게 베럭스 짓고 있고 타격을 최소화하는 건 중요하거든요. 타격이 없으면 더 좋은 것이고.
지금 중요한 거는 미니어스상에서 임미한 선수 SCV가
또
나오죠.
이면 또 나가요.
SCV 지금
이면.
나옵니다.
자, 세 번째 나거든요. 다시 이번엔 드론 받고.
드론들이 나오고 있어야 됩니다.
네.
예.
자, 어떻게 할 것인지. 자, 스포츠.
그렇죠. 예.
아주 단기 전에 끝낼 수 있는 전략을
예,
준비해왔습니다.
홍준 자리 잡아놓고 머리 놓으라 이거다. 머리 놔라. 머리 2개 왔어요.
예,
해처리
예.
만들기 1번 직전.
SCB들이 똘똘 뭉쳐서
자,
오다가
뒤. 자, 뒤를 잡아서 머리 잡으세요. 머리. 자, 머리 하나, 머리 둘, 머리
컨트롤
둘.
싸움이에요.
머리 하나도 못 잡았어요. 머리 하나 못 잡고.
이러는 가운데 벙커가 완성되면 또 여기
드론
위험합니다.
5개 죽었어요.
뒤에 머리 잡고
홍준 선수 드론 거의 다 죽었어요.
야, 이거는 지지네요.
드론 다 죽었습니다. 홍준은 급격히 늘어지고 있습니다.
야, 이거는 예.
저그 상들의 무적 필살기입니다.
홍준 선수 이 3경기에 이 차이를 드론이 없어요.
시각 변동이 일어날 수밖에
잠이
없습니다.
올라가죠.
위험합니다.
벙커를 어떻게 할 수 있을지 고치는 SCB가 더 많습니다.
지지.
아무것도 못했어요. 홍진호
이번에
선수.
4분 13초 만에 결국 같은 작전이 3번 연패했습니다. 홍진호.
They thought esports might be dead, Wolf, and then Blizzard got the paddles out, put it on the chest of StarCraft, shocked the heart back alive.
And here we
And
are.
it's back and better than ever, baby.
And that crowd shot we keep seeing, man, that is the heart beating. There it is, right there. There's your heart graph. That's your pulse beating. And we're here now. We've had our first series. We're going into, of course, these matches. They're not best of twos. They're just two-game sets,
games
right?
in a row.
And so we're going to go into another set of 2 games with our second series here. 2 legends from the second era of Brood War with Boxer and Yellow.
And so these two guys, Boxer and Yellow, this was when, after players like Guillaume and the boy got the very basic building blocks and some of the basic problems on how the matchups work out of the way, these guys really started to solve stuff, specifically on the micro fronts. Slayer's Boxer was really well known for getting in there, especially with drop ships, doing a lot of damage and escaping unscathed. And Yellow is a player. Look, he's very well rounded, and he was very good at especially a lot of these tactical mid-game Zerg plays. But for these two players playing here now, you should know, if you had to have one takeaway, the most important thing is Boxer tends to bunker rush Yellow.
Yeah, he
and
always. We know it's going to happen.
It should happen.
Like
It'll be very surprising if it doesn't.
We've cast show matches of these players after their professional careers in Brood War ended in StarCraft 2, then when they came back into Brood War, of course, very recently. And every time they meet, we get to see at least one bunker, and the SCV is pulled. And if you followed StarCraft 2, it's very similar to the beginning era of StarCraft 2 with some of the bit-by-bit prime type bunkering and SCVs. You pull your SCVs, you try to bunker the Zerg, you kill him early. And it all came from Brood War. That bunker rush style is from this game. And we'll see if he wants to pull it off here.
So this should be a pretty micro-intensive matchup. Once we figured out that StarCraft was a game about production, people like Yellow and Slayer's Boxer taught us that it's also a game of control. Yeah. Will Boxer do his famous bunker rush, which, by the way, is still basically viable in a lot of TDZ games if you do it right?
Now, this guy is, of course, a three-time champion, but also a Pro League champion. He played so many best-of-ones in Pro League, and some people say that's where he really shined, because the best-of-one, there are no second chances. There's no way to react. When you hit Boxer in a Pro League match, maybe he allies mind, shows us something we've never seen before, now banned in professional play. We talked about the mind games, him using chat even in-game, using drop ships before anybody else, getting the extra value. And this player, his opponent, is most famous for getting second place. The nickname Kong, and people say the Kong line. You think of players in StarCraft 2 like Marine King and Sue. This is the original Kong. This is the player who made so many finals, more than are listed here, but always came up second place.
I do look forward to this. Yellow, he knows how to stop bunker rushes, but Boxer was the first person to really show us that you can exploit control to this level that's almost comical. So, assuming we see a bunker rush, just to get this out of the way early on, the Zerg has to use the majority of his drones to stop it. And the Terran will send some SCVs with that, but keep in mind, you know, you lose too many SCVs in that rush, or you proxy too far out. Well, the Zerg holds it. The Zerg's probably going to win later on.
Yeah, you pull all the SCVs, that's what we call an all-in. You either win or you lose in that moment. Such an economic advantage if you kill the hatchery, you pull your SCVs back, but we rarely even see anything beyond that first engage. We very rarely see the transition. It's all or nothing. It's a short game if we see it. But we're jumping into game number one, guys, right here, right now. It's the remaster launch, GG together with myself and Tasteless.
Esports necromancy.
Here we are. We're going to Fighting Spirit, by the way. One of the most famous maps to this day. But Tasteless, introduce the players.
Alrighty, in the upper right, in the blue is Slayer's Boxer. And by the way, we have, in this game, we have the effects turned on, so you can see some of the, I'm probably gonna butcher this, like 3D lighting?
Yeah, it's lighting.
The way the lighting's work. So this is a cool upgrade they had here, which you can use when you're playing StarCraft Remastered. In the bottom right is Yellow, his opponent.
And we talked about the modes you could do with the new game, and you know, you and I have had the pleasure of actually playing it and messing around with it. You press F5 when we're talking about how easy it is. You press F5 to make it widescreen. You can put it back to standard definition graphics, the 4:3. But I believe it's F7 you press, which opens up these cool lighting effects, and it just makes the game have an extra detail it never had before. As you can see, the SCVs, little thrusters as they return the minerals back and forth. And we talked about how Boxer was the player who kind of defined early rushes, doing dropship strategies. He was kind of a pain for a lot of players to deal with because he had so many strategies, so popular in Pro League. But he's also the first icon of StarCraft. He's the player who was the legend, who got the big sponsorship. He was the first StarCraft player who was on billboards across the city. He still is today, and many people consider him to be the father of esports and the first real legend that people looked up to as a player.
Okay, so we're definitely most likely going to have a bunker rush. There is the option for Terran to try to fast expand with this, but just because he's putting this here and it's Slayer's Boxer, I'm going to go out on a limb here and deduce that it's probably going to be a bunker rush. With Yellow here now going for hatch first, this could be favorable for him. I just want to point out real quickly here, guys, this new observer interface is so cool. StarCraft 1 was so old, they didn't have an observer feature initially. In fact, if Terran couldn't have lifted off the command center, we wouldn't have been able to spec games.
Yeah, wouldn't have had esports as we know it.
The way they started when the game was televised is they'd have a third player in the game who's Terran, who lifts off and hides his SCVs. Then both players give him vision, and the game continues.
Yeah.
And I'm sorry if I sound like an old person here. Like, back in my day, we didn't watch TV. We just stared at the flames in the fireplace. But that's how it was back then, guys. So this is very cool to have this here now.
Yeah. All right, second SCV coming out here. Going to try to deny the drone. We'll be able to do it with the depot. But it is going to be a tight wall here, so looks like he wants to expand behind this.
Yeah, I think he still might make a bunker.
Sure.
Oh, no, you know what? I might be totally wrong here, guys. Let's see. The Marine's coming out now. Now, this may just be a feigned pressure build. We'll know how much he's committing to by how many SCVs he sends. Sometimes you see 2 bunkers planted down
and
here.
Look at this, even the respect from Yellow, he knows he pulls 2 drones immediately. And even if you just start a bunker, it can force a reaction like this. Drones off the line, so much more drones here pulled here for Yellow than are for Boxer, so he gets an economic disadvantage as a result, and this bunker, of course, can always be canceled, so he's just going to back away. And this is one way you bunker rush. You don't commit. It's not the all-in version where you pull a ton of SCVs. It's just a few here, just the 2. Gets the cancel, gets most of the money back, and now he can transition back at home to the CC. He has the factory tech available as well.
Yeah, this is kind of cool because it looks initially like it's a pretty aggressive bunker rush, but the Terran can safely retreat. And what the Terran's doing now is teching up here to a factory. If I was a Zerg player, I would have assumed there's a command center being planted down here behind this. But to get the quick gas is quite interesting. This may throw Yellow off. Sometimes in StarCraft, the Zerg has to constantly react and monitor what his opponent's doing until the Zerg can take a certain form based off the tech they've acquired, the macro engine they've worked up to then begin to punish the other player. And especially in a TVZ, that can start very early on. But every time Terran takes a risk or deviates from the norm, and a lot of more Terran players have a more orthodox approach to this matchup, the Zerg can end up very much so ahead.
Yeah. And well, right now, you know, we see the tech in the main base. We don't see the CC coming up just yet. He could, of course, add that later, but there's just no vision here for Yellow. He didn't want to send Overlords out early because he knew it might be that heavy commitment to Marines and a bunker rush, so his Overlords could have gotten caught on rally. He just doesn't have a lot of vision. As you can see on the minimap, StarCraft is a game of limited information, and it's dark there on the right side because he just simply doesn't know what is coming. This is going to be the first real double check here with it looks like just a Zergling coming across the map to see what he can find, but there's just no way he can know if there's a command center there, a starport, or hell, could be 2 starports in the main base, could be an all-in follow-up here from Boxer. There's just no way he knows, so he has to play carefully here. He's even adding that layer right now. And there's no CC, just going to be the tech follow-up here, just the single starport, and in fact, that machine shop is researching.
Yeah, let's see what exactly he goes for here. The fact of the matter is this is not a standard approach to a TVZ. So Boxer's trying to play out of whether it was the meta of the past or the meta of now. This is not what you normally see here. And if you could throw off a player like this, for instance, getting Vultures here with Spider Mines, I'm assuming, or Vultures with speed can also be viable, and dropping them, the Terran may perhaps be assuming there's going to be a push, and therefore his main is absolutely safe. Speed Vultures can outrun Lings forever, as long as they have enough surface area to maneuver around. And with a layer tech on the way here, this may heavily punish Yellow, who is only just now going to find out that there's not been a command center at that expansion all along.
Yeah, it's going to be this first glimpse of it. This making a Hydrogen and a Spire here, so both forms of tech. And 2 Vultures out now, and no research here, of course, on the control tower. You might even see the Vultures go up for a poke, then later get dropped, as he is going to lift this this barracks here and send the Vultures across the map with speed. So, going to come over here and look for some harass. But again, Yellow's been playing safe all game. He pulled the drones early. He's going to find these Vultures. Now, this is going to be a good trade here, but this is the dropship follow-up I was talking about. The Sunken makes it impossible to attack the front directly, but the dropship will make it possible. Remember, we were talking about this from the beginning. Boxer was one of the first players to actually do this. He's going to do it again with that dropship. He's going to look for massive drone damage in the main base.
Now, time is critical. He has to get inside the main right away and take out as many workers as possible. The Spire is on the way. We have 1 drone coming out here to make a 3rd hatchery, although that's not as impactful as what's about to happen next here. These Lings are not in position in time And with three vultures here in the main, this is going to be tough as long as Boxer can control these vultures properly.
Ooh, actually messes that one up, but gets another one. The fourth one actually unloaded here, so you were correct. It was the 4, but not all in the same location, forcing the split defense here from Yellow. Several drones have been killed. Needs to get the dropship back over here to get the vultures if he plans on saving them. Looks like he just wants to sack them here and trade for drones, which is obviously going to be an advantage for the Terran. These vultures are so cheap at 75 minerals a pop. This is amazing right now for Boxer, the damage he's been able to do.
I am concerned, though, with the overall tech pattern that Terran's gone for here, that he might end up getting punished later on. With Hydras, as well as Mutas we see just now hatching, what does Terran actually have at home? And with the dropship out of the game, what other options really are there? It looks like he's scrambling to get some defense up here, but he doesn't have anything in time.
Yeah,
and Yellow, I think, may punish Boxer here and end up taking a win.
He has a few Marines, right? He's going to have this ragtag group of units. He's going to try to get the first Goliath out. The eBay isn't ready yet for the shells. He has one Valkyrie and no micro here on the Mutas. The splash damage is real, and they're going to be forced away, so he saved this up for now. That was the most dangerous moment with the heavy commitment of gas to the Mutas for Boxer, and with that tiny ragtag group of units, he survives the worst, but it's not over yet. Now desperately trying to get up a missile turret here, and that first Goliath Stim's on the way.
He's going to come in here with a Scourge to try to hit the Valkyrie, and it works! And therefore, there's probably not enough on the ground here for the Terran.
Second Valkyrie, though, he needs to micro those Mutas, and the turret is almost ready. And yet again, he's pushed away. Killing the Valkyrie was the most important part. But that natural, it's mining. He's not using the mobility of the Mutas to try to harass two fronts because of that Valkyrie. But there's a turret up here now. Can't find much else. And he went for the kill instead of the economic damage, which means Boxer can now try to recover. He has Stim on the way, and the Bioforce is getting larger by the moment here. May even have a Goliath out here in just a moment to help stave off the next attack.
Yeah, I think even if he gets the Valkyrie here, he might end up with another Valkyrie popping out. Now, the turret's there, but the Mutas do not have to engage. And in fact, they're going to be taking out a lot of these SCVs.
Second Valkyrie here. Again, it's about the micro. Using the Scourge at the front here. Boxer has to be very careful with how he pokes this down. Oh, the pain is real.
That was great control. I can't believe he actually kept that alive.
It's insane. He almost actually lost it there, but looked to get the greedy kill onto those Scourge. And Yellow has taken this hit in third base. This is common, of course, for the Zerg to take a base to the bottom left. It's hidden per se, but it's what Boxer's going to be expecting in terms of third bases going on till later stages of this game.
Okay, Yellow may be a little bit too ambitious here. With the Valkyries actually out, two of them. By the way, the Valkyrie is a very difficult unit to control. There were whole periods in the StarCraft 1 meta historically where it wasn't really used because it is a buggier unit. But hold up, he was safe from the air, but what about the ground? The Lynx can now spill through here. The Muta's going for the kill move here on the tank.
Okay, he needs that tank. He doesn't have siege mode yet. It doesn't look like here. He has the comsat scanners, but this is not a tight wall. Link stream through. He's looking for the siege tank. Doesn't find it here. That's the crux of this defense, along with that comsat scanner here. Medic's buying some more time. He needs that siege mode desperately to repair here, but just a single FCV. He's going to save this off for now.
Now, is he going to try to leap forward here? I think he's hemorrhaging too many Zerglings. But let's see. There's a possible follow-up attack. Is he going to go for it?
He's going to go for it.
Here we go!
Turret's in position. He needs that siege mode. He doesn't have it yet. Stim is used on these Marines. Doesn't actually get into position. He's just trying to use the range of the siege tanks here. Great micro by Yellow, repositioning that first lurker.
Now
this going in.
The scanner is in the way here. If the turret's taken out and the scanner goes down, I don't believe he has a science vessel yet. At least we don't see it because it's been focused on Valkyries.
He needs a scan here. There
it is.
Siege mode is ready. Good micro here by Yellow. He saves every lurker. And now he's got the third base economy. This ended up being a pretty good trade for him. The follow-up attack is moving across the map, getting macro hatcheries up as well.
He's actually, he might be able to fish the Terran forward and then dive in with the next group of Lynx and Lurkers.
Needs to not lose any more of these, though. 3 more going down. He saved them initially. This is going to be an expensive cost here. Just wants to brute force it here. Siege tanks in the front lines, very vulnerable. Scans go down. Gets both the lurkers, though. And now he's just bleeding units at this point, Tasteless.
A pretty ambitious play there from Yellow. I see the idea behind it because of the wonky tech path there from Slayer's Boxer. Even though there are threats woven in to that style of play from Boxer, there's also an obvious lacking amount of core Terran units sometimes for these when you get to a certain point in the game. So Zerg can try to come in there and kill him, but with Boxer's great control, he's basically weathered that storm, and he's now in a pretty comfortable position to continue to macro up. He has a decent number of barracks. He's making tanks. I'm assuming we're going to have science vessels in play coming up here.
The facility's on the way now, so he decided that he wanted to save his gas, so making sure he could get the siegemen out just in time, putting that gas into the siege tank defense. Science vessel is going to be completed soon, so we'll have that for detection. But let's not forget, even though the attacks have failed, the tech is moving forward for the Zerg as well. It's moving closer to those defilers, those dark swarms. He has lurkers, of course, on his ramp to the bottom left. And because this wasn't a 5 racks, more standard, more modern type of play from Boxer, he doesn't have a large bioforce to even look to threaten that bird base right now. It's very small, as you can see here. So he's going to look to use drop ships instead of a brute force attack. The risk, of course, being the Scourge. That's why he sends the Valkyrie forward to make sure there's no Scourge in the way as he looks for this angle.
Okay, the dropship is headed southbound now. Even if the Valkyrie goes down, it's more important that it keeps the dropship alive. The Scourge are en route.
Good micro, saves the dropship and gets the Scourge. Doesn't want to commit to those second 2 Scourge either. Very well played by Boxer.
Boxer attempting to poke out here. Again, this is a 2-base Terran against now a 4-base powering Zerg. In this phase of the matchup, we eventually will have the Terran push out. The burden is not on the Zerg to end the game. You can see the Zerg's already got the Terran surrounded with Lings spread out everywhere. The Zerg will continue to gobble up expansions on the map, tech up to Defilers, which is the most important tech in this matchup, using Dark Swarm and ability. Oh, he's actually going to get Guardians here as well.
Looks like he wants to set up a contain. Look at the minimap. He's basically just fanning out all this anti-air, the Hydras, the Scourge. Doesn't want Boxer to send any more drops across map. Wants to contain him on 2-base. But it's tough to contain a Terran that now has vessels, has that massive bioforce, doesn't need to commit to dropships. He has that brute force attack he can use. It's going to be about the Defilers to buy time here with the Dark Swarms to keep these bases alive. But you have to think that if this attack fails, definitely advantage Yellow moving forward.
Well, Yellow can do it. It's going to come down to the control. This is very tough. These guys have a lot of control groups selected. Oh my God, Beeline barely does not take out that science vessel. Tank's moving forward here. It looks like he's going to send some Lings in with us. And Yellow's going for the throw.
The vessel's down here, but he just can't commit into this bio. Gets the vessel at least with that brute force attack. They're just going to have to back off here and reposition the lurkers. This drop gets away meanwhile. It's going to try to find an angle.
He's going to go right through where the rally point is. And that means this dropship should not manage to land. Definitely a poor play there by Slayer's Boxer. Slayer's Boxer, though, continuing to push. The Terran has to play around the fact that Dark Swarms are a threat. The mini game that goes on here is you want to try to irradiate the Defilers. The Defilers then die off. You can't cast Dark Swarm. Meanwhile, the Zerg is trying to catch the Science Vessel with the Scourge to prevent the Science Vessels from irradiating the Defilers.
That's right. And even if the Defilers are in perfect position, you just use energy for free units, basically. You use the irradiate to kill lurkers. If you can get a big group of Lings, it's rare. You can at least use it to do that. If you have a large Science Vessel count, that's why it's important to constantly trade up as the Zerg. Take those vessels out with your cheap Scourge. They're faster to build. You get 2 from 1 larva. The Science Vessel is very expensive in gas, and it's also very slow to build. And now, Yellow's been able to take a 4th base down near the bottom. He has Nidus network control, and now he's going to look for a fight here as well. In the middle of the map, no siege on these tanks. The lurkers are going for broke.
Oh, the irradiate was just a second too late, and that is gunned down. Keep in mind, anything that's ranged cannot deal damage inside the Dark Swarm cloud. Boxer actually dives forward and pushes up here. Is he going to get sandwiched? We might see another Dark Swarm cloud come down.
Yeah, it looks like he might want to set up with a flank with these Lings here, but he's getting very efficient trades, but running into this lurker here. Looks like it's just alone, so he will stim and push through. He avoided the Dark Swarms, and now this is a very vulnerable moment for Yellow, who doesn't have his lurker set up. He's got 3 of them nearby. We'll buy some time with these. The ones on the left side, though, they're not burrowed. He could try to go for the surround, but they're just not in position. It's almost as if he's forgotten about them, Tasteless.
They see the Lings coming up here now. The lurkers do burrow down, but I have to say, this is a pretty powerful position that Terran has.
Oh,
but with a really good surround.
He's going to have to run through these again, and now the Marines are just getting totally trashed here.
Well,
does have the scan.
You know, he's got just enough medics. It seems like Yellow's not quite doing the damage he needs to do, but he's regrouping. It seems like Yellow should have shut this down, but the second push is inbound here. I'm not clear on how many more Defilers the Zerg has at his disposal, but with a few more Dark Swarms, I think he can definitely hold this position.
This vessel looks like it might want to try to go for a solo eraser attack here, or maybe even just take out another lurker. Maybe not enough energy, or he wants to just move back, keep it with his army. over there on Rally. The unusual late game Guardian here coming out. Don't see that as much in modern day. Sure, we saw it recently in the ASL, of course, over in Africa, but we'll see if we can actually get some harass done. Meanwhile, this Zerg army is going to get trapped. The Guardian's now so much more important. Doesn't have the target here. He's got mostly medics with this army. In fact, it's not a lot of DPS,
yeah,
just the healing.
It's a flimsy army. The problem is if Guardians finish up here, and they are, there's no real easy answer for Terran, and that's the only mining location that Terran realistically has at this point in time. And if Yellow can continue to curb these pushes and slow it down, that's all he has to do.
Oh, the sound of a lot of dead medics here, but he does gain some ground. Yellow moving back half of his lurker army, buying time again because he knows the Guardians may be able to bring him into a very strong position here, because Boxer just simply doesn't have, at this current moment in time, any answer for them. They're going to start chipping away at these SCVs, and they're just so high superiority range fighters. Turrets can't save these SCVs. He needs answers with air, perhaps Wraiths or Irradiates, but he just doesn't have them.
Yeah, and with Ultralisk coming out here, that's when the army is beefy enough. It can take on basically anything. We see the medics are going to be cleaned up here, and with no mining expansion, I gotta say, I think Yellow should be taking this game.
Yeah, hyper-aggressive attacks, catching the vessels consistently, picking off the Marines, and this is not going to be very cost-efficient, obviously. Just 2 Ultras isn't going to be enough. Picks off a few of those medics, but all he needs to do is pull back to his better economy. He's now taken a 5th base on the map. As mentioned before, it's all controlled by Nias. We're going to see the Eraser here to kill these Guardians, but the damage has already been done.
This is the Eraser technique where you irradiate your own vessels, because only bio units take damage from irradiate. And then what you do is you move the vessels and try to bump them into the other units and damage them, but it doesn't look like Boxer is microing intensely enough, so the race will be the conclusion to fix this expansion over here. But I gotta say, I don't think Boxer has much more time in this game if he does not manage to get a 3rd base up. And if you look at the bottom of the map, Yellow's in control of basically everything. And with not just Defilers in play, but Ultralisk as well, it's very different in a head-to-head fight for the Terran to ever come out on top.
Yeah, this is we're looking at Yellow's vision specifically. That's why the map looks so dark. And he knows that he's basically got Boxer contained right now. He sees the drop ship, and so he's got this massive control on the map, and Boxer's just struggling to somehow get another Bioforce and move across the map. But we have the Nias, as we talked about. Defiler tech has been out for a long time. We've got Ultras and even Greater Spire. So all Yellow needs to do is take the safe, slow approach to finishing this game, and he should have it. Just dealing with these drop ships, and now moving in for the kill blow.
Okay, we have Marines here, but not enough medics. Irradiates are going down, but when the Ultras come in here, they will have to kite backwards. The Lurkers now coming forward. They will have premium position over this expansion. The SCVs need to be evacuated, and I believe this is the beginning of the end of this game.
There it is, GG. Boxer defeated by longtime rival here, Yellow, in our first game. He went for a hyper-aggressive tech style, went for the Vulture drop, which did a lot of damage, but as you mentioned, the counterattack did a lot more. And even though the counterattack with the Hydras did do massive economic damage, it allowed the space for Yellow to take the bottom left 3rd base. And he took the economic lead. The engages in the middle of the map were very much better for Yellow. He got the vessel count low, oftentimes with those Scourges. And I think the turning point, of course, was that kill on that army where he surrounded it. Both sides there, right outside of Yellow's base. Killed the majority of the Marines. The medics alone couldn't fight and couldn't even get home. And now we're going to go into a second game, but Yellow looks to be very pleased with this performance.
It is packed down here on Guangali Beach. We're going to go into the rematch now of Slayers Boxer versus Yellow, all being played for the first time we've ever seen in StarCraft Remastered. Let's see if Boxer goes for an actual bunker rush instead of faking it, and if Yellow sticks to an orthodox playstyle and manages to come out on top.
Okay, this is going to be Outbreaker. So one of the things to talk about is this is a new version of Outbreaker that was used. I say new, but it was used 15 years ago in Panasonic Olympics and MyCube. So a map that's very old and was played in the era of Boxer and Yellow. So it's a map they're very familiar with. But newer players and newer fans of Brood War watching 2010 plus, or you're like a fan of Stork, you watch 2007, you might not know this map, but it's an old one. And it's cool to talk about how, even though the game wasn't updated through balance patches all the time, the game was balanced through maps. And so that's why some of these old maps are phased out, but still relevant today.
Okay, we're moments away from getting into this game. Let's see if Boxer tries to go for something more aggressive, less sneaky than he did in game number 1 here. Yellow, though, definitely riding a high after taking out his rival. So far, so good for him. Again, guys, tell your friends to join us. StarCraft Remastered will be available in the next, over the next 2 weeks in PC cafes all throughout South Korea. And after that, it will be out for the public. For the common nerd, that's you, guy at home.
Indeed. Well, Boxer's family is in the audience. They are watching. Can he bring this one back? That's the big question. As it looks like our game is finally up and loaded, Tasteless.
We're going into this. I cannot wait. I do hope we can see more of that classic bunker rushing coming in here from Slayer's Boxer. Anyways, we're ready. Let's do this. Slayer's Boxer versus Yellow. I guess we're not going to go into it yet.
We got the call, we were jumping into game, but perhaps there was a glitch in the matrix and we were told the wrong information. But still, I'm really enjoying the play that we're seeing. It feels reminiscent of these two, their old rivalry. Just watching Lurkers kill Marines and Medics in HD, watching the micro, of course, of those vessels. This is such an iconic matchup. It's the matchup that I think a lot of fans really resonate with because it harkens back to a lot of the grand finals we've seen from Star Leagues, from Pro League. And it's cool to see how micro-intensive it is, the decision-making that's still shown from these players who haven't played the game professionally in basically a decade.
Well, one thing to note when we see these fights in a Terran versus Zergus, it's so hard for both sides to control their army. It really is. If you have ever tried moving 6 or 7 control groups of Marines and Medics along with a vessel and trying to have synergy and some kind of symbiosis with the army without misstepping just one time and going over lurker spikes. And the same is true for the Zerg. You have all these lings and lurkers. You're trying to set up flanks. You're trying to set up traps. You have to get this clunky defiler over there and get the Dark Swarm set up.
It's so frustrating when you're trying to chase a vessel with Scourge, right? You feel like you just almost got it. He takes the slight angle. Your Scourge miss it and do the kind of patrol animation where they go to the side. You just barely miss it. And you're so close, you're on the chase, and the Marines gun down your Scourge, and you're like, oh, I was microing this so hard, but he was on top of it. I've lost these units now. Or as a Terran, when you feel like you finally have the flank, you use those 6 control groups, your 1A, 2A, 3A, 4A, 5A across the map, and suddenly a Dark Swarm comes from an angle you didn't expect. There's hold position lurkers under there. You lose all your army. You're so focused, but still, everything changes in an instant.
Yeah, it's a funny matchup because things can turn upside down in a second. Anyways, this is not a drill. We are actually ready for the second game, Slayer's Boxer versus Yellow. Let's find out if Boxer can get his revenge or if Yellow's going to come out with a 2-0 lead. All right, we're on. In the upper right, in the yellow, our Terran player, Slayer's Boxer. And his opponent down here in the bottom right, in the purple, Yellow.
Well, you know, we started this game at exactly as a joke that Korean commentators made at 22-22, 10-22, and Yellow taking the lead. He's known for being number 2. You read that in 24-hour time, the 22-22. Feels like it's all favoring Yellow. The lines are coming together for him. But we'll see if Boxer wants to bring us out with a aggressive 2-racks proxy or, you know, some sort of more aggressive bunkering, pulling more SCBs here, because just historically speaking, he's always done this. You know, we thought we might see it in the last game, but he faked the pressure instead. With his back against the wall here now, down 0-1 though, will he be able to commit? That's the question on this map that hasn't seen play in so long, Tasteless.
And we're still waiting to see where Slayer's Boxer is going to spend his money, because for the time being, I don't see SCVs in the middle of the map, and I do not see a barrack, so it seems like he's been a little bit late here with his first depot.
Yeah, actually might even lose a little bit of build time on that second SCV, as seen here. Looks like he wants to go ahead and build the barracks here very quickly after the depot. It's a more economic approach, I guess you could argue. I think it might have been a mistake as well, but he gets a little bit more money from the late SCV, but he loses the money. Because he didn't send the SCV to build a depot right away, he mined maybe 2 or 3 more minerals, but it's less significant than having the extra SCV that he's now missing.
One thing to note is that I think because of the later barracks, I don't think we see a bunker rush. So much of a bunker rush is hinged on a matter of seconds, and even sometimes like a half a second or a quarter of a second. So Boxer may actually go for a macro game here. Now, Yellow seems to be completely unfazed by anything that happened in the previous game. He's getting his natural expansion up here. We'll see a spawning pool go down next, and then either a third hatch or Vespian gas, depending on what rate he wants to tech at.
Notice he also sends the drone scout across, so even though he's unfazed about what we saw in the last game, he plays safe. Both games, he sent the drone scout out. He had drones to protect against the initial SCV, was not willing to allow Boxer to even phase him with the bunker rush, and respected it heavily. Now he's going to have the early SCV scout. He sees where the SCV is coming from, doesn't even have to commit his overlord, so Boxer is going to proxy a factory, not the barracks in the middle of the map.
Okay, so this is not particularly normal, but the idea is centered around the fact that the overlord may try to come in here and take a peek at what's going on, and because of the scouting paths that the overlords usually take, they don't really cross the center. Not necessarily, and even if Zerg were to check the center, they would have done it earlier to check for the barracks, not for the factory. So he may make vultures from here, I believe.
That's probably the case, right?
Usually when I've seen people do this, they make 2 factories in the middle, but it looks like he might want to stick with 1. Now, at the same time, Yellow comes inside of Slayer's Boxer's base, looks around, and the lack of structures is information in of itself, right?
Yeah,
clearly he's hiding something.
Yeah, where is your second barracks or where's your CC? You don't have either, but you have a gas. So knowing you have a gas, there has to be a factory somewhere, right? And the drone's going to go directly to the middle of the map and scout this immediately because he says, well, of course you have this, right? Of course you've simply hidden this in the middle of the map. Why would you have the gas and no factory in the main? So the Vulture proxy now scouted. Yellow has the advantage in terms of knowledge of this, but he still has to defend it.
Now this expansion's set up in a bit of an odd way, and we're about to see this. See, he's going to beat me to it. You can actually go up the ramp and still hit the drones from the high ground, whereas you can't on a lot of other maps, which allows you to get pretty abusive early on. But if the Zerg handles it well at all, the Terran's in an awkward spot. The factory is, of course, in the middle of the map, which means you can't safely produce tanks from there later on.
Looks like he sent the Vultures to the top, actually, just trying to clear out any perhaps hidden bases or any other drone scouts. We'll now look for the run home here. The factory is lifted. He's sending it back. He has double barracks, just wants to tech up to bio, but he's not going to have the CC. He's not going to have the extra economy with this, and his rush has essentially failed. It's not a fully wasted investment, but he didn't get the damage done he wanted to, just simply by the fact that it was scouted. Now, the Vultures are going to look for this high ground, but Hydras are already ready. He's known about this for so long. He knows this is the map he's going to be playing against Boxer, so Vultures come up here. Now they're kind of trapped. They should be able to get out here. In fact, they want to take this Hydra down with them. But a good response from Yellow.
Okay, good control here by Slayer's Boxer. Looks like he should be able to get out with those Vultures. The problem is, for Terran, is what is the follow-up here? It's annoying for the Zerg to try to play catch up here. Notice he's got a trap set up here. He's going to be able to box in these Vultures eventually.
Very difficult to do, though.
Yeah, well, you know, they're so nimble. It's so easy for them to run away. But I think eventually this is going to get cleaned up. This one Vulture on the right should be gunned down. And then we have the Hydras blocking the ramp. So it's just a matter of time. And then, of course, what is the proper follow-up for Terran? A handful of Marines? We don't have any...
he has
we have medics
though.
coming out now.
Yeah,
but honestly, if Terran doesn't do a lot of damage with this style of play early on, Terran just should be in a deficit. But I think the way that Slayer's Boxer is approaching it is because there's a ramp up to the above area of the natural, he can try to punish him that way.
I think what he wants to do is just get this high ground control, but he has to wrestle with these first group of Hydras. Right now, we do see Yellow struggling to get units out in time, wants to control his Hydra, wants to prevent this here. Okay, we're going to see this first fight. This is not enough ground units here for the Zerg.
He had Hydras for the Vultures, but he doesn't have Lurkers for the Marines.
Yeah, doesn't have a lot of links
he
either.
Might just get it in time. This is a very specific timing attack. It caught Yellow off guard, despite the Vultures being handled. The Marine push coming through right here may end up shutting down this game here for Yellow.
He's going to go ahead and take out this hatchery here. He had the answer, as you said, for the Vultures, but the Hydras, especially in low number like this, not going to be the answer for the Marines and Stim. He's going to try to have this last-ditch attempt, but look at this, the Stim back, the medics to heal, that extra Stim damage. The hatchery will absolutely go down. I think this is the beginning of the end.
I don't see any Lurkers in sight. I think that on some level, Yellow actually assumed it was going to be continued mech play.
He said you're so
Boxer
fast.
duped him.
That's
and that's going to be it. GG. Boxer gets his revenge.
said, wow, your timing attack, your follow-up was so fast, is what he says. So at least I suppose that gives us a hint that he knew that that was going to be the follow-up, but still couldn't stop it. Didn't have a sunken ready there. And Boxer's family going to be happy with this. His wife raises his daughter into the crowd as he brings back the 1-1. And what a crafty build. The follow-up clearly well prepared here for Boxer, knowing that the Hydras would be forced by the Vultures to control high ground. He needed range, otherwise the Vultures get free reign. And then the follow-up attack, he had the armor, he had the quick stim. And as Yellow put it there in Korean in the chat, it was just too quick for him to respond to.
Amazing job there by Slayer's Boxer to get in. He utilized the fact that there is an awkwardness to the second base that you're trying to get set up as a Zerg player. So he sends those Vultures in. A lot of people, when they see the Vultures, assume that there's going to be a Terran player sticking to mech.
Yeah.
And to have the follow-up where the Marines actually come out. Look, Hydras take care of the Vultures just fine. We saw that. But Hydras are absolutely horrible against Marines.
Especially in such a small number like that.
You need Zerglings, you need Lurkers.
Yeah,
basically.
the Hydras don't do enough damage quickly enough when you have even the two medics there. So there you have it, the 1-1.
We'll be back in just a little bit, guys. Don't go away. Here at the launch of StarCraft Remastered.
먼저 프로토스로 경기하는 박정훈 선수의 진영부터 보겠습니다. 역시 박정석 프로토스. 그리고 이에 맞서는 이윤열 선수의 진영은 11시입니다. 이윤열 테란.
모험적인 전략을 사용하진 않네요.
네. 이윤열 선수 팩토리에도 두 곳에서 뭔가 계속 개발 중입니다.
걸쳐겠죠.
네. 날아가네요. 일단은 드랍십에 벌써 4개를 태웠을 것으로 보이고.
예, 본진과 앞마당 쪽은 너무 나뉘어 있으면은 그렇게 좋지 않아요.
네.
예.
자, 드랍십 드랍십 내려서 먼저 드랍십부터 파괴를 하고 퇴로를 차단한 이후에 박정수 선수 드라군 3개 했기 때문에 어느 정도는 잘 막을 것으로 보입니다만 이윤열 보겠습니다.
그나마
네,
옵저버가 추가적으로 나왔기 때문에
예.
그나마 다행이죠.
네.
옵저버도 있고 이거는 아주 큰 피해를 볼 것 같지는 않네요.
네.
예. 그 이윤열 선수는 최대한 여기서 많은 프로브를 사냥하는 게 그게 제일 좋죠.
네, 자, 마인을 다 청소를 하고 박정수 선수, 자, 그동안의 프로브의 피해는 좀 있긴 있었습니다만
저 마인은-
자, 마인 박정수!
이거는 거의 예.
승패에 영향을 줄 수 있는 결정적인 타격이죠.
자, 본진밖에 자원 차지할 수 있는 곳이 없었는데 프로브 프로브가 없었거든요.
예, 둘 남았군요. 예.
저 정도면 몇 기 정도가 가게 된 겁니까?
야, 세트도 다 이거는 야.
박정서 선수 저 마인 2기에 의해서 지금 암울해진 상황이죠.
네.
예, 이거 이윤열 선수가 그 정말 그 뭐랄까요? 계획된 플레이였다면 정말 이윤열 선수가 이제 무서운 선수다라고 이제 이야기를 할 수가 있는 건데
네.
뭐냐면은 마인을 모두 소모한 것처럼 하면서 최후의 한두 개의 마인 정도 남겨놓았다라고 하는 이 측면.
리버가 타도 드래곤이 타든 지금 뭐 타격을 줄 수 있는 상황은 아니죠.
네. 자, 리버 하나, 드래곤 하나 탔습니다. 리버 하나, 드래곤 하나. 자, 리버 여기서 또 몇 번 시간을 끕니까? 시간은 또 왜 이렇게 끕니까?
캐럿마저 속을 썩히는군요.
자, 불발까지 나옵니다. 불발 안쪽으로 킥스오피 예전에 박정석의 리버 엄청나지 않았습니까? 자, 아무튼
예.
본질 쪽.
가뜩이나 그
네.
예.
본질 쪽 신경 안 쓰는 건 나름대로 공격을 의도하고 있었기 때문입니다. 이윤현 선수.
예, 이건 뭐 벌써 쳤을 것 같습니다.
네.
지금은 예, 뭐 한 번 더 지게 되면은 굉장히 그 탈락에 가까운 상태가 되기 때문에
이태자
지지.
순간 지지. 네. 초반 프로브 피해를 극복하지 못합니다. 박정석 선수. 경기 시작됐습니다. 양 선수들 대각선이에요. 먼저 이훈열 선수의 진영은 7시, 이에 맞서는 박정석 선수의 진영은 1시입니다.
후반으로 가다가
이 벌처가
네.
중요하거든요.
그냥 무난하게 패한
세기 나갔고 벌처는 파일럿 사냥해야 됩니다.
이윤열 선수는 이 벌처 기회 놓치면 힘들어질 수 있어요.
두개 남았고 자, 프로그램 도망가자. 그래 발. 이야 킥 최소화. 네 11시 그 가장들이 맨 가장들이 뭡니까? 11시 박정석.
빠르네요.
네 사이드 2개. 이게 보면 모르죠 11시.
예. 설마 이 타이밍에 벌써 캐리어를 갈 거라고 생각을 전혀 못하고
이거
벌써
웬일입니까?
캐리어 떴어요 지금.
승부를 보겠다는 건가요, 윤정 선수가?
박정석 선수 지상병력 모이기 시작했어요.
네. 자, 골련 템플릿 다 타거든요. 자, 골련만 잡으면 박정석 골련만 잡아주면 되고 이현재 여기서 밀리면 안 됩니다. 이현 선수. 자, 탱크에 발리고 쥐어지는 박정석.
캐리어 한
캐리어 잡아야죠. 이현재 1.4로 캐리어. 하지만 박정석도 그냥 굴러서지 않고 캐리어만 집중적으로 1.4 캐리어 둘 남았어요. 근데 더 올라가지 못하고 있는 이현재 선수.
이거는 이윤열 선수가 진 싸움이죠.
이렇게
났어요,
네,
사실.
아무것도 못하고 있는 박정석.
And so the arc of the universe does indeed bend towards justice. StarCraft Remastered is launching here in South Korea tonight. We've already had 2 great show matches with 4 players.
Yeah.
Each of the sets from different eras, and now we're going to go, I would say, into the later period in StarCraft
Yeah.
1's history. We're going to have Reach and Nada.
That's right. We
duking
reach
it
into
out.
the point where we start to hear nicknames we had for players like Yellow and Boxer, of course, the Emperor, of course, the Kong player, the player who gets second place. But this becomes the part where we reach deeper history as new awards are created. Not as the first player to win 3 OSLs to win the award, the Golden Mouse, right? Reach is a Protoss player who does so well along with other Protosses during the fall that there becomes this legend of the fall term, which means that Protosses always do best in the fall, right? This is the period of time where there's been so much Brood War history up until this point that we start to see these special trophies, special awards, and really new terms coming in. So this is where we get to kind of like the middle era, as you say, of Brood War, where it starts to be like, this is now the national icon. Everybody knows about this. And even the West is starting to pick up on Korean esports.
That's right. We're going to have Reach versus Nada. These are 2 guys that then continued on the meta shift in StarCraft Brood War. We saw Slayer's Boxer and Yellow, very good micro-intensive players, very good at pulling off tricks and fights. But both Reach and Nada showed that you really could incorporate even stronger macro builds, including getting very quick, fast expands up, something that was considered very hard to do in the early days of Brood War. These were the kind of players that managed to figure that out. Tactically, they're brilliant. Their control is very good. They never miss a beat on production, but they also get their paces up very fast and prove that you can do that consistently and ushered in a new era for Brood War.
Yeah, and these players are not as old as the ones we've seen before. Nana, for example, just recently came back from his military service, which is, of course, required here in Korea. And the second he got back, the first thing he did was sit down in front of a computer, load up Brood War, and stream to thousands. His Korean fans, they're still with him many years later. The first player to win 3 OSLs, one of the best Terrans of his era.
I cannot wait to get this match started. Anybody who is competitive in Brood War at all knows these players very, very well. And what a great map to have this match on. We're going to go on to the map Nostalgia.
Very fitting for where we're doing today.
Yeah, exactly. Let's see what these guys got in store for us. This is going to be, this series with these 2 players is going to look a lot more like a modern Brood War series. And after we get done with these 2 players, guys, we're going to be going into the final round robin with Jaedong, Bisu, and Flash.
Yeah, players that are still relevant in 2017 in professional games that are played as we are now, as the Brood War has continued on since its beginning. But now we're going to the new chapter, Tasteless, with Remastered.
I cannot wait. Again, this is a matchup where Terran basically has to go for mech against the Protoss. There are some moments where you can avoid that, but generally no. Generally you have to do some kind of mech style, getting vultures out, getting tanks out. The Protoss operates a lot like how you would imagine a Zerg to operate. They continue to expand, try to secure many bases, eventually get a really powerful macro engine and try to overrun the Terran. With that being said, Terran mech in the long run is stronger than a Protoss tier 1 infantry army. Even with Arbiters, you basically need the Arbiters to freeze chunks of the mech army so you can actually engage it and maybe hope they don't get scans up or have science vessels that can detect your army. So a lot of times if the Terran turtles up hard enough, the Protoss need to start recalling into the main as the Terran pushes out and try to whittle the Terran down.
It's basically the impossible to destroy workhorse of the Terran if positioned correctly versus the more mobile Protoss army that has the recalls in the late game to bounce between bases, warping entire Protoss armies, for example, into the main base. The mech army, it's strong when it's all together, but it's immobile, so the mobility advantage goes to Protoss. And even throughout the mid-game, you'll see that as the Terran struggles to shut down Protoss's bases, it's going to have to be using vultures, running around the map, using harass, using spider mines to control vision. And it's a very different matchup than what we've seen today so far.
That's right. Also, keep in mind that there's a lot of neat tricks that Protoss can exploit early on to basically stop the Terran from getting to the place they want to be with mech. And that can vary from Reaver drops to Dark Templar, drops or harass to just trying to rush the Terran early on and throw them off. There's also the fact that as Terran tries to tech up, and get that mech army, the Protoss can completely shift gears and go into carriers. And if the Terran isn't privy to that and doesn't catch on to that in time, can end up getting run over in that way as well.
Just like, in StarCraft 2, the Protoss arsenal is vast, and knowing what tech the Protoss is choosing in the early game, and as you mentioned, sort of in the mid-game with the carrier switches, can be the end of a Terran. As he's trying to get the strong siege tank army, he wants to get the brute force army that deals with the gateway units. Suddenly the Protoss invests in the carriers, and you don't have that anti-air to deal with them. So surprise tech switches do happen. And the late game is so fun to watch because, as I said, it's mobility versus this Terran army that's so difficult to attack. As you said, you're going to need perfect stasis. You're going to need to have shuttles dropping zealots on top of siege tanks to break those lines. If you make any mistakes, the Terran kind of just sits there and destroys you. So it's on the Protoss to try to find an angle to break through.
Yeah, and a lot of times Protosses will stay back and then wait for the Terran to try to push out, and in between planting mines and trying to siege up, they'll jump on top. Keep in mind as well, if the Terran player loses the mech army, primarily if they lose all the tanks, it's like the reset button has been hit. They basically spend most of the entire game building up those tanks, and if that gets whittled down, when you compare that to Protoss making just zealots and dragoons early on, maybe a shuttle, obviously some observers in there, the Protoss can trade more effectively. But of course, if Protoss missteps, if they trigger a bunch of spider mines and lose everything for free, if the siege tank shots manage to do enough damage on top of the dragoons, the Protoss army is whittled down very quickly.
Yeah, it's kind of a factor of how the Protoss race is designed and always was in StarCraft. It was to be more expensive units that are more cost efficient, right? A Zealot is twice the cost of a Marine, but the Zealot, if the Marines do not micro, could take down so many of them just because it does so much damage so quickly. It's heavily shielded, so just about knowing your advantages, and I'm bringing it down to the most basic of building blocks here, but that's the idea, right? That's why the Terran has to be defensive early game, trying to build up this army that the Protoss with expensive units can't break through.
Of course, in the late game, the Terran needs some science vessels in the army because Protoss are going to have arbiters. You pretty much, unless it's a weird carrier game, you pretty much will see an arbiter tech eventually come in. The arbiters, if you're not familiar with Brood War, because I know we have some younger viewers who are watching, the arbiter cloaks your army that's underneath it. The arbiters, they don't cloak each other, but they cloak your army underneath, and they have this ability called stasis, which freezes. You can freeze your own units, but usually you're freezing other units. And you can do that to hit clumps of tanks, to disable them, and then have your army come in and do damage. Also, there's recall, and this is basically the equivalent of a Zerg massive drop.
Yeah.
You know, when you see all these overlords fly into a Protoss's main, drop in there and start destroying buildings, you can recall your army into the Terran's main, and especially consider a lot of times siege tanks are in siege mode, guarding the front. If you go into the main, you can destroy so much of their production. So if this game goes on for long enough, you most certainly can expect to be seeing some of that as well.
Absolutely. And remember, the recall doesn't function as it does in StarCraft 2. You warp where the Arbiter is, so he can teleport units from anywhere to anywhere. So straight into a Terran's main base on top of an army. But it looks like the game is ready, guys, finally here. Reach needed a little bit of time to finish his settings, but we're ready to go.
All right, let's do this. Game number 1. I cannot wait to see these two guys duke it out. Reach versus Nada. Two gods in Brood War. This is quite a blast from the past. You got any predictions, Wolfie?
I think Nada's going to take it, man. I think probably 2-1. He's been playing for so long since he got out of the military. We're jumping into it. Nostalgia here for game number 1. The crowd is going wild. Let's jump into this one.
Let's see what happens. In the upper right, in the orange, no, in the bottom right, in the teal, or in the white, rather.
I think it's
Excuse
white,
me,
yeah.
It's white. This is our bumpiest intro yet, guys. We're gonna get through this. In the bottom right, in the white, is Reach. In the upper right, in the orange, is Nada.
The white got a little bit more off-white with the HD rework.
Yeah.
You know, maybe it could be a bit confusing, but let's see how this one plays out. Remember, this is kind of a rivaled story in the past. Reach is so famous, actually, for his good looks, right? It's one of the things that he's been known for. The headphone intro they talked about in the interviews on stage that Caster John, the MC for the Korean broadcast, of course, mentioned. Every time he watches that OSL intro, he gets chills. You can look up Reach headset. You'll probably see it as an intro where he's kind of the focal point of this tournament. He puts the headset on in the middle of the intro, and he's got a lot of female fans for this, but Nada's been more successful overall. Remember, the golden mouse, right? And he came out of the military recently. He's been streaming a ton and has done really well in these legend matches we've had recently. So I favor him going into this one, but I hope Reach shows us something really cool here, and I hope that we at least get to see one of those late game PBTs here we were talking about, where we see the recalls, we see the maxed out mech army.
All right, guys, because these guys have styles that are a bit more modern, we can start giving you guys the secrets of Brood War. See that depot below the command center? Papa Tasis is about to fill you nerds in on something. So, normally the SCV spawns at the bottom left side of the command center. With the depot there, it spawns at the bottom right.
Yeah,
that means the SCV can get over there just a little bit quicker to mine. And these are the techniques, the secrets embedded in the game that we continue to discover and uncover.
Testing.
Fractions ahead. And if you're gonna
Testing.
You need to learn all of those secrets and figure out how to exploit them in every way possible.
That's right. So, I mean, this is a game of inches at the highest level. And you might think, okay, sure, he gets the SCV there, what, 0.2 seconds faster as a result? I don't know the exact numbers, but it's every single SCV. In a game where 50-plus SCVs will be built, that means the advantage has multiplied so many times.
Of course, there are other advantages that Protoss can use, like putting this pylon, for instance, behind the minerals. When you begin to supersaturate at your mineral patches, the SCVs or probes can end up rotating around the back. So putting something back there can block that area off so that they don't end up moving around.
It also helps against vultures, for example, that get
Sure.
back there into your back line. Give them a lot less mobility to escape from Dragoons that are chasing them down. So the probe scout has always been an annoyance in the early game, which is why Nada is going to pull the SCV. Obviously, the probe will defeat an SCV that's building a building. So if you're a total noob, right, we're telling you the secrets, but an SCV has to be building a structure. You can't just place it and walk away. So the probe is very annoying here. See it in StarCraft 1, we see it in StarCraft 2. Very slippery, and will escape with a full scout. And the big question is, are we going to see the Dragoon range upgrade coming out for Breach? That's going to be the first big tell as to how aggressive he would like to be in the early game now that he's already scouted out Nada very quickly to the top right.
So with Dragoon range, you pretty much have to get it. If you don't, then that means you're doing something pretty crazy. Okay, so he is going to get it, because I highly doubt that's air armor being upgraded in there. So he is going to go ahead and get the Dragoon range, but we don't know if he wants to try to expand here or if he wants to try to do something aggressive. Now, Nada has already shown us what he intends to do. This is a very orthodox approach, getting a command center, floating it over to your expansion, and probably just turtling up and making a few additional factories in the meanwhile. Now, we're still waiting here from Reach, who I would expect is just going to get a Nexus over here, but let's see. The Protoss does have the option to try something a little bit more sneaky
Yeah, with two Dragoons out on the map, it's going to be, of course, the high ground that's going to allow Nada to defend this. If he was trying to build the CC on the low ground, he'd absolutely need a bunker here. But of course, there's a missed chance on high ground. There's no vision, of course. He doesn't know what's up there. And when the first siege tank pops out, even without siege mode, he'll have the ability to ward these off. But if microed correctly and if Nada makes a mistake, the Dragoons may be able to push up. But the key here is he's going to try to get the information as to what Nada is doing with this initial attack. If we're on the low ground, he'd pressure further, but he just wants to gain information with this. Sees that it's not, and doesn't even risk going up the ramp because he knows there's the strong possibility there's a siege tank up there. So he's already accomplished what he wanted to do, and now we can take a free Nexus.
Okay, so this is a very, very safe build from both sides. The only thing that Terran needs to watch out for is when he does go down the ramp. If the Dragoons are controlled very well, they can potentially bully the Marines back up the ramp. And you want to continue to kite here. This is why Dragoon range is so important, is that the Dragoons do outrange the Marines. And the Marines can't take that many hits from the Dragoons. Basically, it's 4.
Yeah, and shields regen and Marine hit points do not, so harass is so valuable here.
Now the command center's landing over here, and that's he's gonna be mining from that around the same time that the Nexus is going to finish here for the Protoss. Now, what Reach is doing, you could actually copy and do in a StarCraft Remastered game, and it's completely viable. This is how people play. Basically in the current meta, this style of play is safe to do. Now the probe's going to sneak over here. He wants to see what exactly he's being mined from, and he was going to try to actually glide into the main, but he does see there's a scanner being made.
Yeah, looks like he wants to just try to grab one more Marine or even a siege tank before that siege mode is ready, but unfortunately Nada's just too prepared here. He won't find it. But yeah, as you said, he has this tech up to Robo now. He can get the fast shuttle. He's going to have the extra gateways to protect against possibly a follow-up timing attack from Nada if that were what he were to use. And he has the Nexus up and available. So this is not by any means risky in any way. And at the same time, he's putting pressure on constantly. If you do the build that Reach does and you've got your Dragoons outside the Nexus, you're doing it wrong because you need to find every advantage you can because you committed to this many Dragoons early on. Could have, arguably had a faster Nexus if you didn't make this many Dragoons, so you need to use those to poke a little bit at the front. Now that siege mode is complete, he can't do that anymore. He brings the Dragoons back.
Now, you want to be careful when you have your Dragoons out on the middle of the map because Vultures can actually spam out and go right into your main or your natural and plant mines. And with Protoss, you don't have a ton of observers right away, so each observer is super important to keep alive and have in the right position. And that's something that can definitely end up hurting the Protoss if they end up getting over there. We're just now going to see this. Here we go. The Vultures can go around, plant mines. I'm sorry, do we see where the observer is for Protoss here?
I don't think he has one out yet.
So he's going to be able to deny the Nexus unless his probe makes this like immediately. And
nope, denied.
Nicely done.
Okay, there's the observer. It's just not with his army. It's over here trying to get scouting vision. The second observer should be up soon, but still, this is such a nice move. Denies the Nexus, can plant a spider mine there, so the observer has to be sent directly to that location. It's now just going to set up a minefield on his way back. And as you said earlier, kind of one thing that defines this matchup is that the Protoss should be ahead in bases against the slower, less mobile army of the Terrans. So getting that third base up at this critical moment is so important, and it was denied by a quick move across the map by Nada. So very well done.
Oh, wow.
That's actually going to deny 4 factories.
Yeah, you can't make a factory if you lose the barracks. He needs to repair that immediately. Now, that being said,
too slow.
He loses it. Now, that being said, though, I think Terran has enough factories up. It shouldn't impact this game the same way as had that been killed off about 2 minutes earlier. But, yeah, Protoss is powering on 2 base, and Terran's powering on 2 base. Now, the way this looks right now, I definitely think that Terran is itching to push out. He may try to get a third command center up here, but it's also very possible he does a very aggressive push while the Dragoons are trying to clean up the map. And in fact, Wolf, that's going to happen right here, right now. Let's see how well Reach can control this army.
It's going to be about the control, as you say. We're going to see a mine flank potential with this Vulture. Doesn't actually get it off here, so Micro really good here for Reach. He's actually getting a lot of these Vultures. The siege tank's unable to connect. Sure, they siege up here, but the army's already away. An observer's following this, and whether he planned on doing a heavy commitment after grabbing some Dragoons or not, he's definitely going to transition away from that concept if that was his original plan, taking the third base.
I think that Protoss might try to pounce on this. Now, what you see in the shuttle, the Protoss wants to fill that shuttle up with Zealots. Drop the Zealots on top of the tanks, and occasionally there's a mine that's too close to the tanks, and it pulls it in there and blows everything up for the Protoss, or for the Terran, excuse me. Also, siege tanks will automatically fire at that Zealot if that's the first unit they see, and the splash tag from the siege tanks can kill another siege tank.
Yeah,
and
friendly
it's
fire.
completely worth it to lose a zealot to kill a siege tank.
Yeah,
always.
friendly fire is absolutely a thing in Brood War, you know, and most RTS obviously, but a big factor in this matchup is the Spider Mine drags, the zealot drops on top of tanks we were talking about. And now we're just going to see this kind of split map occur with the splitting up here with the siege tanks. There's not really an angle for Reach anymore. He knows the mines are not on top of the tanks. He's going to split his Dragoons to make sure vultures can't run by and harass his satellite bases.
I don't really know if Terran's going to push out much further. This map's kind of funny. It's subtle when you first look at it, but when you play a couple games of Protoss vs. Terran on it, you realize there's this awkward building right there. Looks like a strip mall in the middle of the map. And you can see that if Terran has siege tanks there with spider mines and turrets, how in the hell would Protoss ever breach that, right?
Yeah.
It's really tough. Now
even trying to pick off some of these vultures is not a good idea, as shown here.
Yeah, and so it puts the Protoss in a bit of an odd spot. Now, this has been handled pretty damn well here by Nada. He got his base up. We see Reach has been slowed down a little bit from teching into Arbiters. The Stargate and the Templar Archives are just now finishing up.
That should be the Tribunal there.
Yeah, but, oh, is he just going to go for it? Okay, this is very dangerous. I do not know if this is going to pay off for Reach.
No mines here either to drag onto the tanks, so he just loses the Zealots immediately. Sure, he gets the win on the flank, but the Zealots on the right side are cleaned up by mines. He's never going to get on top of the siege tanks. Even a supply depot here to help block, basically extending that strip mall you were talking about. And this is a very, very efficient exchange for Nada.
Oh, now because Nada had that exchange, he might just try to go for the kill here. You can't really push out with Zealots until you have Zealot legs, and then it looks like this was mistimed here by Reach. So I believe Nada can actually just try to seize the moment. Basically, when Terran's turtled up like that, you just don't want to attack into him. You want to attack somewhere else that's not there. And with these tanks and vultures coming in here, especially with these vultures able to hit these Zealots before they can really do that damage they need to do to the tanks, I think Nada's going to win this game.
Yeah, just in tank mode straight up. Didn't need to siege up. Saw the Zealots on the chase. Used the tank mode to clear them faster. Now he's going to try to get this high ground advantage. Sure, there are pylons here to block, but it's not going to stop this third base from taking fire. And this looks like this may be the beginning of the end, as right now Reach scrambles to get into position, but his own pylons work against him now. He can't get over here to defend this base, and that is just a forfeited probe line. Nada starting to take the map, knowing that even if this attack somehow miraculously gets cleaned up, he's going to have the massive advantage in army and the economy advantage to go with it.
And Nada, expanding at this incredible rate here. A lot of this actually comes down to those vultures that denied the third base early on. And now, as Reach is spilling out more and more Protoss units that just simply cannot match the mech muscle coming here from Nada, we should see Reach tapping out as we are forced to then go into game number 2. Nada, just from start to finish, overall had better control of this game and a better understanding of this matchup.
Yeah, the turning point with the drop there was just never going to work. Perhaps he thought there were spider mines next to the tanks, but Nada was too careful. GG! Reach taps out here, and there was this, not only did he have perhaps the misunderstanding that there were mines there were mines near the tanks before. The Observer was pushed away because Nada had a turret set up. He also had that supply depot. The strip mall formation you talked about there in the middle was why attacking there was very unlikely to succeed. The one tool he could have had to make it work was the Zealot legs that he didn't have. And from then on, as you said, seizing the moment was the plan for Nada. And unfortunately, we don't get to see any Arbiters. We don't get to see that late game I was looking forward to.
Well, we might have it here in game number 2, but the problem for Reach, and I feel for the guy, because once you see on that map specifically, the Terran gets set up in that spot, Protoss immediately thinks, oh no, the map's going to be cut in half. Obviously, if Terran has half the map and you're going mech, they're going to make a line of turrets across the whole thing. They're going to get 3-3, and eventually they're just going to slowly edge out of there and cut off circulation. It's really important that for Protoss, they need to keep a proper contain. On that map specifically, they need to have a setup where they can actually deny Terran getting out there and doing that. And let's say that Terran does set that up, you either need to go right into carriers or right into arbiters. And because Nada's third base wasn't up in time, he wasn't able to do that. And that's where we really saw Reach panic and fall apart and just engage in a situation where anybody who's played enough Protoss knows you're probably not going to beat a Terran in a situation like that.
Yeah, and I mean, if you try to, even with the Zealot legs, it's still not going to be very easy to do. If he waits longer to get them, then Nada has a better position anyways, has more spider mines set up, and still, desperate situation there for Reach. He tried to make it happen, but we're going into a second game now. Redemption is an option here. He can bring it to a 1-1, as Boxer did, as we go into this second game.
All right, in the center left, in the teal, our Protoss player, Reach. And his opponent here in the center right, in the purple, our Terran player, Nada.
All right, so even though we didn't get to see the full wheelhouse of the Terran, the full workhorse, the massive maxed out 200 mech army with the turrets, the spider mines everywhere, we did see that in a moment like that where you have the late third base, the split map is set up, you don't necessarily need a maxed out mech army to take the map into your hands, and it was the fear of that 200 army, it was the fear of that split map that forced Reach to do an attack that was inevitably going to fail. He thought maybe miraculously he gets the spider mine drags to get the hits there to win the fight, but you can see the power of mech in a different way, almost vicariously through that attack by Reach, because he knew if he let Nada get that split map, it would have been a very difficult game to catch up and to recover.
So on this map, you actually start out in a pit. You're on the low ground, and you need to fight your way up to the high ground. So there are some rushes Protoss can do that are pretty nasty to the Terran. We'll have to see if Reach opts to do that. It seems like Reach was actually much more confident in a standard macro game, but those vultures got out there and started denying the bases, and that's why you have to be very careful to babysit that probe that goes out to make the third nexus. Because sometimes, even though you see a big battle happening and you think, okay, that's what decided the game, a lot of times in Brood War or in StarCraft 2, something very subtle happened early on that then caused another, like a butterfly effect here, that caused another series of events, and ultimately you end up with a loss later on.
Yeah, definitely so. Well, see what he wants to commit to this time. He did the Dragoon pressure, but wasn't, to massive effect. Nada played safe on the high ground. And if he wants to just poke out with the Dragoon and do another safe build leaning towards the macro, maybe he gets a little bit more damage done if Nada plays greedy with the CC, but you have to imagine with the hit style base, the low ground, that he won't do so, because then he's vulnerable to just simply dying to the Protoss attack should that occur. Let's not get ahead of ourselves though, as it's just the probe scout coming across the map now.
So I'm still waiting to see if Protoss just tries to get a nexus up here, or tries to do something a little bit crazier here. So now Protoss will have confirmation of where exactly the Terran's going to be on the map.
Going to be a factory here actually, but put right in the face of the probe as he comes over to scout across the map.
So one Zealot's been sent out here. Now Wallens are funny in Brood War. That actually I believe is a complete Wallen. It looks like it's not, and that something could fit through. Definitely before you start practicing and laddering, get acquainted with a few Wallens for each race, what you need to have set up, because it's tricky, but once you get it mapped out, you're going to win a lot more of your games. Okay, so the probe actually did get through.
Yeah,
so perhaps that is not completely airtight.
Yeah,
let's see if the Zealot gets through here.
Yeah, let's see what happens with this as the Marine is about to pop out here. Zealot's just going to harass. The Dragoon follow-up is going to be the scarier part here as the factory is finishing up here. Looks like it is a tight wall since he's not simply just not
that was sick. That's a trick
nice.
you can do. When he tries to move it, you put a pylon right underneath it, and then you cancel later. Now he's going to keep this around just long enough to figure out if the machine shop is going to finish, or if it was going to be a vulture immediately coming out here. But that's a great way you can abuse a player, especially if the Marine's not chasing you. You just keep the probe underneath the factory, it doesn't get to land, and then your Dragoons are too good.
Yeah, and also remember the Zealot, sure, it's not going to break through. The value of keeping it here at the wall for as long as he did is it forced a repair, and that's just basically trading shields for money. When the Marines come over, he backs off, loses only shields, goes up onto the high ground. Now, when the Dragoons arrive with range, the Marines aren't going to be able to protect this depot as well. And maybe if he's lucky, maybe if he targets just perfectly, he could take an SCB or two with him, maybe even a Marine, depending on how the scenario comes out here. The SCV is going to be the first target here. And remember, the Dragoon's just going to use its superior range now to poke at these Marines. The Dragoon can get shields back, the Marines will not. And now with 2 Dragoons here, he's desperately trying to rush out the siege tank.
This is really, really scary right now for the Terran. He needs to get a tank out immediately. Now the Zealot is doing so much damage to the depots, and once the tank's out, look, the Dragoons go on the high ground.
Okay, now he's just going to go to look to pick off these SCVs, actually targeting the depot. A little bit odd here. Okay, now starts its end. Look, it must have been macroing back at home.
Now you have to remember that these SCVs are not mining, and some of these that are picked off is really going to hurt the Terran's economy. Siege mode is up, but Reach backs up just in time.
Perfectly done. Takes the Hidden Nexus actually down to the 6 o'clock. So if perhaps Nada gets the starport up, thinks he's going to go and find massive probe damage or break through the natural, not going to be what he's expecting here with this down at the bottom. And Reach wanted to get a little bit more done here, but the siege tank range is just too much. We'll have to back away. Can't poke that depot anymore.
Okay, so what Nada's been trying to do here is quite ambitious. He's going to go for a drop-off 1 base, which is very unforgiving. It either pays off big time, or you don't do any damage at all, and the Protoss grows out of control pretty quickly. Now, the funny factor with this for the Protoss is that Protoss actually took the main at the bottom. We don't know which way the dropship's going to go. It seems like if it's at the top of the Terran space, why is that lifting off? Okay, it's going back over there. That's more like it. If it's at the top of the base, he might go around to the top, which means he can't get to this base down here at the bottom. He might not find it, but if he does go through the bottom and get the probes, he's going to get a ton of damage.
Yeah, and you have to wonder if the Forge is going to be the next structure here for Reach to maybe build some cannons. They're very expensive, of course, if you want to commit to that, but when you're risking already so much to build this Hidden Nexus, you don't want to spend any more resources on that. You just want to hope, you want to bank on this being unscouted.
I think what he might end up doing is just trying to rely on Dragoons with Robos, just like their mobile cannons almost, and staying back here. Now, it's also... I was actually taking a drink of my water. That was 2 tanks, right?
Yes.
Those are not blood. Okay,
yes,
2 tanks. 2 tanks jump inside the dropship. Now, think of the price of 2 tanks and a dropship. This is very expensive. With 4 Dragoons in the main, he could absolutely gun this down. And if Terran loses this, man, it's going to be really hard for Nada to actually acquire a second base, and Reach is going to get out of control. So much of this game is going to come down to this drop, and oh my God, are the Dragoons leaving?
They are leaving. He doesn't see it. Here it comes down here. Tanks actually, he thinks there's a natural. He doesn't know, and this is why the hidden base can be so strong. We thought it might be vultures to harass,
he's going to fake it out. It's going to look like it's a vulture drop here. He's coming through, but then,
uh-oh, no base.
There's no base there because Nada took another main because Nada basically preempted this. The dropship's going to have to go all the way around the map clockwise. And right now there are just 2 tanks completely isolated, unable to be utilized at this point in time in the game.
Yeah,
wow.
No way he could use those unless he rescues them later. Might be found by the Protoss first. So Reach has this 6 o'clock base. He's mining. He has that economic lead. Nada had the great follow-up. It was really smart, really intelligent, but he just didn't scout. He just assumed that Reach would play standard, which did not end up being the case. And now he gets the second base up. He's getting the additional factories. But these tanks going to be picked up. He does
Here's what's funny about this, Wolf.
Yeah, he gets the Nexus up right after he leaves.
The Nexus is coming up, and the dropships just got picked up because the rhythm of this game has been so unusual. Now, I don't know if we don't have confirmation right now to whether or not Nada truly knows about this bottom main. He may suspect it, though.
Well, you should suspect by now, right?
He knows that the Protoss isn't just on 1 base for this long. Now, Terran, on the other hand, has been 1 basing it for a very long time. And we don't have a command. Oh, I'm sorry. We do have a command center.
Just not mining yet, though. Just barely lifting.
He's going to try to scramble to get up here. But right now, I'm really feeling like Reach is in a pretty good place. Unless he makes some kind of major mistakes, he should manage to maintain momentum this game.
Oh, ironic, he finds the dropship here with the Dragoon, trying to chase it down to get the kill. Good reaction here by Nada. We'll send that dropship home. Does get out without a hitch. But he's just struggling now to get over and take this natural. So much lost mining time. He has a massive tank count, so it's going to be difficult for Reach to, say, end the game. But this means his 3rd base can't be assaulted. He has no mobility, no vultures on the map, no vulture speed or anything like that to go and harass. And only thing that he had to find damage was the dropship, and there wasn't a base to damage. So Nada just kind of caught with his pants down a little bit here. And recovery is going to be a long path.
By the way, guys, there's a man in the turret. Look.
Oh, my God.
There's a little man.
In HD for the first time.
How dizzy will he be by the end of this game?
very dizzy.
And now we can see exactly what the units look like.
Everyone's always wanted to see what the man in the missile turret looked like.
That's right. And now we know.
Now we know.
It almost looks like he's tied up in there too.
He's got to have.
Like he might actually be like a prisoner from another Terran player.
Yeah, he's got to have some sort of special.
That might be like one of Slayer's Boxers Marines in there, and he's like, oh.
He's got to have some sort of special headset on or something to not get motion sickness from that.
Yeah.
I spin around 3 times, I get sick. He's spinning around at max speed all game long.
So, in this game, Nada's finally managed to get this second base up, but because he took this risk and went for the drop early on, it's pretty tough. This is an uphill fight. Reach played a very safe game, and he's reaping the benefits from that. Now, also another thing to note for when we get to a later point in time in this game, is that it's not a long distance for Terran to push to the main. Yeah. But what Protoss players do to deal with the fact that head-to-head it's very hard to fight a Terran army is that they'll have gateways set up everywhere, because flanking is how you take out a good Terran.
Notice the gateway is already sent at the 6 o'clock. It meant that if a small force of, say, vultures even find this base, they've got the defense set up there. And it's not static defense, it's mobile defense that can both defend the vultures and then potentially counterattack later if he wants to, say, try to deny a base. I feel like the only thing that Reach can't do is attack this natural head-on right now. He just wants to further his economic lead, get his tech up. The Temple Archives is the first step to then, of course, later on getting the Arbiter Tribunal with this Stargate. So we are going to see that late game with Arbiters. He has a massive eco lead. He's even going to take that 4th base to the top left. And Nada just kind of has to turtle, hope for this maxed out army on 2 base to move across the map, because finding drop harass is going to be so difficult. And he's already spotted here with this one by the Observer.
Okay, dropships moving out. Dragoon headed forward here. Looks like he's managed to slide through. Now, this map's funny because you end up with these quasi-isolated island-like bases that can be accessed if you mine through the minerals. Eventually that opens up parts of the map. This is a really common theme in Brood War maps, is that you'll have locations that you can't access unless you had maybe shoved a probe through and managed to get behind the minerals, or you get a dropship or something like that coming through now. But in this case, we see that this is going to play a big role later on here. Okay. Now here's a good drop. This is what he was trying to do all along, and that's a great connection there on those workers.
Finally getting these kills. Looks like about 8 of them between these 2 siege tanks. Didn't find the drop harass he was looking for earlier on, but finds something now, even though that drop was spotted. This base is forced to cancel for Nadas, which is really unfortunate because he's so desperate for a 3rd right now. But it's important to note that Reach has good observer control on the map. He's sending them across everywhere. That's why he was able to find this base in the first place. And now he's going to need a shuttle to deal with these tanks, but he will eventually get them out. Looks like just 8 kills in total between the 2 of them. But Nada at least finds some foothold, some harass.
Okay, he actually wants to try to go for the dropship here. If the Terran could juggle this right, he might be able to save it. It looks like, okay, very well done. Now it's going to be up to the shuttle to come back in here. He has to try to juggle the Dragoons against the tanks. Meanwhile, Vulture's now coming out. Some of those probes just now getting sent back to mine over here. Now, Reach had a lot of observers on the map, but not in the location where those mines were. He's got to be very careful.
Yeah, needs to make sure. I mean, he has a lot of observers, but not, as you said, back at home, so we'll work on the management of that. But finally, the Supreme late game tech, the Arbiter, is online. This is further going to make it more difficult for Nada to move across the map. He's going to need those scans nonstop to engage. He's going to need vessels. And most important of all, if he leaves his main base with the majority of his army, he's open to mass recalls into the main. So very difficult now for Nada to approach taking a 3rd base.
This is kind of crazy. It's 171 supply to 117. Reach has the bigger army, but he needs to be in the right position. He needs to have the Psy Storms connect. We don't have Arbiters in play just yet, and this is going to be certainly a difficult engage on both sides.
Yeah, he's gone for the Storm Tech instead, so the rest of his army is going to have to be all together here. The army that's in the bottom may have to rejoin if we see that mass commitment, the massive army move across with everything here for Nada. But it looks like, again, Reach is just going to take the soft contain approach, continue with his macro lead. He has the Tribunal, and even though he went for the Storm Tech first, you have to imagine the first unit popping out of that Stargate is going to be that first Arbiter.
Okay, he's beginning to push out. Now, you want to look at the line of tanks as this giant arm that's reaching out and trying to grab onto footholds in the map. Leapfrogging tanks forward. Protoss has to set up, binding all of those units in these hotkeys and trying to coordinate a huge attack that will smother the Terran's army. But if he misengages at all, the Protoss army melts like butter and Terran pushes through, crushing the Protoss this game.
And even a larger Protoss army, mind you, will die to this because it's just much more cost efficient what we see from the Terran. He's even using this cross-looking mineral patch here in the middle of the map with these structures to, again, as we saw in game number 1, set up an extra buffer for the ground units that are trying to approach the siege tanks here. So Nada reaching across here. Here comes the first Arbiter.
Arbiter's out, but there are turrets set up here. I don't know if he has stasis just yet.
I don't think so.
Okay, is he just going to go for a full frontal attack? By the way, the zoom out feature is so sick, we can really get a good idea of where the setup is.
Okay, gonna come in here now. The Vultures just pulling back, looking for that buffer.
Okay, now he wants to drag the tanks, or the Zealots, excuse me, into the tanks. Once the Zealots are gone, the Dragoons have to turn around. Great storm there on top of those tanks, but does he have enough? Vultures coming through to interfere with the progress, and the Dragoons have to turn around.
So this was, again, killing some of the expensive siege tanks at the back. Well, Nada's taking the third base over here, important to note. But he kills some of the expensive siege tanks at the back, but they're more difficult to replace than the Gateway army, especially considering how many gateways Reach has built throughout all of his bases across the map. He's got these satellite bases, he's got so many gateway subs, going to have more Arbiters soon. So even though you might argue that it was a more cost-efficient exchange in terms of army supply there for Nada, the more expensive units lost with the siege tanks is a big problem.
Okay, a scan comes down, Dragoons beginning to back up. If Terran can get to the location just right there, if he can get over there, he can shut down most of the gateways, the units flowing out from there, and get it contained, and then begin to smash the expansions elsewhere on the map.
So many spider mines here. Could be disastrous if there was a really good shuttle.
Okay, he's going to go for a stasis, I believe.
Looks like
maybe a recall. I'm not clear on. You can occasionally. Okay, there it is. Stasis on the tanks.
Not the best one we've ever seen. Only going to be 3 here, and there's so many mines. He's actually just going to kind of engage haphazard here. But the storm is good on the siege tank. So much Protoss here. Only 3 tanks in
coming
stasis
through the side right now. Regis, so far so good. Great storm on the Vultures. He might just barely have enough. If he can get to this tank cluster in the right, it's basically going to reset this push.
Yeah, there's too many Zealot reinforcements coming up from all these gateways. It's just the numbers advantage that's too much. Looks like he's broken the back of Nada here. Getting into the back of those siege tanks. The rest of these tanks going to pop out of stasis just in time to die here. And that might just be all she wrote. This army for the Terran is impossible to replace at this stage in the game.
Yeah, you can see in the supplies especially that Terran's been knocked down to 75, having to start from scratch here, rebuilding all of the tanks in this game, whereas Reach is at 166, and that number can continue to shoot up. Nada actually pushing out, trying to regain some ground here, but you can see it's only 2 factories that can produce tanks, the rest of it's in Vultures. And I think that overall, Reach has basically not just won the battle, but the war as well.
He just has too much economy. His Zealots too cost efficient and so easily produced from the gateways here. Arbiters, there was never an answer for them. The Cloak also a kind of an annoying problem to deal with when there were no mines nearby, no EMPs to stop the stasis, and you have to imagine if the game goes longer that we will see more stasis on siege tanks, but there's no siege tanks left to stasis at this stage, and with recall and opportunity, that may be how Reach ends the game. He can attack the north here, deny this CC, send an Arbiter into the main base, and attack that location at the same time, playing tennis essentially with a small remainder of the mech army of Nada.
Yeah, the fact that he's going to get this base up here, I mean, look at the map, guys. Where on earth is Terran going to expand from here? And I think you're right, Wolf. If he does a recall, he can come in here and completely obliterate the main. And Terran is just slowly but surely going to get drowned out.
Looks like this may be the beginning of the end now. This CC can't even lift to get it away. There's no way out. Does have, if you look at the map, it looks like there's a large Terran army there. It's a small force. Here comes the exact recall we were talking about, heading towards the main base. He takes the safer approach, assuming there'll be turrets. Wants to defend this first. But this is such a small group, a ragtag group of Terran units. He can use a lot of gateway units to now attack the main. No answer, only the turret.
Okay, and this should be the breaking point here for Terran. There's too many fires that he cannot put out at once.
GG.
GG.
Nada take it out here in game number 2, so we have the 1-1. Is playing the better game there in the mid-game, denying that CC for so long. Nada mistakenly believing it was a normal natural. Had the dropship hit a normal natural expansion there, the back with the siege tanks would have been a totally different story. It looks like Reach was thinking one step ahead. Had the base there to the bottom. There was no way it could be harassed by Vultures unscouted, and less likely than the Vultures even was, of course, the siege tank drop that did nothing. He saw it early, shut it down, and Nada was just behind as a result. Never really was able to stabilize and take a third base. That was shut down by the Zealots as well down there. After the observer coverage from Reach, scouted it out early. very few drops he can use. The last-ditch attempt for Nada was to try to get a cost-efficient engage in the middle of the map with that line there of the minerals, the cross shape. It wasn't enough, though.
It is packed down here at Guangli Beach in Busan. And coming up here, Wolfie, we got the big league players.
That's right.
Bisu Flash and Jadon.
The players of the modern era, the latest era of Brood War. Of course, they were dominant at the end of the Caspa era, the Pro League era, but now with the resurgent Brood War, by the way, before Remastered, the already resurgence of Brood War is really rising up before this even happens tonight.
That's right.
They're coming back into full form. Flash looks as good as ever, and this is going to be great, man.
Don't go away. We're going to be cutting to a short break. We come back, Bisu Flash and Jadon here and the launch of the StarCraft Remastered.
이재동이 만났습니다. 진짜 별과 별들의 만남인데요. 자, 김태경 선수의 모습이 보입니다. 이 맵에서 12승 2패. 현재 다승 순위로도 1위 김태경. 자, 그리고 앞서 정명훈이라는 선을 넘어내면서 팀이 올킬 당하는 것을 저지했던 이재동 선수입니다.
자, 시작에 있어서는 어쨌든 이재동 선수가 9오버풀을 갔는데 아무래도 러시 거리가 있다 보니까 김태우 선수 바로 이제 넥서스 먼저 가져갔죠.
네.
네.
자,
이런 대결에서는
네.
김태경의 힘을 빼는 건 바로 거절을 줄여주는 거예요.
격추가 짝짝짝짝.
자, 근데 아래쪽에서 콜즈가 또 대기하고
자,
있고요.
둘 다 잡을 수 있어. 하나는 김태경 거세오는
아니 이게 말이 됩니까? 아니 이걸 그 사이로 살려냈어요.
라인이 S 라인이에요.
좋은데요?
지금 김태경 선수가 그일단 대비가 돼
그렇죠.
있을까요?
왜냐면
안 되어 있을 것 같은데요.
지금 정도의 러크 타이밍이 어쨌든 옵저버 로보티스 올려야 되고
본캐논 이거
추가 멀티는
그냥 자 일단 질럿만 제거하고
캐논이 하나밖에 없어요 지금.
자 캐논 깨졌고 질럿을 그냥 잡아볼 수 있어요.
혼을 찌르는
예?
김태경 선수의 정찰의 그 빈틈 커세어가
김태경이 이재동이 이번 경기 잡는 겁니다.
완벽하게 잡았어요 이재동 선수.
김태경 지난 하이트전 KT전 내내 그냥 물러났는데
이거는 자신의 상징을 보여주고 사실 저그전에 이렇게 무기력하게 무너지는 모습이 없었거든요.
자 커세어 떨어집니다.
할 수 있는 것이 없어요.
우리 가야 돼 히드라들이 지금 되게
정말 짧지만 굉장히 놀라운 겁니다. 왜? 김태경이 가장 자신 있어 하는 벤제맨은
경기 만나보겠습니다. 스마트 세트에서 맞붙겠습니다. 중에 지금 9시입니다.
최단 커플도 공일업 됐고 공일업을 하면서 지금 이제 발업 질럿이 일단 발업 공일업이 됐고요. 이러면 이제 저글링은 힘을 발휘할 수 없습니다.
네. 뮤탈.
그렇죠.
약간 느린 이유가 있었네요.
네, 힘이 보이거든요. 이거 좋은데요. 이것 빠지고 잡고 빠지고 그런 식으로 운영 좀 해줘야죠. 그렇죠. 여기 굉장히 신경 쓰게 만들게 되면은 이재동도 이쪽 부산도 컨트롤 집중할 수 없어요.
그러니까 스콜지.
큰일 났습니다.
이러면 굉장히 많이 없는데요.
야, 저 다크가 드론은 많이 잡아주지 못했지만 커세어가 스콜지를 잡아주는데 핵심 역할을 했어요. 그렇죠. 뮤탈리스크는 도망갈 수밖에 없고요. 이 타이밍에 한번 잡히게 되면 큰일 나는 겁니다.
뮤탈 그냥 가는데요. 그냥 가는데요.
뮤탈 조심해야죠. 스콜지 뒤에서 오겠죠? 스콜지가 뒤에서 와야 됩니다.
빨리 와야 되는데 아직까지 스컬지 안 보입니다. 그때는 12시
예.
문제가 생겨요. 예.
와, 여러 가지 이제 스콜지 한 방 때문에 이거 지금 큰일 났습니다. 자, 지상구 이재동 들어온 피해 좀 많이 받겠는데요. 예,
자,
덩크를 좀
지금까지
지켜요.
덩크 일단은 덩크를 먼저 파괴하는데 수령을 하고 있는 김태경.
와,
두개다 파괴.
김태경. 아, 저 뮤탈스크가 커세어를 상대를 하고 있다 보니까 질럿에게 무방비였어요.
그리고 질럿이 또 나갑니다. 이제 뮤탈 중앙대 위치에 봤는데 아크 하나인데도 못 붙어요.
계속 시간을 끌어주는 것이죠. 예. 덩크는 예, 두 개. 일단 예. 근데 여기서
그렇죠,
이야기는 없고요.
우리죠.
일단은 그냥 덮주는 정도에서 그치는 게 좋을 것 같습니다.
드랍 있었네요. 김태경.
야, 저게 대박인데요, 진짜.
12시. 그래도 여기에 드론이 나왔던 12시.
예, 커세어가 악한 뒤에 숨어서 예, 싸우게 되면 글쎄 이거를 도대체 악한 한계인데 이 악한 한계 위험이 장난이 아닙니다.
이걸 방어되나요?
와, 피해 다니는
이걸
모습.
이걸 이렇게 피하나요?
이게 11시 멀티나 깨야 되는 거예요.
그런데 일단 중간에
예.
나오는 방향과 일단 교전이 있었습니다. 옵점은 많이 보진 않습니다. 하나 보이고 있고요. 두 개.
하이테슬러까지 합류했어요. 이거는 예, 그냥 뒤로 빼죠.
그나요?
양쪽으로나 질적으로나 김태경의 압승입니다.
좀 나면 안 되죠.
예,
멈춰있으면 안 되죠. 여기 사르스. 김태훈 기다리고 있었죠.
센터에서 힘싸움은 어림도 없습니다, 지금.
그냥 놓거든요. 이재동이랑요.
야,
놓습니다.
정말요?
사르스.
이재동도 어쩔 수 없는 센터 쪽.
굉장히 여기 팔을 풀어나갑니다. 경력 찍고 위로 보내주면
제재!
김태경.
정말.
안 할 수가 없어요.
핵을 빼는 건
As you guys can see here, this is a StarCraft Remastered development team on stage.
That's right, because it's time. We're going to actually have the countdown before we go into our modern era players, Flash, Bisu, and Jaedong. But we're going to reveal and, of course, unlock the ability to play Remaster in PC Box.
That's right, and not far from there, you guys at home will be able to play Remastered wherever you are in the world.
That's right. Of course, you can find a PC Bong outside of Korea. You can go ahead and play it there too, but we're about to unlock it for everybody here, and I hope everyone sticks around for the final matches, because I feel like when that countdown finishes, a bunch of nerds are going to jump out of their seats or run for the nearest PC Bong.
Oh, I bet. But also, guys, definitely don't miss out on the next 3 matches we have. This is where you're going to see premium Brood War like you've never seen before. If you want to learn, maybe you're new to Brood War and you want to start, turn a new leaf here with StarCraft Remastered, watch these guys. They're going to show you exactly what you want to do to be the best that you can be.
People have waited so long for this moment.
We're going to hit the button. And guys, when they hit the button, it's going to be unleashed.
That's right. Watch
The
it.
internet's going to change forever. There's going to be an earthquake on the internet when they hit that button. Everywhere.
It's going to be unlocked, Tasteless, right after the countdown. All right, here we go. Countdown time.
5, 4, 3. Wait, not yet. 3, 2. No.
10,
10,
9, 8,
3,
7,
6,
5, 4, 3, 2, 1. It's open!
We cannot undo what we have done.
It is open. StarCraft Remastered is unleashed to the
It's out.
public. StarCraft was released on March 31st, 1998.
That's
and
right.
today, in 2017, it is open in PC Bongs. In just 2 weeks' time, you can download it at home and play it.
What a great day to be alive. What a time to be alive. Your favorite esport, no matter what it is, never needs to go away. Blizzard continuing to support classic StarCraft Brood War, giving it a facelift, giving it a ladder, giving it anti-hacks, all that good stuff. And I look forward to another 20 years of it.
Yeah, me too, man. I think everybody is with us on this one. And the team that made it all possible right here on stage in front of the fans that have loved the game for nearly 2 decades. It's going to be a great feeling. Well, that's it, man. It's unlocked, but we are not done tonight, as we're going to go into the best matches of the night just after this.
Stay tuned, guys. We are going to be hopping into that in a little bit. Are we going to be going to break, Wolf?
I'm not 100% sure, but I get the feeling.
I know the players are actually ready, and I think we got to get the Blizzard staff off. the stage. We'll keep talking until they cut us off or tell us to close it out here for a second. But guys, you do not want to miss out on these next matches. They're going to be so good. For all the great plays that we saw, and it really was like a time capsule of Brood War. Starting out with the boy versus Gurr, then following that up with Yellow versus Boxa, then Nada versus Reach. We're now into contemporary Brood War.
That's
We
right.
have the best Protoss, Bisu, the best Zerg, Jaedong, the best Terran, Flash.
One from each race, the most dominant, the most top form. All three players still in competitive rotation today and playing in competitive tournaments like the SSL, like ASL that we have in Korea. So Brood War never really fully went away, and it is coming back in full force, and these players are just as strong as ever. These are the players that everyone wants to see today because sure, the players we had from the older eras, a lot of the older fans in the crowd respect them, but the more newer fans look up to these ones. And even the fans that followed Boxer, Yellow in the past, the ones that know Gurr from the beginning, the late 90s, the early 2000s, they continue to watch up until today. So they can respect the old and also love the new.
I'm very curious to see what kind of strats they're going to be using this time around. We have so many people watching this right now on so many different streaming platforms. It's crazy, but this is the starting point now for the resurrection of Brood War. And I think anybody honestly can appreciate watching a good game of StarCraft. All the mind games going on. Anybody who's played, for instance, a little bit of Brood War would say, okay, you can't do what these guys are doing. And the fact that they're so fast, able to macro and micro at such an incredible pace while still able to outthink each other and outmaneuver each other is really a beautiful thing.
And I think that a lot of people watching this, especially people watching Brood War for the first time here with the remaster coming out, are probably thinking, all right, well, this looks really cool. I wonder how hard it actually is to do this. So when I definitely do recommend when you have the ability to either, if you're in Korea, go to a PC bong or download the game, try it for yourself, because after you play even 3 games against the computer, you're going to have a further respect immediately in those moments, how difficult it is what these players are doing.
And if you're new to Brood War and you start playing and you're thinking, wow, this is really hard, or I don't know how to keep up, that's actually what it's like for everybody playing Brood War. Always remember your opponent has the same problems you do, but it's a very rewarding experience when you manage to get your expansions up, when you manage to control your army properly, when you manage to macro right. It's just one of the most rewarding things you can experience in gaming.
And it's one of the most hardcore 1v1 games, too, where when you lose,
the most hardcore 1v1 game,
and when you lose, you're never frustrated at anyone else. There's no teammate to yell at. You can only open up the replay tab, watch your own game with the full view, see what your opponent has done, maybe see where things have gone wrong. You can watch replays with a friend, open up that lobby. There's a lot of learning to be had. And sure, when you start, you will struggle, and you will struggle again, and you'll probably struggle a little bit more after that. But it's always to take one step at a time, watch your replays, talk with your friends. And now that we've got matchmaking, it's not that you're logging into Fish or you're going onto US East, and every game you join, even if it says
1v1, message me.
Yeah, and even if it says 1v1 noobs, you go and you're like, he said he was a noob, but I couldn't even build my expansion.
Or you join their game and then they kick you, and you're like, well, who's this guy who's just sitting in a lobby who just kicks people all day?
So now we have matchmaking. You just play, you press find game, and then you play it, and you're going to play against someone of your skill level as well.
We're still waiting on our 2 players to get ready, but when they are ready, we are going to jump right into this match. Again, it's such a treat to have all 3 of these guys down here. For this StarCraft Remastered launch. And I got to say, it's so cool to look at the graphics. Some of you guys at home might be watching this and thinking it doesn't look that different. When you get the game, it's the F5 key, right?
Yeah.
If you hit the F5 key, you can switch between the old StarCraft 1 graphics and then the new updated graphics, and you will see a huge difference.
Yeah, it's the subtle differences, and I feel like the big one for me, just as we live in this modern world, right, 4x3 is not the way. We have widescreen now, so you don't have to play with any black bars anymore. You're not stretching the monitor. And sure, if you want to, all you have to do is press F5, and even if you don't have the remastered yet or don't have access to it for these first 2 weeks, if you play on the old patch with Brood War, is of course free to play. You can download it right now no matter where you are. Then you can still play with the old classic graphics, but you'll be able to have both options available. And what's really cool for pro players is that if you want to play classic, even if your opponent's playing remastered and the observer is watching the game for esports in widescreen, you don't have to play widescreen. You can play that old game that you played in the late 90s, the early 2000s, or whenever you played it, as just an experience it the exact same way you did before.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. I'm really curious.
I want to see them arm wrestle at this point.
He body slams him. With this game coming out, I feel like a lot of times there's a lot of negativity around. It doesn't matter what game you're in, right? People always say, "Oh, this game's dying, or this game's dead, or let's all switch over to this new game." I think in truth, if you love a game, you should always be able to go back to it. And I really appreciate what Blizzard's doing here, keeping this game alive and actually giving it a second chance globally.
Yeah.
For me, growing up as a teenager, I didn't have the opportunity to have PC cafes around me and tournaments in my neighborhood. You had to basically be in Korea. And now, because online play has gotten so sophisticated and the technology's so good, you can actually play against anybody anywhere in the world under these new settings.
Yeah.
I mean, it was pretty ghetto. Even just recently to try to get on Brood War and get on the Fish server, get on IC Cup server. Blizzard's cleaned all that up for us so we can just go back to enjoying the game in a modern setting.
You press find match, you go to it, but we have found the match we're going to. We're going to Eye of the Storm here. Remember, we're talking the modern era. This is ever Star League 2001 and the Korean era Star League, which Flash, of course, is most famous for when he won or played against Eferdin in 2010, where he's in the intro there, comes off the plane, and this is going to be a map that's, if you're an old Brood War player, you might not know it as well. It's a newer map. It's a 4-player map. The center, of course, going to be very important. And there's a narrow choke point between the natural and the main base. That could be a focal point for some aggression. The map we're jumping into first is going to be Bisu versus Jaedong, I do believe, for the PBZ. And remember, Bisu the player who defined the PBZ matchup as we know it today. He was the one who popularized it, made the Corsair DTs so popular, everyone had to adapt to his style. Well, they got shut out, and we'll see how well he plays it so many years later. Still in top form, still making consistent top 4s, top 8s in tournaments in 2016, in 2017. This guy is a legend. It's often overshadowed by Jaedong, right? The opinion of the West or newer StarCraft 2 players always hears the legend of Jaedong and Flash, but Bisu is right up there with them.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. And, for PvZ, for instance, that race, Protoss has gone through so many different evolutions as Protoss players figured out one thing, and then Zerg figured out a way to completely shut that down, and they had to tear down their entire build order and start over. And we've seen Protoss do that like 5 or 6 times in Brood War, and nowadays the most common way to play, and I'd say probably the best way to play, is to try to go for some kind of fast expand, either with cannons, whether you're cannon rushing or not, with cannons, or you can go with a gateway opening, pressuring the Zealots, then into the expand.
Yeah,
so we'll see.
Well, we've seen a lot, of course, in the ASL, talking about most recent pro play, which we have to talk about when Bisu is qualifying for every ASL, going deep in every ASL. Jaedong has also recently gone deep in ASL. So it's a matchup where you get the Corsairs out, and it's kind of this tug-of-war race where the Zerg is often trying to pressure the Protoss on 2 base, contain him with the Hydras. The Protoss is trying to get that Storm out to then break out of the bases, and it's very much tug-of-war. And that's the most exciting part of the matchup is 2 base Protoss trying to hold on with just Zealots, trying to spend every single gas they have on rushing out that Psy Storm.
And the way the tech occurs in this game, it develops at a really interesting pace. It's very important that both players can match the tech on both sides in order to actually come out entirely on top. Now, a lot of times the Protoss wants to try to pressure the Zerg into making more Zerglings, and you do that by sending some Zealots out and just try to be really safe with them. Don't overextend or you're going to lose in a counterattack. But you want to try to slow them down on making the drones, because if Zerg get enough drones, they can get very much out of hand. The Zerg, on the other hand, wants to monitor what the Protoss is doing, try to identify what that tech is, and respond accordingly to punish it.
Yeah, definitely so. And we have seen a few moments where the Zerg doesn't contain as heavily, and Zealot leg speed finishes. You hit the 3rd base, or even the natural with a bunch of Zealots. The Zerg is droning too hard, gets punished. It's a rarer situation, but it's definitely one that can occur. Sometimes killing the Forge, too, before those critical upgrades finishing. If the Forge is part of your wall on certain maps, that's going to be the target for the Zerg. Not the gateway that's part of the wall, but the Forge, because it stops the ability to make cannons. So you can sometimes see busts come in to finish off the Protoss, but oftentimes it's just simply canceling that +1 or later the +2. That's the big factor there when the Zerg attacks.
You definitely want to be careful if you're a Protoss fast expanding. There are so many ways, just like in the matchup Protoss versus Terran, you can try to punish the Terran before they really get the mech ball rolling. There's a lot of ways you can punish a very solid Protoss player before, usually right after he's fast expanded, whether you get Hydras running there and bust or a bunch of Lings. or you get mutas, for instance. There's a lot of things that Protoss have to look for and watch out for. And that's one of the reasons why Protoss try to rely so much on that pressure. And by the way, guys, we've got so many great camera shots out here. It's so hard to actually capture how many people are down here at Gongli Beach because this way exceeded our expectations.
Yeah.
We filled up and then some.
That's right. And even the seats we had set out alone, which were instantly filled long before the show started, doesn't tell the full story because there's a lot of people wandering around the outside. I'm talking, say, you imagine someone's watching on the side of a fence, right? And maybe there's 2 layers of people on a fence. I'm talking we got like 8 layers of people on the edge of the venue here on the fence, all trying to push past each other and peek over shoulders to get any glimpse of this remaster
We're
launch.
at 220 of 200 supply here, Wolf.
Yeah.
It's supposed to be impossible, but we're doing it.
I guess we got some cancels going on.
Yeah, that's right. We had to make a bunch of creep colonies and then cancel them. All right, we are ready now. Let's take a quick look here. This is Bisu, undisputed greatest Protoss player of all time, the revolutionist who taught us a new way to take on Zergs.
And that was a long time ago, much before he got third at WCG. Sure, he wasn't winning massive championships back then, but he was starting to dominate, and it was his revolutionary style that led other Protosses to success in the matchup. And that's something that you really have to highlight. You have to remember that this player built the way PvZ is still played nearly a decade later. And the meta in StarCraft changes a lot. And sure, there's variations of what we saw him build, but always the core, the Corsair is there. Jaedong, you know, when we talk about this player, you mostly think about his dominance as a Zerg. They call him the Tyrant. But you think about the rivalry between Jaedong and Flash that was always between them two. We'll see them place off against each other a little bit later.
So this is going to be a PvZ. Jaedong can do anything with Zerg, so it's very hard to predict the style. Sometimes he's aggressive, sometimes he's passive and reactive. Bisu is going to have to open up and try to force Jaedong into a position and play from there. By the way, Bisu is some of the strongest mid-game PvZ you will ever see. His builds are so tight. And PvZ builds are actually quite hard to execute. You have to know all the placement perfectly. Everything has to be timed out very finely. And this guy is the person who just figured it out. We are going to go ahead and go now into this game. Our CVP, Jaedong versus Bisu. Let's do this. All right, introducing our players here in the bottom right, the Protoss player Bisu. His opponent in the exact opposite corner of the map is our Zerg player Jaedong.
One thing we haven't touched upon too much with Remastered, too, actually, and I want to highlight this because I saw Bisu spamming P in the chat, which initially led me to panic, thinking maybe he wants a pause, but the reality is he's actually just holding down P because he's using the original hotkey setup to make a probe with P. Now, if you're a StarCraft 2 player, you might think, well, that's really far on the keyboard. E's a much better option. And until now, custom hotkeys were not an option, but now with the Remastered, of course, you can rebind any unit, any command in the command card to any hotkey you'd like. So you no longer have to, if you're a new player in Brood War, have to get used to going from E to P, or for making a Marine, use M, for example. You can actually make it whatever you like, whatever's most comfortable for you. That's another cool thing in StarCraft Remastered. That's a new addition.
Yeah, they basically modernized it. I mean, you have to realize the game was so, 19 years ago, we didn't even have esports, you know, and a lot of these original hotkeys were basically set up the same way if you're using hotkeys when you're coding something, right?
Yeah.
You know, cut, paste, you know, all these different little bindings that you had set up. But yeah, it's basically been just cleaned up. So on this map, we already see the gateway out here at the entrance. Now, that's for multiple different reasons. A, the gateway being close to the front means the Zealots can get to the Zerg's expansions more quickly. It also functions as a wall, so that as the Protoss tries to lean on the Zerg to be a little bit aggressive, you can make another forge there, get a cannon up, and basically you got a free expansion then. And this, especially with Bisu, seems to be the way he really wants to play this matchup. Forge expanding was very popular and has been for several years now, but it seems like going gateway first, getting the Zealot out here, and trying to get in the Zerg's face is the new approach.
Yeah.
And it's always been around. We've seen this build before, but it seems to be much more trendy.
I think it goes back
right
to
now.
what we were talking about in our first series about, you know, a Zealot can do so much for you. It's just how you use it. And let's see what happens here, because we're cross spawns on Eye of the Storm here, and that means that for Jaedong, the aggressive options, busting the front with Hydralisk, for example, going to be a little bit tougher. It takes some longer time to get across the map. So Bisu will be able to hold onto the space and research Storm a lot faster. So Jaedong may take a different approach, maybe take a greedy economic build or a tech play over just going for that bust at the beginning. And as you were highlighting earlier, which is so true, especially when you look at his recent play in the ASL, Jaedong is unpredictable. He will be the guy who surprises you with the bust, even in cross spawns, because you don't expect it.
Okay, so he actually only sent one Zealot out. The other Zealot's here just in case a counterattack, for instance, comes in. The one Ling has come in here and scouted and identified what the build is. The Forge should be started shortly here. You pretty much can't fast expand to that on Forge. There's very few situations where that would even be feasible, because you really do need a cannon to hang on here. Now, the Zealot's out. Now, note, 2 probe hits and 2 Zealot hits also kill a Ling. And he goes behind the minerals and parks right there. Now, it's hard for the Lings to get the proper surface area. You can also even go in the nook in the mineral patch. And Bisu's controlling this pretty damn well. And the trick is he's keeping the Lings back while he's getting his own base up. Ideally, he'd want to get drones. I don't think Jaedong's going to allow that to happen.
Yeah, I mean, the Zealot here is eventually going to get pushed back. Got 4 kills, so pretty decent. The micro from Jaedong, though, really good. Does pull back the weakened Lings. Knowing exactly how many hits it takes to kill that final Zealot, will get that final shot there without losing the Ling. A few more Zealots moving across the map, though, and the question is, did Jaedong make enough Lings? I think the answer is yes. Already grabbing the surround on this first Zealot. Not going to get into the position he wanted with it, but good micro here by Bisu, actually, pulling it back, swapping positions.
So Bisu basically identified, okay, he's not making that many more Lings while my Zealot's out here. He probably saw a drone or 2 hatch and decided to send the Zealots out. The Overlord did spot these Zealots coming out, so maybe a bit of an overextension here by Bisu. It's tricky, though. I mean, as long as they're making Lings, you're basically fine with it. Because you just want to make sure that you can get up what you need to do. You want to get your +1 attack. You probably want to get a Stargate up. You don't have to. There's other builds you can do, but you want to get your tech up. Yeah. Protoss have to have a lot of gas to beat a solid Zerg player, and they need to have all these upgrades and everything. Zerg can rely on Hydralisk, for instance, or Lings with speed and do a lot more. So the Protoss has to play a very smart chess game.
And that's why walling off is so important. That's why you see the rush quickly to Corsairs. It can allow you to control vision on the map at the very least. Then the Corsairs scout pushes across. You limit the Overlord count, which means obviously the Zerg will have to remake those. It costs more money. Won't be able to have the Hydra count he wants to pressure with. And then later on you tech straight up to the Storm so you can have that AoE. You don't spend a lot of gas on units like Dragoons, for example, because they're not very effective on the opposite wall when you're defending. And so the Zerg pressures with the Hydras, the Dragoon's just not very effective against that. So you put all your gas into tech instead. And as you mentioned, it's just so important he builds that up. Large Ling count here. He's hoping perhaps we see a little Zealot run by or a poke out here and he could trap and surround, but I don't think Bisu is going to take the bait. Sticking back here, keeping the tight wall as the Corsairs come out. Remember, this is the style. The Corsairs coming out from the Stargate that Bisu made and popularized. This is his build. And about 10 years later, he's doing it here in front of this huge audience.
So here's the way that this works, because it seems obvious, but it was so hard to pull off in the early days because people were trying to do this on one base originally. In the early days of Brood War, if you tried to fast expand, a lot of people wouldn't even want to play against you anymore because they viewed it as a form of cheese. Like, there's no way you can just make a cannon here. This is the most ridiculous thing. Yeah, obvious, because it's so hard to pull off a fast expand when people were still unpacking what RTS was. And then eventually people started to prove, no, actually I can do this basically every time. You can even know I'm going to do it and I'll still get away with it. And that gave viability to Corsair DT. Corsair DT is one of them, but there's also Corsair Zealot, Corsair Reaver. And so the idea is you keep making Corsairs. Obviously the Overlords are very important for Zerg. If you take out all the Overlords, they can't produce. The Zerg has to spend enough of their gas and minerals stopping the Corsairs that they end up with a little bit of a weaker ground army. And oh my God,
He found
this
the
is
three.
bad.
This
He
is
hit
so
the
bad.
overlords.
But they got found. He was looking for them. He's like, where are your overlords? I checked the entire map, saw the one in the top left and said, this is not enough overlords on the map. Finds the overlord depot, if you will. And now this is disastrous for Jaedong. He's going to lose so many of them. Sure, it takes a long time, but now he has to spend money to reproduce them.
Okay.
He already finds himself supply blocked, 45 of 44.
I believe the Spire should have finished. If not, he's
It
not
is.
going to be able to make any air units. Oh my
Okay, he
God.
just made the overlords. He should
Okay.
be able to make them now if he's got the larva.
This actually throws the Zerg's tempo off hugely. That was a risky play there by Jaedong. There are things you can do to prevent that, but he kind of went a greedy route. He just hid the overlords because it's not it's a tough place to get to. Now notice the wall in here.
So important.
The
to get
Zealots,
this up.
if that wall wasn't set up like that, the Zealots probably could have engaged that more effectively. But Jaedong is doing a great job coming down here with these Lings. +1, by the way, for the Zealots is not done yet.
And he's got the surround here with the Ling's speed. Just kind of trying to maximize the surrounds every time. Never going to take an engage that isn't the perfect surround. Just trying to grab as many Zealots as he can. And look at this by Bisu too, realizing this is the exact moment he can turn. And we'll push these Lings back. But he got a huge lead because he killed those overlords. That meant so many more larvae had to be spent by Jaedong. So much money when the 3 overlords go down. That's 300 minerals down the drain. Larva time lost, and he couldn't build the Scourge fast enough, obviously, while he was supply blocked. We're going to see an Archon here made, actually, a little bit surprising to have
Drink
this.
it in, nerds.
So beautiful, though.
Remastered Archon. Oh, hold up. We're just not catching this. The Zealots actually breached that location.
Yeah.
The Lings were not high enough in number. And if you can just take out some of these workers, that's going to be huge.
I mean, it looks like it wasn't quite a tight wall. Really important that Hydra survives there.
Yeah, you basically can plug the little holes with the Hydras or with a Ling and end up holding off a lot of Zealots with a little. Originally, Zergs just took a base and threw down some sunken colonies, and eventually the Protoss got so good at busting them that it's almost like when you see a Protoss or a Terran wall, and the Zergs need to figure out their own wall-ins there to keep that safe too, because the Zerg have to have 3 bases throughout the game.
It looks like he wants to bust this stasis. Like, he's bringing the Archons here. I don't know if this is going to work. The wall has been replaced. He's going to back off. He realizes, okay, there's too many Hydras. I don't have enough range, and he's got the tight wall. He'll look for a different opportunity. Sorry to interrupt your point there, but I thought he was going to completely commit, but we'll redirect now to the natural.
Well, even forcing him to make some defenses here and there is pretty good. Now note, he wants to then put pressure over here at the natural, because Zerg has to be honest when they're defending this. You can't just defend the 3rd base. A lot of even very good players will over-defend the 3rd, and Protoss just flips on where they're attacking and busts into the 2nd, wins the game there as well. And so, Protoss continues to power up. This is a very modern way to play PvZ, relying on the Zealot Archon, getting Storm later on. Eventually, Protoss is going to take a 3rd, though.
Yeah. Scourge here looking for hits. Every time the Corsairs shift position, he can find an opportunity. But over here, Hydra's overextending. He will lose 1. He does pull back. I do want to highlight as well that Storm is definitely going to be on the way. He does secure this 3rd base, and he has the Zerg playing defensive. The only thing for the Zerg that's across the map, of course, is this Scourge force, which is finally warded away here. And he's just looking for cleaning up the error right now with all these Scourge. But the ground army reigns supreme. The only way that Jaedong takes a fight against the ground army is when he's holed up in his wall, which means the Protoss can now get on even bases, which the Zerg never wants. 3 base versus 3 base with the Psy Storm. So
now,
great position here for Bisu.
The number of hatches Bisu Jaedong has here, this is a threat. Even with good Psy Storm, the Zergs in Modern Brood War have gotten so good at controlling their Hydras, dodging storms, and whittling down the Protoss army until eventually they crack. We could also see drops utilized here. It's quite a travel distance.
Ooh, the Storm, though.
First, he's going to come in and try to assassinate the Templars, and from there, he'll do a full-on engage.
Yep. There is Psy Storm available, as we know now. +2 should be ready soon, but the cannons on the high ground will buy so much time. This is a very aggressive assault for Jaedong. He's hoping to grab some of these slower units, possibly some Templar on the retreat. It does not happen. We're going to see a massive lurker morph over here, but he needs to make sure those are ready when he goes to the frontal assault.
He might be doing a drop here.
Looks like it.
He's going to force some attention over here in the center of the map, and he can do I believe it's going to be a drop. Okay, it looks like he's setting up for it. A big lurker drop here, taking out the Scourge, can hit the gateways, and possibly even an expansion. Now, no, Protoss seems to be fished out here.
And remember, he cleaned up the Corsairs. His Scourge, he knows he has vision control. He knows this is never going to be scouted. Right. He cleaned up those Corsairs early. That's why he made so many Scourge. So this is just completely unknown to Bisu right now.
He's gearing up to hit Bisu right when the macro engine's kicking in, right when he's got the 3rd base up and running, and all of his gateways are set up and he's getting all that tech. and hitting at this moment with the army out in the middle of the map. I think that Jaedong has successfully deceived Bisu here.
And he sees it with the middle of the map. He sees it with a small group of Hydras that the army is not at home. This is his opportunity. And to come into the main base here, has some Scourge to support this so he can clean up the Observers. Observers, of course, key in dealing with the Lurker drop. The cannon is going to be the primary target. He wants to remove that detection. Catching some of these, warping in High Templar as well. A big problem. And this production, if it gets deleted, can bring it back into the game.
The probes are trying to evacuate. Bisu scrambling now to get into his main. As he's going back there, we see a second attack gearing up to try to hit that third base.
Another Observer sniped. He's got two more coming back. He needs those desperately to eventually clean up these Lurkers. If he loses them, this may just end up doing too much damage. And finally, Jaedong regains control of the map.
As you can see,
he's
coming
snipe
in
on the
now.
Observer.
He gets the Observer. The Observer, a very brittle unit, and now he's going to hit from the front here. Bisu is getting pulled apart. I do not know if he has enough Psystorm in the right places to clean this up.
I don't even know if he has a Robo left anymore.
There's one Observer moving now down to the main.
Okay, he's got that
actually
one there.
handling this pretty damn well considering.
Yeah, we'll survive with this Observer. We'll finally clean this up. Bisu does survive. Wants to hit before these Lurkers hatch. Looking for this one opportunity. Storms go down. Wants to get the surround on these Lurkers. We'll have more storms here once they finish.
He may try to storm the egg. Sometimes he can actually do that, but it looks like he deemed it. It's not enough time.
No splits on the Lurkers. He had to burrow them immediately, and they're all going to go down here once the Observer comes across. Still, so many units rallying across.
This attack is insane. It seems like Bisu is just barely hanging on. But this third base here for Protoss is actually fairly naked. There's not really that much here to defend.
But he could get trapped here, Tasteless, in between the cannons and the charge zealots, or speed zealots, I should say, coming across the backside.
I believe there's even a drop over here at the natural. I'm not sure how many probes overall Bisu is going to have when this is all said and done.
Okay, good block here with the probes. The cannon's bought enough time. The Observer survives here, but as you say, I think there is a drop at the natural. This isn't even fully dealt with, in fact. He just isn't focused. He's dealing with a natural attack. Jaedong is just hitting everywhere at once. But when the dust settles, will he have enough units to deal with the counterattack? Because Bisu's losing economy, but he's not losing army units.
That's very true. And if you look at the supplies, Jaedong is actually down a lot in supplies, so it's looking scary for Bisu. But if Bisu stabilizes, how on earth is he going to end up? Is Jaedong going to end up with a fourth base? I don't see it. It's all going to come down to the next series of attacks here from Jaedong.
Yeah. So with the Observers cleaned up, he's going to need those. Those are at a premium right now. The army is much larger. Now remember, back at home with these three bases, Bisu struggles to attack because the tight wall's still there, right? He's going to have Lurkers on the high ground. He's got the sunken colonies ready. But it's the fourth base that you mentioned that's the bigger problem. He'll never be able to take that reasonably with this Protoss army on the map. Look at this, corralling the Hydras here with Psystorms. He has taken control. He has a superior ground force. Jaedong desperately trying to buy time. He knows he killed a lot of probes. But getting a fourth, that's the issue.
You know, it's crazy. I think actually Bisu stabilized. And you know what, there's Overlords there. There was no drop there. I thought there was perhaps a Lurker drop or something over there like that. But Bisu's starting to push out, and Jaedong folds. GG, nicely done there by Bisu.
Yeah, I think that was the crux too, just no kills on the probes at the natural. We didn't have a closer shot of that, so we couldn't know. But you had to assume perhaps that probes are going down, but the supply was showing not only ground supply lead, but he had the probes alive. He knew he could stabilize, move out to attack. I think you said it best when you said, all things considered, the response there from Bisu was just so brilliant. Jaedong kind of put all of his eggs in that Overlord basket, decided to go in for the attack, and when it didn't do enough damage, he lost all of his units. They were units he could have used to maybe control the ground army, but he wanted to go for massive eco damage. When it didn't do enough, he didn't have any defense there for the counterattack.
You know, if Bisu had made one misstep, that damage would have snowballed out of control. Jaedong went for a very specific timing that is intended to end the game at a specific moment. He didn't have to do that, but that's what he deemed as the best strategy in that moment to go up against Bisu. But all that Bisu has to do at that point in time is survive and stabilize. And the moment that you realize, okay, Jaedong, if he attacks anywhere, he's going to lose his army. Bisu starts to push out. It's 3 base versus 3 base, and Zerg always have to be ahead in expansion.
Yeah.
Or they can't keep the momentum going for them.
And we have to remember it too. The game started off with the Corsair finding that hidden Overlord dump there, where basically Jaedong, instead of trying to pull them all back slowly in the normal path that he would expect with the Corsairs, he was like, okay, I'm going to take a risk and hide them here so the Corsairs will be confused. But I think Bisu reacted to that very correctly and said, okay, these are hidden somewhere. You only have one in the main base. Where are they? They're probably grouped up somewhere. I'm going to search for them because they were all in one place. That was kind of the first step to victory for Bisu when he killed those, forcing more to be made, meant the Spire couldn't be utilized initially, so that was a great catch in the early game.
Yeah, and from there you could see Bisu tried to push out and do some damage. It was actually fairly effective. I mean, the Zealots were enough of a threat that a fourth base really wasn't an option. There is a current style in PvZ where you end up getting about 6 hatcheries right at the specific moment, and that comboed with drops and hitting all these different areas with lurkers, with Scourge, and with Hydras, it can be really tough for the Protoss to hang on.
Yeah, and let's not forget, too, it was cross-spawn, so when Jaedong went for the drop, sure, the drops were there very quickly, but the counterattack, so he wanted to hit the third base with the reinforcing Hydras, the reinforcing Lurkers, took longer than they would have if it were, say, horizontal or vertical spawns with a slightly shorter run-back distance. So that was another problem, obviously, with this style. When you have cross positions like this, the Protoss is playing defensively, has somewhat of an edge there.
Yeah, and when you're playing that style, Bisu is one of the first people that really taught everybody how to fast expand and then seize control of the game from start to finish. A lot of these Zergs are very good at getting more and more bases and growing, and eventually anybody who's playing StarCraft knows this. You're against a Zerg player, and you never get to leave your base because they always have more stuff than you, and you lose. But Bisu showed that he can actually manipulate and bully a Zerg throughout the game until eventually the Zerg tips over.
Yeah. It was a really exciting clash there. We got to see a lot of different aspects of the matchup, and we'll see what our next map ends up being, because it could play out very differently, obviously, depending on circumstances. As the crowd is still strong here, we're actually now approaching midnight. It's midnight on the clock right now, so it is July 31st, and people they're not going home. They want to watch the legends of our modern Brood War here. They've seen the past legends, and now moving into the more modern era, as we said, with these three, the best of each race.
Yeah.
And no one wants to miss this.
No. Might be past our bedtimes. We're not stopping, Wolf.
No, definitely
We are
not.
staying here. Got to be a frustrating moment there for Jaedong. We're still waiting for Flash to get set up so we can go into our next game, which is going to be Bisu versus Flash coming up here.
Yeah.
And we've talked a little bit about the matchup PVT, but I know that there are a lot of people that are watching who are not old school and did not follow this. So it should be noted that Terran essentially can't go for bio. You might see 5 or 6 Marines at the start. They're just getting those until they can switch
to survive. Yeah.
You need to get mech up. The Vulture, the tank, an incredibly powerful unit combo. The Vulture with the ability to lay the spider mines. The tank in siege mode is able to start doing damage before anything else is fired on the Protoss' side. Protoss have a lot of options of being sneaky and deceptive, from proxy strats to rushing to dropping, to just trying to kick in the front door and kill the Terran before they get the ball rolling. But if we get into late game, a mech army is stronger than a Protoss army. Protoss have to use stasis to try to freeze tanks and segment out certain portions of the army, or rely on counterattacking using recall. Or simply when Terran runs out of their base, you run your army over into their third base or their natural. We'll see what happens. But one thing to note about Flash coming into this is he just doesn't seem to lose to anything early on.
Yeah, that's the thing is Flash, we talk about you have to build Marines to survive. You get the bunker up. We saw the pressure that Nada dealt with from Reach on that second map there with the Dragoons on the high ground. I feel like Flash handles that somehow just a little bit better because he feels like a machine in the early game. Flash is one of the players in the newer era to go CC first, even on maps where it's not favored, because miraculously he was able to hold aggressive pushes, even cheeses with the economic builds. People even called it eco cheese when he was starting to do CC first every game in the TVZ matchup, because he just held it so well. And everyone's like, well, I guess I just can't deal with this guy. I guess he's just going to get away with it no matter what.
Well, what's funny is that Terran, since the invention of mech, and mech really did come about in like the first year of the game. I mean, it was a problem that Terrans had to figure out, where Marines just died to what Protoss had. A Zealot, a Dragoon, a Reaver, a Templar, anything basically kills them. But Protoss has always had a way to shut Terran down, and Flash is basically one of the only Terrans that never seems to get shut down. But Bisu could pull it off. We'll see.
Looks like these players are just about ready, and so are the fans worldwide. I know so many of you have stayed up for this. Many of you are waking up just now. Let's not forget, right? I know everyone's waiting for Flash versus Jaedong because that's the rivalry, the Star League one that we've seen, the storied history of so many grand finals. But there is a rivalry between Bisu and Flash, and it's not the ones from the OSLs, the MSLs, it's the Pro League rivalries. These are the ace players for SKT and KT in the height of Pro League. At the very end, we saw these two in ace matches in countless Pro League finals. This matchup in best of ones, often decided grand finals, sometimes on this very beach. So this is going to be a long historied rivalry between these two. Not as famous perhaps as the Flash versus Jaedong matchup, but in Pro League, we saw this matchup quite a bit.
Okay, we are about to get this going.
Flash,
the greatest gamer of all time.
yeah, you know, we
Out of
talked
any
about
game.
Boxer being the face of Brood War for so many years. Flash is the new face. He's the new king, and it's mechanics. It's a more modern style. What we saw was intelligence out of Boxer in the early parts of Brood War, but Flash showing us safety, economic aggression, taking the early CCs, taking the early economic advantage, and just macroing, moving his fingers faster than the world had ever seen. And even still, after playing the game for so many years, he's just as fast as he always was.
Okay, we are about to hop into this match. Again, it's just a best of one with these guys. After our show match of Flash versus Bisu, we then have our final match, which is going to be Flash versus Jaedong.
That is absolutely correct. Looks like we are setting up to jump into this one tasteless.
All right, it's almost time, Wolf. I am Craig Asman. With me is PogChamp. We are ready to cast this game. We're going to try to make this accessible for those of you guys who might have been a little bit too young to know about Brood War, and show you guys
in Brood War history, and is oftentimes the first pick for players in a best of three because it kind of sets the tone for a matchup because it's so balanced in every way.
All right, we're ready. Let's do this. This is a best of one, Bisu versus Flash. In the bottom? No. In the upper right. Sorry, guys.
Tricked.
They want to go to the upper right. That's why I got to intro first. We have Bisu up here.
Victor in the previous game, coming off the win, has some momentum on his side.
And his opponent down here in the bottom left, Flash, the greatest gamer of all time.
For back-to-back ASL titles recently, and obviously just has some of the best earnings in esports, one of the best salaries anyone's ever had in esports as we know it, and is so famous. His nickname is the ultimate weapon because no matter what style he brings to the table, it feels like you can't defeat him, even if you know what he's going to do. His hands are faster than yours. His mechanics and his decision-making on the fly just feel better than yours no matter who you are, and that's why he dominates still to this day. And, I mean, you have to call him the favorite here as well, even though Bisu is coming off of that win.
Yeah, I mean, he is the favorite, especially when you consider that Flash has been quite dominant in all the recent Brood War tournaments that we've had out here in Korea. Bisu's done very well, but Flash seems to be on a roll, and he's playing better than ever before, to be honest.
Yeah, it feels like an upward spiral for him even. You know?
Well said. Now, what is Flash going to do? He's making his barracks on the low ground. Now, Flash at this point in time has engineered a pretty modern build where he gets a fast expand so quickly. People thought this type of stuff was impossible. Sometimes even getting it before he has gas and just holding perfectly with a bunker. It's very tough to pull off, but he's managed to do it. Now, Bisu, I don't know if he's going to try to get abusive with some of the advantages Protoss have in the early game. Since Protoss can mix it up, they can Reaver drop, they can DT rush, they can just go Dragoon range and rush you, they can double expand. There's so many things Protoss can do.
Yeah.
The Terran has to be ready for everything if they're going to survive to the mid-game.
And you'd think that that would be a problem for Flash potentially because of his normal early eco-type plays where he gets the fast command center, but it feels like sometimes he just has the answer to everything, and you find yourself in a catch-22 against a player who's so good at defending aggression or unusual tech, say the DTs or even something like a Reaver drop, which is so unlikely these days in this meta. And so you would think, okay, well, probably I should play insanely greedy against him, but going toe-to-toe in a macro game against Flash is tough. It's the approach many players in the modern era will take, though, because just rushing this guy, being aggressive, hardly ever works out. Just so difficult to cheese this player who has handled everything about a dozen times. Anything you could ever imagine.
So the SCV is going to go up here and check out what's happening inside the Protoss' main. Now, everything looks standard so far. You can't really glean too much from this. It appears that Bisu may be going for an expansion of his own coming up here. Basically, Protoss has to make a choice. Do I try to throw the Terran player off early on, because in this case he's fast expanding, or do I just expand myself? And by the way, Flash is already being quite smart here because he sees that the probe hasn't made the Nexus there. He's just going to make an eBay here, and Protoss have to kill this. Yeah, because you need to have an expansion up, and it's a very sneaky strat.
It's the eBay. The reason why the eBay is used is because it's the fastest building hit point per mineral building that you can use. It's very large as well, so you can build it on the edge of the Nexus build point. So very annoying to deal with. This is going to very significantly delay the Nexus of Bisu, which also forces the Dragoon to be here, which means it's not pressuring, it's not poking. So if you get away with this, if your SCV is unscouted, it's a great tactic. And now, obviously, Flash has the lead with this fast CC, has the bunker up, and is building towards the later factory, so there's still a window of time with range that Bisu can poke, because with range, the Dragoons will outrange the bunker before the siege tanks get there. But again, Flash is just so good at defending this type of style. Let's see how it works out.
You know, this is a very late Nexus. I mean, Flash already, I think, has some momentum on his side with that pretty sneaky eBay that's over there. Now, of course, when you go for a quick command center before gas, the factory is quite late. But so far, Flash has basically perfected this opener. He should have just the right number of SCVs over there. Now, see how he has the SCV at the very, very top? If you right-click on minerals with workers, instead of them bumping into each other, they just glide together. So he hides an SCV up there in case the Protoss is all in it and he needs to pull his SCVs to the front. He can grab his workers, right-click on the minerals at the top of the map where that SCV has vision, and those units can even glide through the Protosses and then go for a trap.
Yeah, very well said. And just using the SCVs to repair here. To hit the SCVs, the Dragoons would have to move into range of the bunker, of course. So this is why this is basically an impervious defense here. Now, it costs the Terran money to do this, basically just bleeding money to survive. But because he has this lead, and will, of course, scout the Nexus now, Flash is going to feel so happy. So, I mean, gets the SCV not into the main base, doesn't see if there's any tech follow-up, but he already got the Academy. He's going to have scanners just in case it was a DT follow-up or anything like that. He's in a really good place here. Factory's up, so once that siege tank comes out, the push is going to be over here for the Protoss. And Flash, again, we talked about how he was so strong in the early game, and even though this is just a standard push coming out from Bisu, the eBay block is what gets him massively ahead now as we see the standard transition.
Okay, so with the tank out here, you got to be careful because sometimes these good Protoss players will dive forward and gun down your tank, especially if they have 4 Dragoons total, because it's 8 shots to kill a tank. And so you do not want to overextend with that tank because that's just a big reset button. And the follow-up play for Bisu is actually to set up for a Reaver drop. Occasionally the Terran is so preoccupied trying to hold the entrance from the Dragoons that the Reaver drop can blindside them and you can take out workers that way.
Is that a bay? Did we see the bay? Okay,
yeah, it's a robo bay. That's why it's tucked all the way in the upper left of the Protoss' main, is that the odds of a scan catching that, because if he doesn't see that, then he's just assuming, okay, you're probably just getting observers, which you're always going to have in this matchup, and then making Dragoons as well.
So the shuttle's out already. He's going to research the shuttle speed so that he can fly that in and obviously get the micro that's required off to make sure that the shuttle gets the massive hits. He's going to bring a Zealot with this as well, just to, obviously so he can help finish off some SCVs and disrupt any units that come over to defend. Notice that Flash keeps his tanks very well split here. One tank in the bunker is going to defend anything that could hit him in the early game. Keeps the tanks in the main base in case of something like this. All right, so first Reaver's out. He's coming across an old style, and remember, sure, the graphics have been updated, but the Scarab hits are just the same as always. So
if you play enough, you'll get good at getting the Reaver in the right spots. The Scarab almost always hits, but the Scarab pathing is a little bit funny. So sometimes it can get stuck on the edges of buildings or minerals, and we'll have to see if this is going to work. I'm not feeling this too much here from Bisu. We'll see, but I feel like Flash should be ready. What Bisu's trying to do is double expand here, and just use the Reaver. If it doesn't get any kills, it'll at least keep the pressure on. Look at this. This turret finishes exactly perfectly as to when the shuttle gets there.
Yep, now he just has to fly away with it, and Flash is just kind of ready for everything, as you would expect.
Now,
Has the triple factory up. It's almost eerie how basically every curveball that could be thrown at him is just shut down here. Now, shuttle speed is finished. There's still an opportunity to fly past the turret and just go for broke with this. This turret is going to be up, looks like just in time. 2 Goliaths are out. Let's see if he can still get the money shots if he wants to commit.
Yeah, it's not going to be worth it. With the tanks there and the Goliaths, he has perfect defense. Now, it's not the end of the world for Protoss. The Reaver is a great tool to have in a fight. You can keep dropping the Reaver and firing at tanks and vultures and picking it back up before it's able to be targeted while the Dragoons and the Zealots are doing most of the soaking. And so from here, Flash decides to extend out and secure his third base down at the bottom. And we may actually see Terran try to grab onto the very bottom center. But Bisu may want to try to do a bust.
Yeah, looks like that's what his plan may be here. And try to
There's
just kind of
not really
over.
vultures here.
Yeah, there's not really, and basically could just ferry these Dragoons into the main base with the Reavers, so can actually possibly even just take out these turrets. Backs away now, he is spotted, so the longer he commits to this without actually fully committing is risky. I guess he's just going to simply back away now. Has these Dragoons on hold position so they don't actually get aggroed by the tank and walk to their death. We'll move them away now, because obviously in Brood War or StarCraft 2 for that matter, when something aggroes your units, they just automatically attack towards it. So if you didn't have those on hold position, they would all just walk to their deaths there. Dragoon's not the smartest units, even if they look a little bit prettier in this version.
You definitely have to utilize hold position. Remember, guys, you only have 12 units on a control key in Brood War. So if they start to get hit and get fished into the army, it could be a nightmare trying to get them all back together again. We have a second shuttle, so this could be a bust. We'll have to see. He's waiting to see if maybe when the SCVs come down.
Oh, could be a big one.
No.
Wow.
Look, Flash is just there in time. Bisu backs off. Now, we also see, I believe it's a probe in the top center. He may be going to expand, but it also looks like if Zealot Lakes finish, this could be similar to like White Raw's special tactics, where you go so hard on 3 bases, sometimes cutting probes, that you can actually spill over and overwhelm a Terran player who's just getting their third base set up, especially with shuttles on your side.
Exactly, and also maybe his siege tanks are just unsieged at the worst possible moment.
Here we go.
He's going to commit to it here. He has the shuttle, trying to dive in to get the drags.
He actually shot down the shuttle that was full of the Zealots. We're not having quite the connections that he needs here.
The first Reaver shot there onto the tanks was really good, though. Can he continue the momentum? I just don't think he has enough Zealots here, unfortunately.
Well,
this is going to get shut down.
He's still got the Reaver, so there's that going for him. He needs the Zealot Lakes to finish, and that should be finishing momentarily. He might try to go in for a second strike force. Notice, it's been more Goliaths to shoot down the shuttle than it is Vultures to fight the Zealots. So the Zealots are a real huge threat here.
Also, remember, the tanks weren't killed there, so the huge army advantage Bisu had, and yeah, I say army advantage, I mean in size, is now kind of washed away because he lost so many of those Dragoons and the Zealots. But the formation here is stronger now for Flash. He has this sieged up position.
Okay, hold up. Look at that splitting. Look at that angling. He's going to take out all of these tanks. Maybe not this one that's right there. We'll see if the splash damage actually helps connect that. Yeah, really good save. Now, you know, if Bisu keeps doing this, he's eventually going to end up with a smaller army. In fact, you know, Flash has got this game down to such a science. He may try to counterattack.
I think he's
saying you fed into me a little bit too much.
Yeah, I think he's going to try to hit these Vulture run-bys here. Looks like he's going to set up the mines first, try to get some good hits. Good reaction there by Bisu. So not going to have the opportunity to do the mine run-by anymore. Does move away with this army, sets back up for his third base, knowing that continuing further here would be risky. The Terran army is always at its strongest when it's in full formation. So we're just seeing the 12 and 6 o'clock bases both taken now. This could just normalize into a later game. I'm not entirely sure if Bisu did get the Stargate and the Templar Archives just yet, but if he has, he's definitely heading in that direction. Nice move there with the Zealot to actually take that Vulture out.
You know, we're seeing the story of Flash hold off Bisu, but there's another story that's going on, which is that Bisu is not growing at the same rate as Flash is. With the amount of units he's lost, because we're getting to the point where Protoss can become potentially explosive in the growth rate. He did throw away a lot of units. The tank count is continuing to grow up. When Terran gets maxed out against a Protoss army, the Terran army is basically stronger. If Stasis wasn't in this game, there'd be no way for Protoss to effectively engage a maxed out Terran army, especially when the attack upgrades are there and the armor upgrades are good.
Yeah. I mean, even if you had a supercomputer to control, it would be virtually impossible to break a tank line like that. Shuttle shut down here by the turrets. But the key factor is that Flash never gained ground on the map. So sure, he's approaching that max out, and that is very scary. Well, but it's Bisu who's teching up. He has the Arbiter Tribunal completed now, and Flash was never able to threaten him on his 4th base before he had that Supreme late game tech up. And it's not fully prepared yet, but he is going to have options. He is going to have opportunities with that tech now to take this mid game into the late game with an advantage.
Okay. It looks like Bisu might try to come around here on the edge. Remember, when Terran, in fact, do max out, they're no longer worried about trying to push on you. They can actually unsiege. As long as they've kept on top of their upgrades, and I have to imagine Flash has done just that. But as they push out, the Protoss actually, it becomes a game of cat and mouse. The Protoss has to try to hit wherever the Terran army's not and keep them at bay, because otherwise the Terran army will come out and roll over everything that the Protoss has.
Yeah, the Terran's just going to slowly move across like a plague. It's going to minefield up, going to push the turrets out, and the further the Terran goes with a weaker army, obviously the weaker it becomes, a smaller army, so the weaker it becomes, the further it extends. But when you get to the maxed out point, you kind of always have a trail of enough units to fight any Protoss army, as long as you don't get caught with your pants down or your tanks unsieged. So I feel like if Bisu can continue to put this pressure on and control the middle of the map, he reaches max out, starts to get a crazy Arbiter count, builds up the energy. That's where we're going to see the Stacies. That's where we're going to see the mass recalls on the main base. That's where he can use that late game Protoss mobility to end up getting a lead here against Flash. So far so good for Bisu in terms of containing Flash and not letting him take control of the middle of the map.
Terran is now moving out. This is the max out point. It is very scary for the Protoss. Remember, these guys have 12 units on each control group, so moving the army, you have to be you have to know exactly what you're doing. If you overstep, it's very hard to retreat. The difference between move command and attack command here is very important. He's getting set up, and it seems like Protoss is going to try to have a head-on engage.
The tank's not sieged up immediately, but most Zealots are taken out here. Here come the Psy Storms, though, from behind. He's got a large wave of Zealots coming in. Another great Psy Storm here. Flash caught in the middle of the map. This is what I was talking about, catching him. Some of his tanks on siege. Reinforcements coming in. He tries to siege up. The Zealots are here.
Unreal. He's actually doing it. He had just enough good storms, and I believe there's just barely enough Dragoons here that they can actually head on, take on the tanks.
Psy Storm here as well for the
If he
finish.
had not gotten Psy Storm before taking up to Arbiters, it would have been a different story. And this is something we occasionally see in a PvT. When you're not sure you're going to have Arbiters with stasis in time, you put 4 Templars in a shuttle because you don't want them to get sniped by the Vultures and the tanks. And you just unload and storm in exactly the right points, and you can melt the army. Had he not done that and done that perfectly, he'd be in trouble. And now we have a pylon wall coming up here as Protoss is trying to grow at a rate that Terran can't handle.
He knows that basically during that fight, Flash was making pure Vultures for the counterattack. The Remax is faster with Vultures. He can replace them and try to get some economic damage done with a more mobile army while the Protoss is out far away from his bases because he took that engage head on in the middle of the map. But with the pylon wall here, these Vultures, many of them get trapped. At least Flash is able to save the majority of them because if they get knocked out, there's no more harass for Bisu to worry about. He brings the Arbiters across and maybe looks for a more direct engage. And speaking of Arbiters, those Arbiters are building up the energy now. The first one he has should have a stasis available soon, and he may have a second and third, getting close to those mass recalls. That's when he's going to start playing tennis, ping pong with this slow Terran army and start ripping apart the production. The Protoss never can attack the Terran's production directly until those recalls become available.
Yeah, if you can recall up there, and in some cases, if you're a real badass, you get a stasis on the ramp, sometimes with your own Zealots. And then what happens is that there's nothing they can do to get up there and save their main. Of course, Flash should be ready for that, but Bisu's pretty sneaky. Sometimes they'll have hallucinated Arbiters moving out on the map, so they try to sneak in at certain points and make the other player misfire. But once again, Flash is maxed out. Flash has the push potential to come out on the map. Also, there are not that many places that Flash can continue to expand to. Yeah. In fact, he's sneaking an Expo in the upper left. If Bisu doesn't catch on to that, it's going to be really bad.
Okay.
Oh my God. Hallucination. They're not all real.
They're not all real, and he has to determine which ones are, but so difficult to do in this situation. So the fake Arbiters, he has to focus them down. While he's noticing this, the Dragoons move across the map. They may be the same Dragoons that are hallucinated in. Let's see what he goes for here. This must be the real one.
Here we go!
Looks like it's taken out here. That was fake, actually.
I believe he actually got an EMP on the actual one.
Okay.
It didn't seem like it had any energy. Oh, but meanwhile... Oh, no, I think those are actually the fake ones.
Okay. Well, we
Sorry,
don't know.
guys, we have no idea what's going on. So we have the Dragoons and Zealots now coming down here, but there's enough Vultures Oh, but hold on, more Zealots are going to spill in here. Does Flash not have enough? It seems like Bisu is managing to keep Flash at bay.
Yeah, and here comes the Zealots now coming in with the Mind Drags onto the tanks here. The Stasis here removes 4 tanks from the fight, and this is being pretty cost efficient here for Bisu. The tanks slowly streaming in, not able to siege up here. Can maybe even grab that vessel as he pushes forward. Where are the reinforcements, though? Those tanks about to come out of Stasis. He has to back off. Remember, Stasis removed tanks from the fight, but they can't be killed. It's not like they're stunned and they can be destroyed in Stasis. They're also invulnerable. So there's kind of a window of time here as the Zealots fade away. He has to back off as the tanks come back online.
You know, Protoss needs to scout this base in the upper left. I know he's going to see it eventually because you always want to secure the other mains as Protoss because it just makes it it has more areas that you have to push into to try to get an advantage here. By the way, Zealots now coming down here trying to blindside some of these tanks. It looks like he might be able to get the command center in time before these SCVs can get over here to repair.
Oh, it's going to be close. 100 hit points when he gets the repair. Not enough SCVs, though. Some of those SCVs coming in were set to mine. And now this is going to be a great position here for Bisu killing this base. Now, sure, he needs to find out about the one to the top left, but that's exactly where a lot of these units are headed now that he's removed this base. And we'll see if he ends up going all the way. There's a Templar so close.
He needs to find this expansion up here.
There's a Vulture that's
There's
super
one
low.
Vulture that can gun down probes before they get there. So at this point, Bisu does not realize that if he gets rid of that base up there, he should be able to win.
Yeah.
But Flash is macroing like a god. He's about to move out again here. Basically, Flash is going to mine from that base as long as possible until he's caught, and then scramble and escape with the SCVs.
You have to think he almost scouted it several times because that Vulture is weak. So definitely had some engages there. But here comes a fight. I don't think this is the one that Bisu wants to take. The siege up is much better this time. Needs to have those vessels in position, and he does. So no stasis available. And this was too good of a tank setup. I could see what Bisu was thinking. If the tank siege had been late, there would have been an amazing opportunity. But Flash handles it well. Does he see this base?
Oh my
I
God,
don't think
it's
so.
right under his nose. But Flash is pushing out. He might be able to pin this Protoss army against the wall. You know he wants to get in there with some good storms because the tanks are clumped up just enough. Oh, hold up. Is there a vessel here? We might have this army actually recall. He might go all the way where the factories are.
Okay, here we go. He needs to do it
Oh!
soon. Taken out.
Oh, they're both hallucinated. Yeah, I guess he actually...
He's just faking.
He just wanted to get the Terran army to turn
he draws
around.
him away, forces
He's
him to
faking us
siege.
out too here.
Good stasis is really well done here by Flash. The fake out hallucinations draws Flash back here for just a moment. Bisu finds a window to kill a lot of these siege tanks. And look at the storm on the Vultures. Defense Matrix is going to buy some time. But this is a great engage for the Protoss. Much more cost efficient. He just needs to make sure he doesn't lose the last of these Dragoons. Needs to be macroing back at home.
Again, Flash continuing to push out with this hidden base he's got up here. He's just able, okay, now the fact that SCV came down there and is making that might tip the hand. But right now, map control is going to Flash. Bisu scrambling to muster up an army that can engage this mech push.
He has 2,000 minerals. Looks like he just doesn't have the gas to compete with the macro of Flash here to keep up with his units, even though he got these expensive siege tanks down. The question is, where were the reinforcements? Where was the follow-up? He was so far across the map. This is a huge opportunity for some great Reaver shots, though. 8 kills with his first one. Flash is maybe going to have to turn around. So even though perhaps death was on the doorstep of Bisu, maybe this one Reaver drop with the Zealot can turn Flash around. He needs something, otherwise the Terran is going to get on top of his production and control that natural.
Okay, he's just buying time. That's all you can do right now as this mech army pushes forward. By the way, it's much harder for the mech to push onto the high ground than it is to push the natural expansion. And while this is happening, keep in mind, most of the SCVs are going to be at that
Okay,
center
recall
left
in the
base
main,
of Flash. Oh, nicely done.
Okay, if he doesn't draw back here, then this could end up being permanent damage. Let's see what Flash decides to do. Trying to defend with Spider Mines and Vultures alone here. This is eventually going to be too much damage, though. Psystorm going to try to remove this siege tank. Looks like it doesn't quite clip it with the initial one there. Archon being moored. Flash is not budging. He's going to just try to defend this with some of his reinforcements and spawning units. He wants to continue the push here. He wants to go for the throat. He's not going to unsiege. He worked so hard to get this position, he's not willing to give it up.
In one of the stranger games I've seen, even though Flash is pushing out here, he's actually managed to take the upper left. Protoss needs to punish this, like, now.
Looks like the shuttle's finally going to go down here.
Oh my God.
Oh, not the right one.
Yeah.
Still 15 kills on that Reaver. Can't be too unhappy with that one. He definitely knows about it now, though.
Yeah, he still doesn't have confirmed vision, though, of the high ground in the main. So
during all this time that he bought with that recall into the main, He's going to take control of the middle of the map. Wants to take out this 9 o'clock base. Still perhaps unknown that the top left base, the 11 o'clock, is available. This high ground has bought enough time to keep this base mining for Bisu. If he takes this out, maybe he can collapse onto that army for Flash to the bottom right. Flash is actually not even willing to keep it there anymore. He's going to move it away right now because he knows if he loses this base and that army gets caught, he might not be able to rebuild it. So you have to respect this choice by Flash. He wanted that bottom right base. He thought he could go for the throat, but he has to turn around here. And he's going to look for the high ground engage here with the rest of his reinforcements.
All right, it looks like Flash could have a good angle here. The Protoss units are bunching up over here on the ramp acting like a filter as he tries to come through. And in fact, he could even end up pinning this up against the wall and wiping out the remaining supply here for Bisu. Bisu needs to reassemble and eventually get a grip in the upper left corner of the map, because that's what's been funding Flash this entire game.
It certainly has, and now we're going to see these Dragoons trapped here. He's got another set of units, and sure, he had the supply lead for a moment, but Flash stabilizes here, gets the more efficient trade, and now for the first time, he's going to get some real damage done to this base to the top left. Might even be able to hit the 12 o'clock with what little mining's left there to deny that gas.
Again, Flash is now in a very good position here because he can push this vulnerable expansion and still protect the upper left. I don't know how Bisu's going to do this. Looks like he's going to try to gear up the flank, but there are so many siege tanks
I don't know
here.
if this will work. He's got almost pure tanks against these Zealots, though. The vessel provides vision. This was a haphazard attack from Bisu, and it may be the last straw that breaks the camel's back that he committed to this and failed so hard. He's trying desperately to catch some reinforcements with Zealots, but this base is the MVP. Finally scouted out. Finally will be recalled upon with if he has enough units to recall.
I wonder, though, if he recalls here, the tanks just go up there and kill it, right?
Yeah, that's what you have to think.
He's already in that spot to begin with. Of course, the funny part about the center left base is that it hasn't been mined from that much because it's been under attack most of this game, so it's always still available for Flash to try to expand to later. Yeah, I think that Bisu may have ran out of gas here.
I think so, and I feel like losing the 9 o'clock over and over, but always having the top left works out in Bisu's favor now that he deals with the threat to the top left. The tanks over here take this Nexus out. That's a lot of the gas mining for Bisu, who's been consistently losing Arbiters. We saw the stasis early on. We saw some of those recall attempts, but with all the failed ones, he doesn't have very many Arbiters left to engage this Terran army.
As you can see, there's really just not many places Protoss can utilize on the map. There's this outpost at the bottom right, which Flash is ignoring while he's keeping pressure on everywhere else. And Bisu, I think, has lost too many key tech units. These Zealots and Dragoons just cannot
compete anymore
with the tanks that are fully upgraded here for Flash.
He needed some Arbiters. He needed to identify the top left base earlier. And, oh, that's it, GG. That's the end of this game. Flash is going to take it. That was a closer game than I think the end of the game really showed. I feel like the turning point, if we could bring it back to one moment, was in Flash. He really wanted that bottom right base. He did not want to pull his units back. But as soon as Bisu committed basically everything to the 9 o'clock, he made that decision. He came in, crushed the army, flanked it basically with the siege tanks, killed the Arbiters there too, and from that moment on had the supply lead. Bisu could never contest at the top left, and from then on he lost too many units. He couldn't reinforce on the bottom right because there were siege tanks down there, and Flash cut him apart. Really super high level game we just saw there, and it was very fun. And finally, Tasis, we got to see that late game TVP we were looking for all night.
Yeah, it was really awesome. I got to say, very impressive stuff there from Flash. I do believe a big factor was just the fact that there's this hidden base, and Bisu's he's scrambling all over the map, shutting down these expansions. But if he had one Dragoon there, hitting those SCVs,
or two Zealots out of a shuttle,
anything, it might have been a different result. But at the same time, Flash really made all the right decisions when he was pushing out. And when you see a Terran army actually come out like that and Bisu take it out with the initial attack using the Psy Storms on the bunched up tanks and vultures, and he still engineers it back together, that's very impressive.
I mean, we saw some really great moves from Bisu, realizing when he killed the majority of those tanks in that fight that the Vulture counterattack was going to be there without even seeing a single Vulture. He had the pylon wall coming in, warping in, seeing that coming one step ahead of Flash there. And we also got to see the showcasing of Flash having that amazing macro, taking map control, taking these small skirmishes, sometimes losing a little bit in the fights, but never losing too much while continually macroing at home, getting those siege tanks out. It just always felt like for Bisu, once the Arbiters were gone, it's just there's too much Terran, and Protoss can't break that without the higher tech units.
I think when you get to that level of play, one of the most important things to watch for is how the first few Arbiters are used, because Arbiters take a long time to make, and if you lose one or you have a bad recall, that's really where the opening is for Terran to move out, because you're not going to have 8 arbiters right away. You're basically making 1 to 2 at a time. So if you stop that, then you can probably push as long as you have the proper defense in mind set up elsewhere on the map. Guys, it's nearly 1 a.m. here, but it is still packed at Guangli Beach.
It's time for the match that everyone's been waiting for.
Yes,
though,
this is going to be
Tasteless.
our last match of the night. Jaedong versus Flash.
Yeah, and I know a lot of people around the world have woken up early for this match specifically, but tell those who have just woken up that they haven't missed it yet. It is, as you said, we've gone late into the night here. Well, we started at 8 p.m. It's almost 1 a.m. now, and it's time for the two legends, the top 2 players that have, in the the modern era of Brood War, facing off against each other in so many finals. This is the iconic matchup, the iconic rivalry here in Brood War. It doesn't really, not many rivalries in esports that come close.
Not really, not at all. With this, we have to watch out for the fact that Flash is very, very strong in mid-game TVZ. For those of you guys that grew up watching Brood War, you probably used to just seeing bio and occasionally the wonky mech build. Now, in some cases, in the current meta, and I'm not joking, if you're an old school person watching, they go bio, get 1-1 bio, and then switch into mech, starting out with vultures to control the map.
Yeah, and it kind of feels like
attacking into tanks.
Yeah, and kind of in this matchup, it feels like everyone is doing that, but somehow Flash is able to make the transition a little bit faster somehow than everybody else.
He really gets it.
Yeah. So let's take a look at our players, guys. It's time. The final matchup of the night, the Legends. These two have faced off against each other in so many Star League finals, have faced against each other in so many Pro League matches as well. And I mean, it all comes down to who's the better player on the day. We've got upgraded graphics. We've got thousands of fans in the crowd. But these two, they're never nervous. Never in a moment like this. They've seen it 1,000 times. And you have to argue, you have to remember that Flash is in better form than Jaedong recently. But Jaedong looks to get revenge here. Flash defeated him last time they met in the ASL semifinals. And in terms of head-to-head record, these two have faced off against each other 57 times. Flash 30-27, just 3 wins ahead of Jaedong currently. Jaedong wants to get revenge tonight, wants to get closer to that 50-50 score in terms of win percentage. But think about that, 57 games televised played between these two, 30-27 in Flash's favor. So close, so clutch. You just don't get a better matchup than this, Tasteless.
No, you really don't. And I think this is the iconic StarCraft matchup, a Terran versus Zerg. Will Jaedong possibly go for some kind of early rush? It is a real possibility. We saw these guys in the ASL duking it out, and Jaedong has some pretty sneaky techniques to get in there and do his damage early on.
Yeah.
Or are we going to see something even crazier from Flash? He's known for mostly going for macro games and winning by being bigger, stronger, faster. But
where are we going? Eye of the Storm again, the 4-player map. The spawning locations for Jaedong, of course, ended up hurting him a little bit last time we went to this map. But yeah, if people say that Flash, he can't be broken. His macro is so good. His transitions are tight, but Jaedong has been the one person who's consistently been able to shut him down when he's most greedy, and that's why this is such an iconic matchup, and that's why they're so close. People say, that they use the term bourgeois to describe someone in StarCraft who's unbeatable, untouchable, a massive period of dominance. Most people say Flash was never a bourgeois because Jaedong existed, because he would go toe-to-toe with him, prevent him from having those dominant streaks. And here we go, man. It all comes down to this last match. It's going to be so exciting.
This is it for tonight. Flash versus Jaedong, Terran versus Zerg. A battle of two titans, the two greatest gamers of all time. And they want more time, so we actually can't start it. God damn it, man. I was like, oh my God.
This is it.
This is the greatest thing you're ever going to see. But we were just told that one of their keyboards is not quite set up. So we got some more time to kill. Hi,
That's
how you
right.
doing?
I'm good. I'm a little bit sweaty. It's a little bit late at night.
It's hot out here.
But these
We're wearing
games are
suits
hot.
on the beat. Well, yeah, these games are hot. This is so cool, though, to see these guys duking out. Remastered looks really good. Definitely get out there and purchase Remastered. Give it a shot. Anybody can like this game. I mean, there's tons of young Koreans that are picking up Brood War over the last couple of years because, their parents in some cases or older siblings or classmates recommended you give it a shot, and now we have it, but with the proper ladder, with an anti-hack,
You know,
with all the stuff that actually wasn't great about Brood War because it was an old game and didn't have those features just naturally built in.
and any of you with this new accessibility for Brewer can be a pro gamer. One day you could be the legend that we talk about in 10 years. So
we're on the Korean cameras.
Oh, I missed it.
I think we're not on there anymore.
But in time, maybe someone watching this broadcast tonight will remember Flash being the legend. We talked about him so much, Jaedong, and maybe they'll be the new heroes of the new esport. Remember, StarCraft is not only the first one, but the longest standing esport of all time as well.
Wolf, the final game is ready.
It's time!
It's time! Yes!
It's time, guys.
Flash
Let's go!
versus Jaedong to start things off on StarCraft Remastered. We'll have the two greatest gamers of all time in a classic Brood War matchup, Zerg versus Terran. Tell your friends to join us, because after that, we're done for the night, guys. You gotta wait 2 weeks unless you're in Korea and you go to PC Cafe. Guys, Morpheus is fighting Neo.
Certainly is the case, Tasis.
Damn right.
Announce them for us, Tasis.
In the bottom left, we have Jaedong. Or Morpheus, I guess, in this case. What? Okay, that was weird. All right, he stopped it. That was really scary.
Okay.
In the upper left, in the green, we have our Terran player, Flash.
Probably what happened there is obviously when pro gamers, you'll see them when you watch them stream, they spam, they grab a lot of boxes of their units to keep their hands warmed up, because in the later stage of the game, it's a more taxing game than it is in the early stage. So you don't want to have cold hands when you hit that mid game where everything starts to get a little bit harder. So you do kind of spam a lot of hotkeys, you do grab a lot of drones, or perhaps you accidentally attack his own drone there in the heat of the moment. This is a tense match, so that's likely what happened, but man, who would have thought, who would have dreamed when these two faced off against each other in the late 2000s, 2008 to 2010, really, where they had their most heated matches, that, 7+ years later, we would have a remastered version of this game, and they would face off against each other on this iconic beach so many years later, amongst not only the crowd that we have here in Korea, the home crowd, but also the global audience abroad that maybe back in 2008 hadn't heard the stories and hadn't heard the legends of these two, but now they certainly have.
Yeah, it's so awesome. I'm so glad that Blizzard is supporting and has continued to support all of their games, right? And of course, this game is so old, to just touch it up a little bit, to make it a little bit more modern so that new generations can come along, is something that's really special.
Yeah. Well, let's jump into this one, man. We are spawning vertically, so not the long rush back. And, we talked about the Zerg aggression in the ZVP matchup, but this matchup is usually dominated by, with some exceptions in Jaedong's case, the Terran aggression. Flash is the guy who will often in this matchup get the 5 racks Marine pressure up early, put on that very hyper-aggressive Marine push, and something that many Zergers have struggled to deal with. And if the Terran at least trades even, they usually become ahead there. And Flash is the guy who's kind of the speed runner of this.
Yeah, that's a good way to put it, Wolf. He's just done so much damage. By the way, what Jaedong's doing, if you can control the drone perfectly, it can kind of moving shot. Okay, well, instead it's going to be Flash that does perfectly. You can sort of moving shot and then skirt away from the SCV and keep doing damage. It's very hard to do, but Flash actually timed it out with an SCV of his own, colliding into the drone and then doing damage while on top of it and taking that out. Yeah, so generally speaking, the Zerg has to defend. They need to get to layer tech unless they do some kind of crazy all-in. They have to have the layer tech, or they don't have enough to leverage any position over the Terran.
And Flash is not the kind of player, by the way, at least generally, which is one of the things that makes him so scary, is because when he does do it, you get so tricked to do things like what we saw from our Terrans earlier in this matchup, to proxy, say, a factory in the middle of the map and do a vulture rush. Sure, he will do it 1 out of 100 games, which will throw you off guard really hard, but we're going to see the more standard Terran versus Zerg this time around. It's going to be the more contemporary approach, where we'll likely see, as you mentioned before, the late game transition to mech, if we get there, and the Zerg taking the third base to the bottom right, trying to get those Nidus networks up to connect the bases, get the lurkers up. So how much damage Flash does in the early to mid is going to be...
He's actually going to go for an Overlord snipe.
Yeah.
This is risky to do as Terran, by the way.
Looks like he's just barely going to get the Overlord
timed it out. He actually gets away. Now the problem is when you do that, if the Zerg have enough lings, they can just come in there and take out those first 2 Marines. But I guess he scouts here with the SCV, identifies, okay, that's where the Lings are. I'm going to try to come out there and do this damage and get away. But Jaedong has timed it out pretty well, too. The command center's almost done here. We see the layer tech starting now for Jaedong. We want to see, does he go for the Hydra tech or the Muta tech? And sometimes you'll see both Hydras and Mutas. And with Hydras, I really mean lurkers, by the way.
Sure.
You don't really mass Hydra against a Terran player that has a bio.
But we saw
army.
even in the series in the ASL semifinals where these two faced off against each other that Jaedong was willing to do the Hydra bust. And it's a very success. We've seen him do this against several different Terran players over the course of his professional career. But like you said, it's very unlikely. We do have to consider the possibility with this guy that he may do it. But it's more likely he's just going to take the macro approach. Does have the third base for extra larva, not a third base per se, but a third
macro
hatchery.
hatch. Yeah.
Yes.
Terran can't really move out on the map that safely. I know we saw 2 Marines go out, but there is risk involved there. If the Speedlings come to catch it, those Marines are dead. But Terran can't move out until they have stim and medics, because that's when Marines become, instead of these flimsy units that die to basically everything, they become these very agile, deadly units that deal damage very quickly and can escape and be microed in such a way that you can end up winning fights that you should never have been able to win.
Yeah, when you have the medics out, the Marines go from being paper thin to feeling like they've got steel armor against units like Zerglings that do damage just too slowly to actually to get through the healing power of the medic. So looks like we're going to see that 5 racks fall. He's got the 4 already.
So this will not be the switch into mech, at least not yet that we've seen before. This is something you do to try to make it incredibly difficult for the Zerg when they're trying to get the third base up. You have so much muscle on the map. As long as you control things well, it's very tricky for the Zerg. So mid game is going to be very dicey for Jaedong.
Notice that Jaedong sent a Zergling to every corner of the map right now just to make sure several things. 1, that there's no dropship across the map. 2, that a Marine didn't sneak across to try to block the drone. That's probably going to go to the bottom right to take a third base. Isn't getting away with lurking there, so we can kill the drone. Gets a ton of extra vision this way. And it's very mechanically demanding to send Lings across the map like this, cloning them around, but he spent the resources to do so. And we are going to see the attack now, or sorry, the tech now coming out. He does have that Spire completed.
As the game continues on, we see the scanners are going to be ready. Now there's a couple techniques that Zerg can use. One is called hold position lurkers or stop lurkers. You can bury them on the map. In this case, we see it might be instead mass muta with Ling, which if Terran gets in a certain position, they can get completely blindsided and run over. You can also use the mutas to try to counterattack. Now, we should eventually see lurkers later on if we don't see them now, but just to give you guys a general picture of what this phase of the game is supposed to look like, that's what you want to watch out for. So it seems like Flash has perfectly timed out the turrets.
Yep, just a few Marines here because he knows the turrets can be repaired. And what the idea with these mutas is to buy time to get these sunken colonies up and to catch reinforcements. This means that if he wants to attack, if he wants to commit heavily,
we're on camera right now. What's up, guys?
If he wants to commit heavily, then when he goes in, when he does go for the attack, then reinforcements can be cut off, of course, by those mutas. So this army right here is the only one he's going to be able to push all the way across the map with, because any reinforcements will be killed by the mutas. As you can see here, going to try to catch those reinforcements coming out of the natural. And their turrets make it so the mutas can't really harass. They're just simply there to buy time. Does try to get a turret here, but there's too many Marines back at home.
Okay, so he's coming here with these mutas, but there is an army of Marines and medics making a beeline down to the bottom right. It's very important that the Zerg gets the hatch up. Now the drone hasn't started the hatchery just yet. Jaedong spent a lot to try to keep that alive. The Marines are now turning around. Now we're getting to the phase where there will be lurkers in the game. Note the muta control. This is very hard to do, but if you can shave off enough of the Marines and keep the Terran oppressed and stuck inside of his base, you might be able to control the sway of the game. Uh-oh, he's gonna get the drone.
Okay, there it is. This is what I was talking about earlier. When the Zerglings went out, they were looking for this exact Marine that hides early to snipe the drone, because it buys so much time for the Terran, to keep this economy. He's even going to look for the Overlord here. It would be incredible if he gets it. Lings are coming over, but I don't think they're going to save this OB. Does get taken out, nicely done. And he also now gets the vision of these mutas being away. He's going to take this opportunity to move the bio further around, knowing the mutas are down to the bottom right.
Well, this is such a great chess game these two guys are having in the middle of the map here, outmaneuvering each other. The big push, though, is going to come down here. Jaedong wants to try to set up and contain and make a third base an impossibility for the time being. And it looks like it just might work, Wolf.
Yeah, look, this is such a strong bio push. It's got the +1. The Mutas here are going to be able to snipe reinforcements if they can actually buy time. If these lurkers can buy time, he's going to come in. The lurkers aren't ready. The eggs are in morphing mode right now. Does him in, tries to break down the sunkets. Great Mulus micro here from Jaedong, losing very few, getting those claim shots off. Can he get the lurker burrow? It comes with the counterattack here from the Lings. Will he be able to hold? Lurkers need to burrow. They do burrow, and it looks like Jaedong will stave off the push.
That was just barely held. He did a great job with the Mutas over the ledge, hitting that. The lurkers burrowed immediately after they hatched, and the Lynx came in at the last second, right as the Sunken Colony defense had fallen. Map control right now is going back to Jaedong, but Flash has a second push coming up here. Flash eventually will have to answer the question of when is he going to get his third base, because right now he's powering on 2, whereas Jaedong's hatchery is on the way down here in the bottom right.
Yeah, the next step, of course, for Flash is to figure out how to deal with that. He's going to have vessels out here to deal with the lurkers. Speaking of which, had he gone for the third base with this risky move out, the whole position lurkers could have trashed his army. He doesn't have vessels here, so he's lucky he didn't take that path, or he might have just lost his entire army. They are spotted now here. Flash going for the stim chase. Does have scans, of course, mind you, to engage on this. Jaedong wants to race him to the top of the ramp so he can hold this ramp here. Or not ramp, but obviously this choke point, I should say. And he does get there in time, and there's a Nidus Canal available, so this base should be defended. Now that he's got the creep here, he can place that Nidus. So close call, barely getting those lurkers in that choke point means he saves the third for now.
Okay, now Terran's gonna have to rely on drop ships being sent around the map. As you can see, with the Nidus network set up, as long as the Zerg has Dark Swarm from the Defilers, you can basically defend endlessly from a Terran push. And this is sometimes when the wind in the sails of the bio ball begins to slow down as Zerg is stabilized.
Okay, he's attacking multiple locations at once, so he's going to hit the main, the natural, and that third base to the bottom right here. Big stims coming over. This should be cleaned up by the Zerg. He's got the great defense here. Jaedong shuts it down. A lot of drones lost at the natural. Few of them pulled away here. The third base, because the lurkers are in that choke point, doesn't look like Flash found an opportunity, but here, killing drones already.
Again, it's going to be the Mutas that have to clean up the remainder of this. He's taken out that attack over there. We're going to see now if Flash can try to bust through at this base over here. Now note, the angle that the lurkers are at, you basically cannot walk through with Medic Marine. You can, however, drop, and if the lurkers are not ready to defend, then this base can go down, and Zerg has to have 3 bases in this phase of the game.
If he targets that Nidus, no one's coming through. Let's see if he can get it. Looks like he wants to go for broke here on the drones first instead. Lurker's coming over, the beautiful scan here, and he does have a decent split. Targets down the first lurker. The second one does go down here.
Oh my God,
Too many
he actually
Marines.
did it. He actually pulled it off.
There's
he
not
needs
enough
the
units.
Mutas back over here.
No
the
links,
drop ships,
nothing.
Yeah, drop ships are headed back home, unable to intercept that.
Nidus is down, that means no ground reinforcements. This looks like a dead base, and even if Jaedong cleans this up, this puts the Flash in a great position now. Hatchery's down, catching some of these spawning units here. The Scourge too late, didn't have vision of the dropship, unfortunately, didn't have an answer. And now Flash doubles his supply, and 2 base versus 2 bases are a disastrous position for the Zerg. Jaedong needs to retake that, but this is now an opportunity for Flash to take the third. He killed so many of the lurkers too. He kept his vessels alive, and Jaedong is in deep trouble.
As you can see, Flash is still forcing Jaedong to juggle around the map to try to deflect this. Jaedong has not managed to get these Scourge to connect with these dropships, and this means Flash then reverts back into pushing out in the middle of the map. Assuming that the Zerg army has probably been thinned out enough, a head-to-head engage should be one he can win.
Yeah, with these vessels now and the irradiates available, should be able to win it, but he's not microing them, he's not paying attention. Huge opportunity here for Jaedong. Looks for the first vessel, does actually fail to get it, will pull the irradiated Mutalisk away immediately. Decent micro here from Jaedong, but he's bleeding off units right now, and this push, maybe the last one of the game as he moves across now. Vessels leading the charge. He's lost so many drones, down on economy, desperately trying to replace that bottom right base, but that's it, he types out GG!
Flash wins in our final match tonight. I gotta say, that was a very good game by both players. Just barely. Jaedong managed to keep that base there if he was ready at his third and had the right units. The lurkers perhaps just staying around the hatchery instead of at the entrance. He might have actually won that game.
If he had more vision, or if he had Scourges, if he kills the dropships, if he just knocks those 2 out of the sky, totally different game than what we just saw there. So if he has the Scourge, if he kills the dropships, maybe he defends the base. So many lost units for the Terran.
Yeah.
He takes another base. And what an anticlimactic ending there, I guess you could say in a way, but Flash just, again,
it
so
didn't
dominant.
end with a big battle. It ended with Jaedong calculating everything that had happened in the last couple minutes and saying, okay, I'm basically dead.
Yeah.
I'm out of the game. Tonight's games are awesome. If you just now are joining us, definitely check out the VOD. We had a ton of great games, and it was like a cool time capsule of the very early Brood War players and switching into some of the guys that were at the peak before StarCraft 2 came out to the guys who are at the very best in the current meta. Thank you guys so much for joining us. You will be able to play StarCraft Remastered in about 2 weeks. It's only available right now in PC cafes in Korea.
Yeah, I think the big takeaway from GG Together is GG is a term we use to surrender, but it's also a term to give respect. But I think tonight, the big takeaway from GG Together is good game. StarCraft is a good game, and it's remastered now, and it's out there. And I hope you guys all enjoy it as we have over the years.
Definitely check it out. This is the godfather of esports. Line up and kiss the ring, nerds.
That's right.
So, again, guys, this is a real treat to be down here. The beach here at Guangli Beach is completely packed. Way exceeded our expectations for how many people are going to show up. I'm really curious when the numbers come in for how many people are down here. Tons of people watching online. Again, this is a game. It's never too late to start up, start learning Brood War, and I think with Remastered here, it's going to be a lot more accessible for people.
Absolutely.
So give it a shot. It's been around for 20 years. It's going to be around for 20 more. You might be somebody in the next generation.
Yeah, it's been a real pleasure to cast this with you, Tasis. We
Thank
brought
you.
the
You
first games of Remastered to the masses, and it's just the first of many.
Yeah. So look forward to a lot more StarCraft Remastered action here in Korea. We're going to be very much so focused on bringing you the best possible cast and the best possible production here. I guess that's it. We did it. We love you guys. We'll see you on StarCraft Remastered in about 2 weeks. Have a good morning, afternoon, or night, wherever you are.
Nuclear launch detected.
You've not enough minerals. The hive cluster is under attack. We are under attack.
Alright, bring it on. Captain Red.
Goliath online. We require more minerals. My life for hire. Not enough energy. Your warriors have engaged the enemy.
Research complete.
Research complete.
Upgrade complete.
Upgrade complete.
여러분 반갑습니다. DJ 코코 준영입니다. This is DJ Cool Remix. Check it out. One, two, three, go! 다 같이 소리 질러!
Research complete. Research complete. Evolution complete. Upgrade complete. Upgrade complete.
Let's go, let's go! 여러분 준비됐습니까? One, two, three, go!
Power up with a punch. Introducing new Dunkin' Energy Punch, powered by Monster Energy. America runs on Dunkin'.